Mice skitter in front of a tall, multi-story bakery under a clear and bright sky.
Sitting across from a blonde man, the long-haired woman calls out his name, Pedro. While eating a sausage, Pedro responds to the long-haired woman with a short, confused inquiry.
Behind her large round glasses, the long-haired woman prepares to deliver some very significant news.
Looking directly at Pedro, the long-haired woman calmly initiates a breakup in the quiet cafe.
Pastries sit untouched on the table as a shimmering transition marks a shift in story tone.
Pedro reacts with explosive outrage, questioning the appropriateness of breaking up at a bakery during lunch.
Pedro demands to know the reason, and the long-haired woman expresses her willingness to explain everything.
A close-up of the long-haired woman's eyes shows a moment of silent and cold contemplation. Narrative text describes Pedro as handsome, while the woman appears dark and exhausted beside his radiance. The woman contrasts her disheveled and bandaged appearance with Pedro's polished look in a bitter reflection.
Ornate text panels explain her lack of funds for her own clothes and personal grooming needs.
Visuals of jewelry and suits illustrate how she spent all her money on Pedro's expensive wardrobe.
In a flashback, Pedro requests expensive new clothes and she subserviently agrees to pay for them.
The woman reflects on her past behavior as a pushover with a subtle and bitter smile. Standing to leave, she refuses further explanation while Pedro questions her sudden and aggressive personality change.
Pedro pauses, wearing a smug expression as if he has deduced her true motive for leaving.
Surrounded by roses, Pedro poses arrogantly while the woman internally questions his sanity behind his back.
She decides to provide the reasons for the breakup and activates a small recording device hidden away.
She lists his multiple infidelities with various women, prompting Pedro to blame her for his straying. With a triumphant smile, she notes that she has successfully recorded his blunt admission of cheating. She criticizes his arrogance as a mediocre magician while he mocks her significantly lower magical circle rank. She lists further grievances, including his financial extortion, his bad breath, and his generally unpleasant personality.
A text bubble highlights the hypocrisy of Pedro judging others' looks while praising his own appearance. As Pedro reels in shock, she prepares to deliver many more reasons for their immediate separation.
A landscape view of the bakery accompanies a bubble indicating the list has reached 499. She delivers the final reason she simply dislikes him while Pedro despairs over her praying mantis comparison.
Declaring her departure, she leaves Pedro broken and clutching his head in the now empty cafe.
Turning back, Pedro asks why she is suddenly going berserk and acting so completely out of character.
Pedro asks if she has been reborn, causing her to stop and look back at the door.
A close-up of her shoes on the floor signals a transition to her final, surprising response.
She directly asks Pedro if he would believe that she actually died and came back to life.
A crude drawing depicts her past self as a pushover before showing her sister taking her money.
Her sister dismisses her with insults about her appearance while casually mentioning that Pedro is cheating.
As her sister leaves, the woman's past self expresses gratitude for what she perceived as genuine care. In another memory, Pedro cruelly insults her weight and tells her she is very ugly. Her mother warns her not to leave Pedro, claiming no one else would ever want her. Her mother demands more money for living expenses while continuing to degrade the woman's personal worth.
A close-up of the woman shows the deep emotional toll and stress of her toxic environment.
Amidst snowy branches, a thought bubble expresses a painful and sudden tightness in her chest.
The woman runs desperately down a long snowy street lined with lanterns as winter sets in.
She collapses in the snow, clutching her heart as the cold environment mirrors her internal state.
Tears stream down her face as she struggles for breath on the freezing, icy ground. Her legs give way completely, leaving her lying prone in the middle of the snowy path. Lying motionless in the snow, her final thoughts reflect the terrifying realization that she is dying. Ornate text confirms she died of heart failure brought on by extreme emotional and physical distress. A complex magical seal glows brightly, marking the exact moment of her soul's mysterious transformation.
Swirling magical energy accompanies the revelation that her past life memories have finally returned.
Visuals show Ishael alongside her past self, a modern woman with short hair and professional attire.
Narrative text identifies her past self as Yoon Sejin, a workaholic from South Korea before reincarnation. In a past life, a coworker questions Yoon Sejin's coding knowledge, prompting her to explain she learned it for professional collaboration.
Yoon Se-jin aggressively demands corporate accountability, showing she was once a fierce advocate who refused to back down.
She reflects on how her original personality was the total opposite of the submissive girl named Ishmael.
After her third life begins, Ishael receives another manipulative request from Pedro asking for money and a date.
Holding the letter, Ishmael feels empowered by her past life's confidence and courage as she plots her next move.
A quiet moment follows as floral imagery marks a shift toward her first act of rebellion.
The scene transitions to the interior of a grand building where she prepares to settle old scores.
Ishael smiles secretly, deciding that the first step of her new life involves a clean break from her past. Framed by flowers, she resolves that her first priority is finally getting rid of her parasitic ex-boyfriend. She poses triumphantly, looking forward to the refreshing sense of freedom that comes with ending their toxic relationship.
Pedro asks about her strange expression while Ishmael privately compares his insignificant presence to a small potato.
Ishmael turns to leave the cafe as the waitress calls out, signaling the start of a final confrontation.
The waitress offers Ishmael a spicy pepperoncino and hard bread on the house for her upcoming task.
Ishmael receives a warm cappuccino as she prepares to give her ex-boyfriend the fiery ending he deserves.
Facing her past, Ishmael prepares to exorcise the clingy weirdo once and for all with a dramatic gesture.
She calls out Pedro's name with a cold, shadowed expression as she prepares to strike her final blow.
Ishmael asks one last time if he truly refuses to break up, and Pedro arrogantly confirms his stance.
Pedro claims he was planning to marry her just as a spray of liquid hits him mid-sentence.
Stunned and in pain, Pedro reacts with shock as the hot liquid makes contact with his face.
Ishmael declares her utter exhaustion with him, stating firmly that she will never give him any more money.
Pedro collapses in agony, steaming from the impact of the hot drink while he stares up at her. Looking down at the ruined man, Ishmael maintains a cold and detached gaze as she asserts her newfound dominance.
Pedro desperately brings up her parents' marriage wishes while the waitress assists Ishmael with her final, spicy parting gift.
Ishmael strikes a comical pose, announcing her intention to leave her home and family behind as well. She delivers a powerful slap to Pedro's face, telling him to mind his own business once and for all.
Ishmael notes she slapped him to avoid regrets while the waitress gives her a perfect score for her performance.
Pedro lies defeated and unconscious on the floor, a teabag sticking to his face as she departs. With a bright and cheerful wave, Ishmael bids Pedro a final farewell as she leaves the cafe forever.
Running through the city with pigeons taking flight, Ishmael celebrates the official start of her brand new life. Floral imagery bridges the scene as Ishmael moves toward her next objective in her plan for independence.
Reflecting on her successful breakup, Ishmael walks through the bright town square, ready to tackle her remaining problems. She decides that escaping her family is the next essential step, even if finding a home takes time.
An ornate frame depicts a grand mansion, representing the dream of a new home free from her past burdens.
Walking toward her future, Ishmael looks forward to living in a palace residence despite it being an old building.
Her excitement turns to sudden alarm as she spots a new notice posted on the building's entrance.
A sign announces that the emperor has approved the building's reconstruction, scheduled to begin in only 3 days.
Ishmael realizes she is in trouble, remembering the residence underwent a flashy makeover in her previous timeline.
She contemplates her limited options, realizing she will now have to find a place to rent immediately.
A close-up of the notice reveals additional information that might offer a small glimmer of hope.
Ishmael's eyes widen as she reads the small print on the bottom of the reconstruction announcement.
The notice specifies that Imperial Palace administrators are allowed to stay for free until the reconstruction begins.
Delicate roses frame the moment as Ishmael's luck begins to turn in an unexpected direction.
Crouching with relief, Ishmael celebrates that she has at least 3 days of guaranteed housing left.
She smiles with renewed determination, confident she can secure a permanent residence during her 3-day grace period. Her optimism fades into a dark reality as a new and overwhelming realization strikes her.
Back at work, Ishmael despairs over her empty bank account, remembering her family stole her entire salary. She wonders how she could come back from the dead only to struggle so much for basic survival.
A male coworker approaches her desk, interrupting her spiral to ask if she heard the latest news.
An announcement reveals that their acquaintance Fiona is getting married, adding another complication to Ishmael's social life.
The coworker asks if she received an invitation yet, and Ishmael confirms that she is still waiting.
The male coworker expresses his doubt that Fiona can move out without a proper home.
Ishmael smiles slightly behind her large glasses, thinking that Fiona definitely has a secret plan.
A vibrant flyer introduces a newlywed special provision policy as a potential housing solution.
Text panels explain the policy grants eligibility for selected couples to move into a newlywed town.
Floral patterns accompany the inquiry regarding what exactly this newlywed town entails for residents.
A grand brick building stands near the palace, showcasing the high-quality housing options available.
Internal views highlight elegant construction and the convenience of rented furniture for new residents. Ornate text confirms it is a dream complex that simplifies moving by offering furniture rentals.
Ishmael reflects on how failed marketing guarantees a home for anyone who simply applies.
Thought bubbles highlight how marriage could finally help her cut ties with her toxic family.
Ishmael remembers her breakup while the coworker mentions the flyer Fiona gave him earlier.
The coworker presents a flyer requiring marriage registration by August 6th to secure a residence. Ishmael realizes the deadline aligns with her eviction as they head off to weapon inspections.
A stone hallway filled with barrels leads the pair toward their next professional assignment.
As they walk, the coworker asks Ishmael why she is considered so lucky today.
The coworker excitedly reveals that the famous Sir Dylan is joining their weapon inspection team.
Text bubbles describe Sir Dylan as an idol for men and beloved by every woman.
Ishmael contemplates the knight's massive popularity while heading toward the inspection site in the warehouse.
Visuals of a silhouette and blade establish Dylan's commoner roots and elite knight status.
A knight on a horse illustrates Dylan's prestigious position within the Emperor's elite guard. A banner explains that commoners must win a tournament held by the Emperor to join.
cross swords and a trophy celebrate Dylan as the glorious victor of the swordsmanship tournament. The coworker gushes about Dylan while Ishael prepares to witness his legendary presence firsthand. A close-up shot reveals a man's intense red eye, hinting at Dylan's focused nature.
Sir Dylan appears in uniform, looking strikingly handsome with his sharp features and red eyes.
Floral imagery surrounds a single word declaring the knight to be exceptionally handsome and attractive.
The coworker lists Dylan's physical perfections, claiming his smile could make spring flowers bloom. Ishael internally questions if such a perfect man could possibly have a single hidden flaw.
A chart shows Dylan maintaining the exact same stoic expression through every possible emotional state.
Ishael wonders why a war hero would volunteer for the boring task of warehouse maintenance.
The coworker suggests he simply enjoys the work, and they agree to finish up quickly. A hand meticulously wipes a long, polished blade during the routine weapon maintenance process. Dylan focuses intently on his task, radiating an aura of perfection and silent, practiced skill.
Ishael watches in awe as Dylan works with incredible speed and efficiency at his station.
Thought Bubbles praise his absolute precision in maintaining and rearranging the swords without any error. The coworker leans in to whisper Ishael's name, startling her from her focused observation. The coworker gossips about Ishael's bakery fight and urges her to dump that weird bum. Ishael smiles slightly to herself, secretly preparing to announce that she already ended the relationship. As she tries to explain, the coworker asks why she took the newlywed town flyer. Ishael starts to say she broke up with the loser while Dylan listens in nearby.
A sudden, violent cracking sound echoes through the room as Dylan snaps a sword blade.
A thought bubble expresses utter shock at the terrifying sound coming from the knight's direction. Ishael asks if there is a problem, and Dylan coldly claims it was a mistake. Dylan stares intently at Ishael, holding a bent sword and calling the incident a misunderstanding. Shards of the broken sword fly as Dylan's intense reaction leaves the two coworkers stunned. Dylan trembles while muttering about marriage, prompting Ishmael to wonder what he is actually doing.
A close-up of Ishael's wide eye reveals her complete confusion at Dylan's strange behavior.
Dylan looks at Ishael with a fierce red-eyed gaze, his stoic mask finally showing emotion. Dylan sits before Ishmael and firmly commands her not to marry that man at all. Surrounded by blooming roses, Ishael stares in stunned silence at the knight's unexpected, intense warning. A cosmic theme transition panel hints at deeper story revelations for eager readers.
Sir Dylan leans in and firmly warns Ishael against marrying the man she was seen live.
Ishael reacts with a simple, bewildered noise of surprise at the knight's sudden and unexpected intervention. Ishael questions the meaning of the knight's words as she stands next to her confused male coworker. Surrounded by white roses, Ishmael internally wonders why the famous knight is suddenly advising her against marriage. Sir Dylan maintains a stoic and intense expression while waiting for Ishael's reaction to his bold command. Ishael wonders if the knight knows her ex-boyfriend is trash or if her pushover reputation has spread. Ishael clarifies she isn't marrying anyone, while the knight's intense red eyes shows a sudden, sharp reaction. From the warehouse window, Ishmael confirms she has no plans for marriage, bringing a sense of relief.
A close-up of Dylan's face captures his silent, focused reaction to Ishael's firm denial of her engagement.
Behind her large, round glasses, Ishael's eye reflects her deep confusion regarding the knight's intense personal interest. A brief moment of realization washes over Ishmael as she processes the weight of the previous exchange. Ishael appears strikingly beautiful amidst falling petals, her presence compared to a warm spring day in winter. Sir Dylan offers a rare, soft smile while acknowledging Ishael's confirmation that she is currently single.
Ishmael is left speechless and wide-eyed by the knight's suddenly pleasant and charming change in demeanor.
Dylan returns to a look of mild surprise, questioning her reaction to his uncharacteristically gentle attitude.
Panicked by her name being called, the knight's stoic mask cracks into an expression of intense worry.
The coworker panics over a missing equipment count, fearing discipline, while Ishael reacts with sudden alarm.
Ishael rushes to help her coworker while telling the knight to continue his duties at the warehouse. Dylan watches her leave, the scene shifting to a later time after their initial confusing confrontation ended. Ishael focuses entirely on recounting the missing swords, determined to fix the counting error with her coworker. Narrative text explains that Ishael quickly forgot about her strange and intense conversation with the famous knight. Sir Dylan stands alone, looking somewhat pensive and distracted after his unsuccessful attempt to connect with Ishael. A hand reaches for a polished blade on the table, continuing the repetitive task of weapon maintenance. The group continues working in the large warehouse while the coworker despairs over the mismatched equipment count. Ishael walks through the courtyard, letting out an exhausted sigh as the long workday finally concludes. Rubbing her sore shoulder at sunset, Ishael complains that counting the equipment 5 times was physically draining. Despite her exhaustion, Ishmael decides she cannot rest at the palace quarters until she handles another issue. Approaching a grand estate, Ishael expresses her disdain for her family as she prepares for a confrontation.
Taking a letter from the mailbox, she notes that her family has once again taken a predatory loan.
Ishael confirms her family borrowed money in her name just as she hears voices from the garden. Peering through the fence, Ishmael sees her mother and Pedro discussing their recent breakup over tea. Pedro listens quietly while enjoying his tea, appearing comfortable and unbothered by the family's financial drama. Her mother manipulates the situation, claiming Ishiel loved Pedro deeply to maintain their toxic social connection.
Ornate text explains the family's plan to buy a title and marry the sister into nobility.
Listening from the shadows, Ishiel criticizes her family's ability to treat their insane schemes as perfectly normal.
Pedro asks when the family intends to restore their status, showing his opportunistic interest in their noble aspirations.
Portraits on a wall illustrate the family's current status as commoners despite their former ties to the elite.
A decorative panel explains that the Lorelei family was originally a prestigious but now fallen noble bloodline.
Falling coins represent the total collapse of the family's finances and the subsequent sale of their noble title.
Her mother reveals a sinister plan to borrow $300 million in Ishel's name, leaving Ishel horrified.
Her mother expects Ishmael to pay the debt, citing the emperor's policy that favors traditional nuclear families.
Red icons illustrate the late emperor's hatred for single-person households and illegitimate children within the kingdom's borders.
A diagram shows the state's ideal family unit, consisting of a mother, a father, and their children.
Ishiel reflects on the evil law that allows family members to take loans using each other's names.
Pedro and her mother finalized their plan to secure the fraudulent loan the very next morning.
Holding a hidden recording device, Ishmael prepares to ruin her family's cruel plans with their own words.
Ishel finishes the recording and mentally prepares to strike back against those who have exploited her. With the evidence secured, Ishmael walks away, ready to begin the final phase of her revenge.
Ishel resolves to show her family the misery of poverty after years of being treated like a beggar. Ishel's shock is depicted through a crude, wide-eyed drawing as her brain temporarily short-circuits.
Behind her large round glasses, Ishel's intense gaze reveals her deep focus and growing internal resolve.
Walking into the sunset, Ishmael vows to make her family experience the same misery they inflicted. The scene transitions to a downtown law office where Ishael seeks professional counsel for her protection. Hands present legal documents and notarization papers specifically related to a future marriage registration process. A male clerk confirms the paperwork while Ishmael sits in his office carefully reviewing the agreement. Thought bubbles emphasize signing a mutual agreement so a future husband cannot commit financial fraud.
A close-up captures Ishmael letting out a heavy, weary breath as she ponders her difficult situation.
Sitting outside on stone steps, Ishmael acknowledges that finding a suitable husband will not be easy.
Watching knights spar in a courtyard, Ishmael thinks proposing to a random soldier is an unrealistic plan. Surrounded by swooning women, Ishmael wonders if any man shares her urgent need for a quick marriage.
A coworker blushes while claiming that the famous Sir Dylan is steering directly toward their specific location.
Sir Dylan stands in the training grounds, his intense presence drawing the attention of everyone nearby.
Ishel is caught off guard, noticing that Sir Dylan is present among the other training knights. A close-up of Ishel's eye reflects the knight's silhouette as she begins to consider an unlikely option.
Meeting Dylan's gaze, Ishmael immediately remembers the intense and strange conversation they had the previous day. Framed by yellow flowers, a thought bubble expresses that marrying someone like Dylan would bring happiness.
Sir Dylan stands bathed in a golden glow, looking every bit the part of a legendary hero.
Ishmael quickly dismisses the romantic notion, telling herself to forget such an impossible and unrealistic daydream.
A text panel declares there is no way a perfect man like Dylan would ever marry her.
Slumped on the steps, Ishmael looks discouraged while her coworkers continue to gossip in the background.
Ornate celestial imagery shows Dylan and Ishmael standing together in a dreamlike garden as a couple. In the vision, the handsome knight gently reaches his hand out toward Ishmael with a soft gaze.
Imaginary Ishmael smiles with pure joy as she prepares to accept the knight's offer in her dream. Realizing she is fantasizing, Ishmael vigorously slaps her cheeks to wake herself up and regain focus.
Opening her notebook, Ishmael decides that finding a realistic groom must be her absolute top priority.
She lists her groom requirements: ordinary appearance, low personal interest, and a technically well-mannered disposition.
The first candidate is identified as Tav, a brown-haired knight who seems to fit her criteria.
Ishmael notes that Tav has a warm personality and is known as the kindest among the knights.
Eavesdropping at a pub, Ishmael learns that Tav is currently single and open to a contract marriage.
A depiction of a floating halo over an empty bag suggests Tav is in dire financial need.
Ishmael concludes that a contract marriage with Tav would result in a beneficial win-win situation for both.
The second candidate is Henry, an administrative assistant who is not a member of the elite knighthood.
Working together, Ishmael reflects on how Henry is a good friend who fully understands her current difficult situation.
While Henry is fun and comfortable, Ishmael worries about office romance but thinks they could remain friends.
Satisfied with her options, Ishmael firmly closes her notebook and decides to initiate her bold plan.
She reminds herself that sitting still is no longer an option if she wants to secure her future. Spotting the brown-haired knight Sir Tav, Ishmael prepares to make her move and deliver her proposal. Ishmael nervously asks Sir Tav to meet her at the warehouse for a very important personal matter.
Sir Tov smiles kindly and agrees to her request, nodding as he prepares to follow her. Ishael hurries toward the warehouse while a confused Tov and his companions watch her sudden departure. Standing alone in the dimly lit warehouse, Ishael feels her heart pounding as she waits for Tov.
She clutches her proposal papers, worrying if Tov will accept her offer or if she'll be humiliated.
A close-up shows a man's brown shoes stepping into the warehouse, signaling that someone has arrived.
Ishael turns around with a start, noticing a silhouette and believing her future husband has finally come.
As the man walks through the shadows, Ishmael mentally prepares to secure her freedom through this marriage.
Her relief turns to pure shock as Sir Dylan appears in the light instead of her target.
Ishael stands before the bruised knight and asks him where the other candidate, Sir Tov, is.
With a dark and intense look, Sir Dylan bluntly states that Sir Tov has suddenly died. Dylan explains he failed to control his strength, leaving Ishael horrified as he stares down at her.
Dylan states that Tov is unavailable and offers to relay any message to him instead, while Ishael privately finds the idea of the high-ranking knight delivering her proposal quite bizarre.
The woman politely declines the knight's offer, apologizing for the inconvenience while explaining that she must speak to her target directly.
Ishael maintains a nervous smile while clutching her marriage proposal papers tightly behind her back.
A sudden, powerful gust of wind rushes through the warehouse window, scattering leaves across the floor.
Ishael gasps in alarm as the wind catches her documents, sending them flying into the air.
Dylan reacts with lightning speed, reaching out a hand to catch the falling marriage proposal papers. The knight's expression turns to one of pure shock as his gaze falls upon the written document.
Jagged energy fills the scene as Dylan processes the unexpected information he just discovered on the paper.
Ishael panics as the knight reads her blunt proposal, which specifies she will never fall in love with her husband.
Overcome with humiliation, the woman snatches the paper and sprints out of the warehouse in a panic.
Internal thoughts convey Ishael's absolute horror at the knight witnessing her desperate and transactional marriage plan. Screaming in embarrassment, Ishmael announces her immediate departure and runs away as fast as she can.
Dylan stands alone in the dimly lit warehouse, reaching out toward the woman he just stunned.
A sign depicting a beer mug hangs outside the stone walls of a brightly lit pub. To cope with her shame, Ishael begins drinking heavily from a large wooden mug at the tavern. Thoughts confirm that while the earlier situation was a disaster, the alcohol is successfully numbing her embarrassment. Ishael cheers loudly while drinking with her friend Henry, who enjoys the lively atmosphere at their table.
The woman attempts to explain her current predicament to Henry, who asks her to clarify her meaning.
Henry notes that housing prices in the capital have risen by over 500 gold and calls the news a total bombshell.
Henry despairs over the impossible housing market and the strict loan regulations preventing commoners from buying homes.
Ishael slams her hand onto the wooden table, demanding that Henry pay close attention to her words.
Leaning in with an intense gaze, Ishmael proposes that she and Henry marry to secure a townhouse.
The woman clarifies that she will never love him and intends to divorce as soon as their contract concludes.
Henry lets out a weary sigh and rubs his head, clearly overwhelmed by her purely transactional marriage offer. Henry asks what kind of person Ishmael thinks he is, expressing disappointment that his feelings remain unnoticed. The man blushes intensely while looking away, lost in a sudden wave of private, romantic longing.
Thought bubbles reveal Henry's desire for sweet dates and a romantic, sincere proposal to the girl he loves.
Ishael stares at her blushing friend with a look of complete disbelief and total lack of romantic interest.
Ishael leaves to find Toph, while Henry begs her to stay and hear more about his romantic bucket list.
Walking through the courtyard, Ishael worries that she might miss Tov if he leaves work early today.
Ishael laments the difficulty of finding a partner as the stars begin to shine over the palace.
A dark figure suddenly intercepts Ishael in the walkway, startling her as he calls out a polite greeting.
Ishael turns around defensively, demanding to know who has approached her in the darkness of the night.
She recognizes Sir Dylan, who looks unusually pensive as he stands before her under the moonlight.
The knight explains he was waiting specifically for Ishael because he has an important question for her. Dylan looks down with a solemn expression, his intense red eyes showing a hint of internal conflict. Ishael begins to offer a hesitant explanation for her current situation to the waiting knight. The woman grows impatient, worrying she is wasting time while Dylan continues to block her path to Toph. Thoughts reveal that Ishael is willing to marry anyone as long as they aren't disqualified by her criteria. A close-up of Dylan's eye captures a sudden, brilliant light reflecting his sharp reaction to her declaration. Ishael attempts to run off to her next target, stating she has urgent business now that she answered.
Dylan shouts for her to stop, his voice cracking with a sudden and intense sense of urgency.
A firm hand reaches out and catches the edge of Ishael's clothing to prevent her from leaving.
Ishael turns her head back in surprise, noting the knight is refusing to let her walk away.
Framed by flowers, Dylan suggests that if she is fine with anyone, then he should be her husband. Dylan's heart beats loudly in his chest as he stares intensely at the woman, awaiting her final answer. Morning light spills across the room as birds chirp outside, highlighting clothes scattered on the floor. Ishael groans in pain as she wakes up with a massive hangover, feeling completely disoriented in her bed. Clutching her head, Ishael complains about having a truly bizarre dream where she encountered the knight. A vision of Dylan's sincere gaze lingers in her mind, making her wonder if the proposal was real.
Ishael yawns at her reflection, questioning if the intense events of yesterday were merely a dream.
An older woman with brown hair knocks firmly on the wooden door of Ishael's room. Still disoriented, Ishael responds to the visitor while adjusting her white shirt and large round glasses.
Narrative text specifies Dylan's early departure from the Knight's quarters to the Imperial Palace training grounds.
Checking his pocket watch, Dylan notes his arrival time and confirms he maintained his perfect routine.
A fellow knight expresses surprise at seeing Sir Dylan at work so early in the morning.
Standing stoically with a massive bouquet, Dylan ignores his coworker's question about his unusual floral cargo.
The knight enters the palace interior, declaring that he has important business to attend to immediately.
A close-up highlights the vibrant white roses and chrysanthemums making up the knight's impressive wedding bouquet.
Ishael's eyes light up with a joyful expression as she notices the knight approaching her position.
Sir Dylan maintains a steady, intense gaze, his red eyes focused entirely on the woman before him.
Standing before Ishmael, the knight explains he has learned the specific procedures required for a marriage. The knight begins to lower himself onto one knee, shocking Ishael with his formal and public gesture.
A close-up of Ishael's wide green eye captures her sudden realization of the knight's serious intentions.
Dylan closes his eyes for a solemn moment, preparing to deliver his life-altering request to Ishael.
Kneeling before the stunned woman, Sir Dylan offers the white flowers and asks her to marry him. Staring at the knight, Ishael realizes this romantic scene feels strangely familiar to her recent hazy memories.
A flash of memory crosses Ishael's mind as the fog of her previous night finally begins lifting.
Clutching her head, Ishael screams in realization as her memories of the night before return in full.
In a flashback, Dylan asks if he isn't good enough for her while Ishmael considers his proposal.
Ishael reasons that marrying the knight would secure her status and he seems like a decent man.
The woman acknowledges that Sir Dylan is a suitable choice and feels a sense of deep gratitude.
Watching the blushing knight, Ishmael wonders if he is intentionally giving her an opportunity for contract marriage.
Ishael asks if he truly intended to marry her, followed by a moment of awkward, silent tension.
Internal thoughts beg for anyone to say something to break the unbearable and crushing silence between them. Overwhelmed by shame, Ishmael mentally screams that the sheer embarrassment of the situation is making her sober. Ishael tries to convince herself that the stoic knight was only joking and she overreacted to him.
Panicking, Ishael apologizes profusely for the misunderstanding while the knight watches her with a calm, steady gaze. The knight clarifies that his proposal was not a joke, leaving Ishael staring at him in total shock.
Framed by flowers, the knight blushes while his heart beats rapidly during the vulnerable moment with Ishmael.
Dylan insists on marrying her immediately instead of her other candidates, causing Ishael to freeze in surprise.
Ishael tells the knight to wait, but her confused protests are met with his calm, questioning look.
Transitioning to a lighter mood, a chibi version of Ishael decides to celebrate her new marriage arrangement.
Claiming life is bitter, Ishael holds up a bottle of strong alcohol while Dylan watches her curiously.
After drinking the entire bottle, Ishmael celebrates finding a groom while Dylan politely offers her his congratulations.
Ishael envisions her escape from her former life while her miserable family members cry in her imagination.
Narrative text confirms that the woman became completely intoxicated following her decision to marry the famous knight.
A very drunk Ishmael stumbles around while loudly calling out the knight's name and waving her bottle.
Drunk Ishmael demands an immediate marriage registration, and Dylan agrees since the government office is working late.
The pair heads toward City Hall as Ishael shouts for them to go and finalize their legal union.
Shadows fall over the quiet streets as the scene shifts to the entrance of the government building.
Drunk Ishmael slams her paperwork on the counter, confirming they have successfully completed their official marriage registration.
Back in the present, Dylan looks at Ishmael with a soft, affectionate expression while holding the flowers. Dylan asks if she has changed her mind, but Ishael clarifies she was simply lost in her thoughts.
Ishmael reflects on how terrifying it is to wonder why such a perfect man wants to marry her.
Despite her doubts, Ishael knows that without this marriage, her predatory family will continue to exploit her.
A detailed close-up focuses on the intricate jewelry and uniform collar worn by the high-ranking Imperial Knight.
Smiling warmly, Ishael accepts the reality of her contract marriage with the man standing before her now.
Ishael reaches out and accepts the large bouquet of white flowers, finally agreeing to the knight's official proposal. The knight's intense red eyes soften with emotion as he watches Ishael accept his offer of marriage.
A close-up captures a subtle, knowing smile spreading across the man's lower face.
Ishael beams with pure joy while clutching her massive bouquet of white flowers tightly.
Sitting across from Duke Dolrion, Ishael mentions her plan to establish a formal marriage contract.
The Duke offers to sign immediately, but Ishael insists he understand the terms first. With a determined look, the woman presents the written document for the knight's review. Ishael explains that the contract is already notarized and only requires his final signature.
Ishael notes that the document covers privacy and daily life clauses for their mutual benefit.
The man suddenly halts his movements, calling out for her to wait for a moment.
Ishael looks up with a startled expression and asks if he found a problem. A close-up of the paper highlights a specific clause regarding the terms of divorce.
The Duke points out that the document includes a specific item regarding their eventual divorce. Looking visibly stunned, the knight stares down at the paper as he processes the clause.
Ishael offers a bright, innocent smile while awaiting his reaction to her transactional terms.
The knight's world appears to shatter as Ishmael cheerfully reminds him they must eventually divorce.
Ishael wonders if the one-year duration is the issue while the Duke sits in despair.
The Duke leans his head into his hand, looking overwhelmed by her cold, contractual approach.
A close-up of the man's red eye captures a flicker of intense internal reaction.
The white contract paper remains held firmly in his hand during the tense, silent exchange.
Framed by flowers, the knight looks at Ishmael with an expression of quiet, focused intensity. The man mentions that a townhouse is available for an immediate move-in starting from Zlad.
Ishael confirms the arrangement and asks if he intends to move in right away. A tense fist clenches against a backdrop of explosive energy and growing frustration.
The knight offers to handle dinner while privately vowing to win her heart today.
Ishael agrees to see him for dinner after she sends the contract to her lawyer. A simple confirmation bubble appears against the bright sky, closing their current meeting. The grand facade of the Imperial Palace stands tall under a clear blue morning sky.
A lavish spread of roasted turkey, fruit, and pasta sits atop a formal dinner table.
The emperor asks his master why he is already planning to leave the palace again. The Duke of Savoy confirms that his duties require him to travel to the west.
The emperor watches in silence as his teacher takes a drink from his wine glass.
A vintage illustration depicts the master of the magic tower guiding a young child. Text boxes confirm the man's prestigious status as the mentor to the sitting emperor.
The Duke of Savoy looks down with a solemn, weary expression during the royal meal.
The emperor reflects on how the theater tragedy stole all emotion from his teacher's face.
An illustration shows hooded members of the Red Star Group who plotted against the Empire.
Dark imagery depicts the tragic loss of the master's children and his missing young granddaughter.
The emperor reveals news of a survivor, offering hope of finding the missing Princess Diana.
The master bows his head and offers a sincere word of thanks to His Majesty.
The emperor asks about the castle's atmosphere, and the Duke replies that nothing has changed. A legendary tale begins about a powerful witch who reigned as the proud Snow Queen. 3 centuries ago, the lonely witch fell into a passionate but unrequited love for the emperor. The emperor loathed the witch, causing her to scream in a fit of absolute despair.
The heartbroken woman is shown weeping behind a wall of cold, jagged blue ice. A cold blue eye gazes with a piercing, inhuman focus as the curse manifests.
A powerful curse was cast on the royal line, stripping away their ability to feel.
The territory of Duke Castia was transformed into a castle trapped in an eternal winter.
Narrative text explains that the bloodline was forced to live with their emotions frozen forever.
A lone figure sits stoically on a throne within the dark, oppressive depths of the castle.
Thought bubbles explain that the Dukes of Castilla are destined for a life of solitude. The tragic history concludes by stating they all eventually went mad and died in battle.
Narrative text mentions one person managed to live despite the curse. A man with dark hair and a blue coat approaches a large door.
The emperor invites the newcomer to enter while dining with his white-haired teacher.
The emperor looks toward the entrance with a welcoming and slightly curious expression.
The emperor warmly greets his younger brother as he enters the grand dining hall.
Sir Dylan offers a formal and respectful greeting to his brother, the sitting emperor.
The emperor expresses his happiness that his beloved brother has arrived for their dinner.
Dylan walks down the long dining table toward his brother and the master.
The narrator identifies Dylan as the Duke of Castilla while he repeats his greeting. The emperor remarks on his brother's punctuality to the master, who offers a confirmation.
The emperor privately observes that Dylan appears to be acting differently than usual today.
Dylan tells the nervous maid he will seat himself, prompting her to excuse herself.
Dylan requests to speak with the emperor, who invites him to talk over dinner. A close-up shows the emperor taking a sip from his white teacup. The emperor suddenly spits out his drink in shock at Dylan's unexpected announcement.
The emperor is completely blindsided and screams in disbelief at the news of marriage.
A close-up shows a hand slamming onto the table in a moment of intensity. The panicked emperor demands to know who Dylan is marrying and their relationship history.
Dylan stoically explains that he intends to reveal his true identity to Ishael shortly.
The emperor wonders if Dylan is taking this sudden marriage arrangement as a serious matter.
A vision of Ishael appears framed by flowers as she carries a stack of papers. Dylan describes Ishael's features while the emperor marvels at his brother's attention to detail.
Both brothers feel disoriented by the situation as Dylan attempts to explain himself further.
Dylan blushes slightly while lost in a romantic thought, surrounded by a floral background.
The emperor tries to process Dylan's unusual behavior while Dylan continues his marriage plans.
A narrative box mentions a faint smile that had never been seen before.
Text confirms that Dylan had never smiled like that in his entire life.
Narrative text explains that the former emperor despised the young Dylan during his childhood. The young Dylan was kept confined in a small house cursed with dark magic. Dylan lived in isolation for over 10 years before eventually departing for the war.
The former emperor sent Dylan to war, hoping he would die in battle.
Bloody imagery shows a sword dripping with blood near a fallen, wounded hand. Dylan eventually became a cold and stoic man, reflecting the curse of his lineage.
Dylan stands on a dark battlefield, clutching his sword as blood splatters his face. The Emperor asks Dylan if love is the reason behind his sudden marriage decision.
A close-up of Dylan's red eye reflects a moment of deep and silent intensity.
The scene shifts to a palace window as Dylan begins to answer his brother. Dylan stands alone in a grand office looking out at the palace grounds. Dylan's side profile shows his calm and pensive expression as he considers his move.
A close-up of Dylan's face shows him looking down with a serious and focused gaze. Dylan continues to ponder the situation, his thoughts lingering on his new marriage arrangement. The Emperor reactively points at Dylan with a comical expression of confusion and surprise.
The Emperor privately regrets prying into Dylan's love life like an overly interested woman.
Narrative text expresses a concern regarding the nature of Dylan's admiration for the woman.
A narrative box explains that terrorists are currently plotting to overthrow the imperial government.
The Emperor fears Dylan's love might be the result of a terrorist's love potion.
The Emperor concludes that he must personally investigate the woman Dylan has chosen to marry.
The Emperor looks pensive and slightly blushful as he considers his secret investigation plan. The Emperor slaps himself, declaring that he must stop acting foolishly and regain composure.
The Emperor tells a knight he has an urgent secret task that isn't about curiosity.
Dylan smiles while looking toward the window as a maid stands behind him. 14 words.
A close-up captures a subtle and satisfied smile appearing on the man's face. 14 words.
A small brown bird rests on a leafy branch under the bright morning sun. 14 words.
Entering a bright building, Ishmael notes how pleasant the area is near the palace. 14 words.
Ishmael enters a restaurant where her mother greets her and remarks on the fresh air.
Lady Martha sits elegantly with her red lace fan and a warm, inviting expression. Walking across the restaurant floor, Ishmael asks why her mother requested her presence today.
Lady Martha affectionately calls Ishmael her baby before asking for money to buy a dress.
Ishmael reflects on how her mother previously manipulated her emotions to take all her money.
Ishmael claims her paycheck was delayed, prompting a skeptical reaction from the older woman.
Ishmael points at a document, insisting her mother sign before receiving any more money.
Martha looks confused and asks about the purpose of the documents placed before her.
Ishmael challenges her mother's intelligence, asking if she can still read the ancient imperial language.
Narrative text explains that the Empire utilizes both a common and an ancient imperial tongue.
A noblewoman writes with a quill, signifying that high-ranking citizens learned the ancient tongue young. Lady Martha dances happily, oblivious that her years as a fallen noble dulled her education. A young Ishmael sits under a tree, easily mastering the ancient language during her schooling. Narrative text introduces a predatory loan contract with absurdly high interest rates for the recipient.
Lady Martha signs the paper after Ishmael claims the loan is for a new dress. Text confirms that the loan firm in the contract charges over 1,000% interest.
Martha signs with a greedy grin while Ishmael watches with a secret, knowing smile.
A text bubble reveals that the signed paper was never actually a loan document.
Ishmael specifies that the document is actually a written record of her mother's long-term exploitation.
At a lawyer's office, the professional explains that a compensation claim requires the recipient's consent. Stylized artwork illustrates the difficulty of a law requiring a wrongdoer to agree to pay. Ishmael expresses disbelief at the ridiculous law that prevents compensation claims from being effective. A hand carefully slides several important papers into a brown envelope for safekeeping.
Ishmael heads to work as Martha eagerly anticipates her new dress with greedy excitement.
Clutching the envelope, Ishmael walks away with a confident and satisfied expression on her face.
Overview of the palace, someone asks about a recent conversation with Sir Dylan.
Marilyn and a coworker react with shock, claiming everyone is talking about Ishmael's recent activities.
Marilyn demands answers while other palace staff gossip about the infamous Duke of Shadows nearby.
Ishmael hums to herself, deciding to keep her marriage to the knight a secret.
A close-up of Ishmael's eye shows her startled reaction as Marilyn suddenly confronts her.
Marilyn slams her hand down, questioning what Ishmael could have possibly done to Dylan.
Marilyn calls Ishmael a misfit duckling compared to a prince, causing Ishmael significant internal annoyance.
Ishmael deflects the insult by pointing out that Marilyn has food stuck in her teeth.
Marilyn checks her teeth as Ishmael walks off, mocking her for having dark olive stains. A text bubble notes that being called a specific nickname constantly is not very ideal.
Ishmael looks thoughtful while playing with a strand of her hair in the sunlight.
Ishmael considers getting a haircut over the weekend to improve her appearance for Sir Dylan. Sitting at her desk, Ishmael attempts to resume her work but is suddenly interrupted. Ishmael notices a strange document where Sir Tove is requesting a set of protective gear.
Ishmael wonders if the knight is in danger as she reviews his unusual gear application.
Ishmael stares blankly while Marilyn continues to talk incessantly in the background of the office. Marilyn claims Dylan loves a graceful woman, insisting Ishmael is nothing like his ideal type. To block out the noise, Ishmael firmly places an earplug into her ear during work. Ishmael smiles peacefully, finding comfort in the fact that she is already married to Dylan. Sunlight shines over several identical townhouses nestled near a lush green forest area. Fresh carrots and broccoli pieces sit on a wooden cutting board, illuminated by soft light. The knight prepares a meal of mushrooms and meat while wearing a cute bear apron.
Sir Dylan holds a fresh carrot while looking down with a pensive and serious expression.
A palace official screams in shock upon discovering that the workaholic Dylan is taking leave.
The staff gossip about the impossibility of Dylan's leave, jokingly claiming the world is ending.
Dylan blushes as he overhears the palace staff wondering if he is actually getting married. Dylan feels satisfied that they guessed correctly while the official apologizes for prying into his life.
A narrative bubble announces the official approval of Sir Dylan's first ever vacation request. A knife chops through a carrot as the question of Dylan's marriage lingers in the air.
Dylan continues his culinary preparations while admitting he cannot stop thinking about the marriage rumors.
Narrative text reveals that the knight spent his entire childhood confined in a cursed house.
A young Dylan sits alone reading a book inside a small, dark, magic-infused room. The boy reflects on his longing for a real family while only knowing his cold father. Violent text boxes capture the verbal abuse from Dylan's father, calling him a lifelong disgrace. A flashback shows the father looming over a cowering young Dylan with a disciplinary whip. A close-up captures the intense fear and trauma within the young boy's wide red eyes.
Adult Dylan looks down solemnly as he reflects on his dream of serving his own lady.
Standing at the kitchen counter, Dylan encourages himself to perform exactly as he has practiced. The knight's side profile shows his sharp features and focused gaze during the quiet morning.
A large ornate clock on the wall indicates that the time for his meeting is near.
A narrative bubble placed near household plants confirms that the scheduled meeting time is almost here.
Dylan surveys the dining room, noting that the table is set and the food is ready.
Ishael enters the room and spots Dylan waiting for her while he wears his apron.
Ishael sniffs the air with a look of pleasant surprise, noting the delicious scent of food.
Ishael stands in the doorway, looking stunned by the sight of the knight in the kitchen.
The pair stands across from each other in a room filled with falling pink flower petals.
A massive and extravagant dinner spread features roasted turkey, pasta, fish, and various side dishes.
A shocked Ishmael asks if he truly prepared this entire feast by himself.
Ishael points at the table in disbelief, questioning if he cooked everything with his own hands.
Dylan worries his effort was insufficient, noting he only managed to prepare 50 dishes for today.
Ishael stares at the man in total silence, completely overwhelmed by his absurdly high standards.
Chibi Ishmael celebrates her luck, declaring that Dylan is the absolute best possible contract husband material.
Ishael begins her meal with a look of intense focus and anticipation on her face.
A close-up of Ishmael's eye through her glasses shows her being dazzled by the flavors.
Ishael experiences a culinary revelation, imagining a salmon leaping through waves as she tastes the fish. Ishael suddenly stops eating and shouts out in realization, catching the knight's attention.
Ishael asks the knight for a serious conversation regarding his true motivations for the marriage.
Ishael laughs awkwardly while jokingly suggesting that he might have proposed because he likes her. The woman continues her nervous laughter as she tries to gauge the stoic knight's reaction.
Panicking at the silence, Ishael quickly retracts her statement and apologizes for the silly joke.
A dialogue bubble expresses Ishael's belief that the knight does not actually have feelings for her.
Ishael notes that they have never even had a proper introduction before their sudden legal union.
Ishael smiles with a hint of sadness while looking away and playing with her hair.
A narrative bubble reflects Ishmael's self-deprecating thought that it is natural for no one to like her.
The knight offers a brief and quiet confirmation, heightening the tension between them.
A blonde man with a mocking expression points his finger and calls someone his slave.
Ishael asks once more for the real reason behind Dylan's decision to enter the marriage contract.
Dylan ignores the question for a moment, suggesting they finish their dinner before talking further.
A close-up focuses on the woman's green eye as she waits for a genuine answer.
Dylan looks at her and sincerely states that he views her as a person worthy of respect.
Ishael sits alone at the table, looking down as she processes the knight's unexpected compliment. Ishael stares in shock, processing the word respect while wondering why he said it so suddenly.
Ishael dismisses the compliment due to her low self-esteem while acknowledging Dylan defies his dark rumors.
A flashback highlights conflicting rumors of Dylan being a bloodthirsty warrior who dances atop monster corpses.
Further rumors paint Dylan either as a cold rejecter of women or a notorious playboy. Ishmael concludes that the strange and varied rumors regarding the knight's character are entirely untrustworthy.
Framed by flowers, Ishael offers a radiant and genuine smile during their quiet dinner together.
Dylan appears slightly flustered, a subtle blush forming as he reacts to Ishael's bright expression.
Dylan gives a brief acknowledgement while Ishael wonders if his stiff expression means food is in her teeth. Ishael questions if a minor social awkwardness would really cause the stoic man to freeze up entirely. Resting her hand on her stomach, Ishael exhales a sigh of relief after finishing the meal.
Ishael thanks Dylan for the wonderful meal, and he expresses happiness that it suited her god. Dylan asks if she explored the house, and Ishael confirms there are 4 rooms in total.
Ishael looks pensive as she reflects on her past living conditions compared to the present luxury.
Ishael marvels at the perfect house, remembering her previous life in old, drafty, and cold rooms.
Narrative text recalls Ishael's struggle living with a greedy family that drained all of her finances.
A dialogue bubble highlights how clean and peaceful the environment of the new townhouse feels.
Ishael views the living room as a gorgeous dream house she has always longed to possess.
A close-up shows Ishmael walking across the clean wooden floor of her new dream home.
Dylan offers the large room to Ishael, causing her to stop and look at him curiously.
Ishael begins to protest the arrangement, confused as to why he is offering her the better room. Dylan states that he prefers the interior design of the smaller room for his own use.
Ishael accepts his explanation with a laugh, assuming it is simply a matter of personal taste.
Ishael pushes open the door to the smaller room to see what Dylan finds so appealing.
A stylized wooden rocking horse stands in the center of the brightly lit and charming room.
A large, soft teddy bear adorned with a red ribbon sits on the floor nearby.
Ishael discovers the room is a fully decorated nursery, standing frozen as she takes it in.
Feeling overwhelmed by the constant surprises, Ishmael wonders why everything today seems so incredibly dazzling.
Ishael points toward the interior and asks Dylan to clarify the purpose of the decorated room.
Dylan looks back with a calm and stoic expression, unaffected by the nature of the room. Against a backdrop of red roses, Dylan simply identifies the small room as being the nursery.
Ishael blushes furiously, her eyes wide with shock at the sudden implication of having a nursery. Ishael stares at the stoic man, suddenly believing she understands his true intentions for the marriage.
Dylan clenches his fist, explaining that he merely felt it was the right time to marry. Still wearing his bare apron, Dylan continues eating while appearing deep in his own pensive thoughts. A thought bubble reflects Ishael's sudden realization that Dylan might be ready for more than marriage.
Ishael stands before Dylan, her expression a mix of flustered confusion and intense internal panic. 15 words.
A panic thought bubble asks if Dylan's true motivation for marrying her was to have children. Ishael asks if his desire to marry was actually a wish to settle down and start a family.
Dylan explains that the room simply came pre-decorated as an optional feature of the townhouse.
Still skeptical, Ishmael asks why he specifically chose the room with the nursery decor for himself.
Dylan admits he just likes the decor, leaving Ishmael completely bewildered by his unexpected preference.
Ishael awkwardly offers her respect for his taste while Dylan looks back with a confused hum. Standing alone in the room, Ishael looks down at the floor as she processes the interaction.
Ishael finds it surprisingly cute that a man of his stature enjoys such soft and innocent decor.
A narrative bubble questions why she is smiling so warmly at the thought of his tastes.
Startled by her own growing affection, Ishmael quickly covers her mouth in a moment of embarrassment.
Ishael decides to clean the house tomorrow to repay Dylan for the meal he prepared today.
Ishael enters another room and stops, her eyes widening in surprise at the furniture inside.
Ishael is shocked to find a grand queen-sized bed waiting for her in the bedroom. Ishael joyfully collapses onto the soft mattress, delighted by the comfort and luxury of her room.
Chibi Ishael gleefully rolls around on her new, soft, and massive queen-size bed.
Ishael nuzzles a fluffy pillow while wearing a wide, content smile of pure joy. 14 words.
Staring at the expensive sheets, the woman admits that such luxury feels like too much.
A sudden, violent crack of lightning illuminates the room, terrifying the woman in bed.
Sitting upright and wide-eyed, Ishael shakily questions if the loud noise was actually thunder.
The woman dives under the blankets as another bright flash of lightning strikes outside.
Trembling under the covers, Ishmael reasons that lightning cannot hurt her while still feeling frightened.
A vision shows a young Ishmael cowering in a dark corner during a stormy night. Deciding she needs water to calm down, Ishael nervously steps out into the dark hallway.
A dark, looming figure holding a lit lantern suddenly appears in the shadows before her. Startled by the figure, Ishael trips over her own feet and falls onto the floor.
Ishael groans on the ground, lamenting that the fall caused her quite a bit of pain.
Dylan looks down at the fallen woman, asking if his sudden appearance startled her tonight.
The knight holds a baby rattle as Ishael explains she was just seeking some water.
Ishael questions the presence of the rattle, and Dylan admits he was simply shaking it.
Ishael notes Dylan's unique taste before excusing herself to continue her trip for water.
A massive lightning bolt strikes, causing Ishael to scream in a moment of pure terror.
Dylan reaches out, placing a firm and reassuring hand on the trembling woman's shoulder.
Terrified, Ishmael clings tightly to Dylan's chest while he remains stoic and holds the rattle.
A close-up of Dylan's face reveals his focused gaze as he looks down at her.
The man speaks her name softly, checking to see if she has calmed down at all.
Realizing she's clinging to him, Ishmael panics and quickly apologizes for her sudden outburst. Ishael's green eyes sparkle with unshed tears as she looks up at the knight's face.
The pair stands together in the dim light, Ishael looking up while Dylan stares back.
The woman privately notes that using a baby rattle is a very odd way to comfort someone. Ishael wonders if the stoic man has ever actually attempted to comfort another person before tonight.
Dylan's sharp red eyes reflect a moment of silent intensity as he processes the physical contact.
A close-up shows a subtle, gentle smile beginning to form on the woman's blushing face.
Ishael gives a radiant and beautiful smile, her hair flowing around her in the light. The knight looks down with a faint blush, visibly affected by her bright and genuine expression.
The scene focuses on their feet as they stand close together in the quiet hallway.
Dylan gently takes Ishael's hand, framed by a soft background of white and yellow flowers.
The knight asks if she requires human warmth to stop her from shaking during the storm.
Ishael turns her head away, her face flushing deep red as her heart beats rapidly.
Ishael sits on a chair, her dress draping gracefully as she tries to regain her composure.
Dylan asks why she isn't in bed, and Ishael admits she cannot fall asleep now. Ishael tells Dylan not to worry about her and suggests that he should return to sleep.
To her surprise, the knight sits down on the sofa right next to the startled woman.
Dylan explains that he cannot sleep either, deciding he will stay by her side for now.
Ishael privately wonders if the man is staying specifically to protect her from the frightening storm. The knight lets out a small sound of realization as he considers the woman's state.
A beautifully decorated porcelain tea set sits on a tray surrounded by soft flower petals. Holding the warm cup, Ishmael looks surprised and asks about the contents of the drink.
Dylan explains that the drink is warm milk with honey to help her fall asleep easily.
While sipping the milk, Ishmael reflects on how incredibly thoughtful the knight is being toward her.
Framed by flowers, Ishael smiles contentedly while enjoying the warmth of the honey-sweetened milk.
A close-up captures Dylan's wide-eyed and stunned reaction as he gazes at the smiling woman.
Ishael looks up curiously, letting out a soft sound as she notices his intense stare.
Dylan's face turns bright red as he quickly covers his mouth, looking away in deep embarrassment.
A panicked thought bubble wonders how it is possible for any man to look that attractive.
Dylan turns his head with a sharp gaze, looking back at someone off-screen.
Dylan agrees to a social gathering as several people excitedly celebrate the idea of bonding.
Dylan abruptly ends the conversation to enforce curfew, leaving the group feeling startled and dismissed.
As Dylan walks away, the palace staff whispers in shock about his cold and detached behavior.
Nearby observers continue to judge the knight, claiming that his demeanor is incredibly arrogant and rude.
A narrative bubble captures the staff's frustration, questioning if the knight looks down on everyone.
Ishael questions if Dylan's nightly isolation is normal while noting that he prioritizes his handsome appearance.
Looking at the knight's back, Ishael recalls the rumors describing him as arrogant and socially inept.
Narrative text reflects Ishael's changing perspective on Dylan compared to the harsh rumors she previously heard.
Ishael offers a soft exclamation while looking toward the knight with a curious and thoughtful expression. On their first night together, Ishmael enthusiastically offers a handshake as a celebratory gesture for cohabitation.
The knight appears completely caught off guard by the woman's sudden and friendly invitation for physical contact.
A close-up of the knight's red eye captures his stunned reaction to the woman's casual warmth.
Feeling ignored, Ishmael awkwardly accepts the silence and prepares to retract her offer of a handshake.
Their hands finally meet, though Ishael wonders if she completely misread the knight's hesitant and shifting expression.
A text bubble highlights Ishael's suspicion that the man's stoic mask slipped for a brief moment.
Looking out the window at the heavy rain, someone asks about the cause of the mice.
Ishael explains her troubled family background while Dylan listens quietly, acknowledging the weight on her mind.
Ishael frantically promises to protect Dylan from her greedy family, causing the knight to watch in silence.
Ishael beams with pure, innocent joy, her cheerful energy surrounded by cute, stylized floral and palm motifs.
A metaphorical heart arrow strikes Dylan as he reacts to the woman's unexpectedly radiant and bright personality.
Imagined cat ears and a wagging tail appear on Dylan, leaving Ishael bewildered by his behavior.
Ishael starts to ask about Dylan's family when a sudden, violent crack of thunder interrupts her.
The sound of the storm triggers a dark and hazy vision within the woman's traumatized mind.
A close-up of a terrified eye accompanies a desperate scream as a suppressed memory resurfaces suddenly. A flashback reveals a family fleeing in terror as their home collapses around them during a disaster.
A frantic voice urges someone to run as a hand reaches out through the chaotic darkness. 16 words. Ishael screams in agony, clutching her head as the forgotten traumatic memories overwhelm her during the storm.
Trembling, Ishael questions why these unknown and frightening memories always return whenever she hears the loud thunder.
Dylan reaches out and takes the woman's hands, asking for permission to help calm her down. The two sit close together, their hearts racing as the knight offers physical comfort during her panic.
Dylan watches Ishmael with a look of quiet intensity and deep concern as she struggles to recover. Ishael looks up in a daze, her eyes reflecting her confusion and growing vulnerability toward the knight.
A memory shows Lady Martha scolding a younger Ishmael for being afraid of the terrifying nighttime storm.
Martha coldly dismisses the girl's fear, telling her to take medication and prioritize working for more money.
A harsh command echoes through the darkness, ordering the girl to go out and earn money immediately.
Narrative text observes that despite their blood connection, Ishmael's family treated her worse than a complete stranger. Ishael and Dylan eventually fall asleep together, leaning against one another for warmth and silent emotional support.
The scene shifts to the palace basement, where an official asks the emperor about his late-night activities. A hand pulls a heavy tome from the library shelf as someone hums a cheerful tune.
Michael watches from the shadows as the emperor searches the vast library for a specific hidden item.
Michael finally locates the object, expressing his delight at finding it hidden among the many old books.
Michael notes the ruler's cheerful mood, while the emperor expresses surprise at being caught humming to himself.
The emperor praises Michael's sharp observation skills while holding a mysterious small box with a smirk.
Michael feels a sense of dread, suspecting that the ruler's idea of fun is actually something quite ominous.
Narrative text describes the emperor as an unpredictable and curious figure who is always seeking new experiences. The emperor asks a bizarre hypothetical question about animal hybrids, only to be rejected by his staff.
A decorative narrative box signals a shift in the tone of the ruler's unpredictable daily life.
A group of hooded officials gazes upward with expressions of utter shock and disbelief at the scene.
The emperor stands triumphantly before a pile of magically enlarged fruit, boasting about his absurd agricultural achievement.
The brown-haired emperor proposes throwing a festival while his staff frantically begs the archmage to maintain composure.
The brown-haired emperor is described as loving his people more than anyone else.
Young children celebrate joyfully while receiving fresh bread from the palace's generous staff.
Elderly women smile contentedly as they share a warm meal provided by the ruler.
The narrative notes that the citizens reciprocate the emperor's kindness with love and respect.
Countless hands reach toward the sky in a massive cheer for their beloved leader.
Narrative text reveals Michael's concern regarding the emperor's unpredictable and impulsive behavior during their conversation. The brown-haired emperor looks at a glowing ring and asks Michael if they should test its functionality.
Michael panics upon seeing the magical ring, while the emperor prepares to activate the ancient artifact's power.
The emperor vanishes in a brilliant pillar of light, shocking Michael as the magical ritual concludes.
A spiritual projection of the emperor announces he will be absent during the daytime for a month.
Michael shouts in despair, questioning why the emperor is leaving just before their partnership officially begins.
A moment of chaotic realization follows as Michael reacts to the emperor's sudden absence.
A bird chirps on a branch outside as Ishael begins to wake up.
Chibi Ishmael wonders when she fell asleep and questions the delicious morning scent filling the room.
Ishael looks completely stunned by the incredible sight awaiting her in the dining room.
Ishael gasps in awe, letting out a soft sound of appreciation for the beautiful breakfast spread. Ishael stands in the grand dining room, marveling at the abundance of food prepared.
Ishael turns her head toward the sound of someone entering the room behind her.
A close-up highlights the impressive muscular definition of a man's bare and powerful back.
The detailed view focuses on the man's chiseled abdominal muscles in the soft light.
Dylan stands half-naked with a white towel, his intense gaze fixed on the woman. Dylan greets Ishmael with a calm morning message, but the woman can only stammer in shock.
Ishael frantically denies seeing anything before announcing her immediate departure for work to escape the situation.
Ishael sprints away in a panicked blur while Dylan watches her sudden and chaotic departure.
Dylan stands alone in a state of quiet dejection after the awkward morning encounter.
The Grand Palace building stands tall under a clear sky as the workday begins. Palace employees exchange morning greetings while starting their daily routines within the sunny courtyard.
Ishael walks past palace employees who are excitedly discussing the news featured in today's newspaper.
Ishael reflects on her first day as Dylan's wife, noting their shared commute and his polite decision to keep a respectful distance to avoid making her feel awkward.
Ishael notes to herself that Dylan purposefully maintains a distance from her during their shared commute.
Dylan follows behind Ishael with a calm, stoic expression as they walk in silence.
A close-up of Dylan's intense red eye captures his focused observation of the woman. Ishael orders herself to snap out of it, recalling her promise never to trust people easily.
Ishael reflects on her current happiness while sitting beside Dylan in a moment of quiet peace.
Ishael's expression darkens as she worries about the inevitable pain once their one-year marriage contract ends.
Narrative text predicts the void Dylan will leave will feel colder than her past.
Ishael sits alone on a block of ice, representing her deep fear of loneliness.
Ishael walks through the hall while telling herself to steel her heart and prioritize money.
A woman shouts out in frustration, asking someone what they think they are doing.
A palace official yells at someone, demanding to know how they could fail on their first day.
A blonde woman yells at a recruit for being useless, while Ishmael watches from the shadows.
The palace staff criticizes the new recruit's performance while accusing the hooded boy of shredding important documents.
A close-up shows a familiar glowing ring on the finger of the hooded boy.
Ishael intervenes to defend the recruit, but the blonde woman rejects her plea for leniency and patience.
The crowd demands the boy's immediate termination, claiming a replaceable part-timer provides no value to the staff.
The blonde woman dismissively orders Ishmael to take responsibility for the recruit if she is so concerned.
Ishael shocks the arrogant group by immediately agreeing to take the boy under her own care. The blonde woman questions Ishael's sudden change in attitude, but Ishael retorts that none of the staff were competent when they first started their jobs.
Ishael reaches out her hand toward the small boy, surprising him with her kindness. 15 words.
Ishael smiles warmly with her eyes closed, radiating a sense of genuine happiness and peace.
The hooded boy stares ahead blankly while a text bubble questions the nature of his true identity.
A golden ring with a blue gem glows brilliantly against a complex magical circle background.
Narrative text explained that Ishmael recognized the disguise ring from her memories before her regression occurred.
Thought bubbles reflect on the ring's popularity after regression and its current high cost before commercialization.
A thought bubble expresses total disbelief that an ordinary part-timer could afford such an expensive magical ring.
A hand points toward the distance while a speech bubble identifies the location of the break room.
As they walk, Ishmael mentions the snack supply for employees while the hooded boy responds briefly and informally.
The hooded boy looks up at Ishmael with a neutral expression while walking through the palace hallway.
Framed by roses, Ishmael smiles and privately concludes the boy must be an evaluator from the monitoring team.
Ishael invites the new recruit to follow her to the storage room to begin their work together.
The scene focuses on the lower half of the conversation as Ishael asks for the boy's name. A thought bubble declares the boy a money source while the recruit stutters in a moment of nervousness.
Two steel blades clash together with a brilliant spark of light during an intense training session. 15 words.
A sword flies through the air across the training grounds as two knights engage in a duel. The impact of a heavy strike creates a sharp visual shockwave against the stone training floor. A group of spectators cheers enthusiastically, celebrating Lord Dylan's impressive display of martial skill during the training.
Dylan holds his sword with a stoic expression as the crowd praises his perfect victory in training.
Knights discuss Dylan's superior skill while an exhausted opponent groans on the ground after being defeated.
A senior knight yells at his subordinate to bring a sword, berating him for being too slow.
Dylan listens as knights nearby whisper about Administrator Ishgale and the rumors surrounding her current activities.
A large speech bubble confirms that multiple people have heard the latest gossip regarding the palace administrator. The rumor mill continues as someone claims Ishmael has taken a rookie part-timer under her wing. Two women discuss how surprising Ishael's actions are, noting she never seems like that kind of person. A central text bubble highlights the growing rumor that Ishael and the recruit might be baiting.
Dylan's red eyes narrow as he reacts silently to the scandalous gossip being shared behind his back.
Other knights look at each other in fear, asking if they can feel the growing tension nearby. Standing with his back turned, Dylan emits a terrifying aura that the knights identify as killing intent.
The senior knight grabs the defeated recruit's collar, mocking him for showing a defiant look in his eyes. A close-up shows the intense gaze of the man as he listens to the senior's arrogant taunts.
The senior knight condescendingly offers another spar while Dylan stands silently behind him in the training area.
Dylan abruptly accepts the challenge on the recruit's behalf, shocking the arrogant senior knight with his intervention.
Dylan steps forward and suggests settling everyone's complaints through a series of spars with him instead. Ishael's hands rest on a pile of broken wooden boards as she assesses the damage.
Ishael praises the recruit for doing well while the exhausted boy breathes heavily after the manual labor.
The narrative reveals the recruit is actually the Emperor in disguise, seeking to investigate his brother's new wife.
The disguised Emperor looks back at Ishael, explaining that he has specific reasons for entering the order.
Ishael ponders the situation while the Emperor admits his goal is to discover Ishael Lorelai's true personality.
A text bubble explains the Emperor's plan to observe Ishael while working as a lowly part-timer.
Chibi Ford accidentally breaks wooden beams while palace staff members watch in a state of shock.
A senior official screams at Ford, demanding to know why he is making so many mistakes.
Ford is kicked and berated by staff, lamenting that he is finally experiencing the life of a subordinate.
Ishael comforts the tearful boy, gently explaining that everyone makes mistakes when starting something new.
Surrounded by flowers, Ishael beams as she suggests they should help each other with their respective weaknesses.
Heart-tipped arrows strike the Emperor's true form and his disguise as he reacts to Ishael's kindness. 16 words.
Ishael asks why the boy looks surprised, while Ford frantically tries to hide his emotional reaction.
Ford determines not to fall for her kindness while vowing to uncover her real identity eventually.
Ishael and Ford arrive at the training area as a crowd excitedly gathers to watch the duel. Ishael asks Ford if he wants to watch the duel, and he agrees with a cheerful thumbs up. A steel sword lies abandoned on the ground near a gloved hand during the heat of training. 16 words. Dylan stands victoriously over a group of knights defeated during their intense training session.
While cleaning his sword, Dylan hears a joyful laugh coming from the hallway nearby.
Ishael approaches with the hooded boy, jokingly asking if she failed to meet expectations.
Dylan watches with suspicion, silently questioning the identity of the boy standing beside Ishael. Ishael laughs heartily while making a relatable joke about an office worker's love for weekends.
A crystalline heart wrapped in sharp thorns pulses with a sudden and intense narrative energy.
Dylan clutches his chest, confused by a strange and unfamiliar feeling stirring within his heart.
Sir Dylan approaches the pair while Ishmael notes his presence and greets him warmly.
Ishael introduces the two men while Dylan stares down the nervous boy with chilling intensity.
Dylan notices the boy avoiding eye contact before asking Ishael if she is heading somewhere.
The hooded boy urgently grabs Ishael's arm, insisting that he must accompany her immediately.
Ford frantically pulls Ishael away, claiming they are busy while she argues they have time. Standing in a dark aura, Dylan ominously wonders if he should eliminate the suspicious newcomer. Sir Dylan looks surprised as Ishael calls out to him while being led away.
Radiant and cheerful, Ishael waves goodbye while promising to see the knight at home later.
A close-up captures the woman's graceful stride as she walks away into the bright light.
Dylan's face flushes a deep red as his heart begins to race from her words. The knight clutches his pounding heart, overwhelmed by the casual intimacy of her parting message.
A figure collapses onto a plush sofa with a heavy and exhausted-sounding thud.
The Emperor complains about his difficult day, while Michael notes the successful completion of his paperwork.
While eating an apple, the Emperor requests the results of the investigation he previously ordered.
A hand reaches out to receive a stack of papers detailing Ishmael's personal background.
The Emperor questions if Dylan truly respects Ishael after seeing the knight's blushing romantic expression.
A close-up of the Emperor's eye captures his intense focus while he enjoys his snack.
The Emperor reviews the documents and confirms the couple is currently residing in the newlywed town.
A memory shows the Emperor giving Dylan gold while noting his brother is hiding his identity. A close-up of a mischievous grin suggests that a new plot is being formed.
Michael feels a sudden chill as the Emperor laughs ominously about his next secretive scheme. The Emperor confirms the couple's current location while wearing a satisfied and confident smirk.
Ishael points out a new arrival in their mailbox while standing outside their home.
The couple leans in together to read a mysterious document they found in their mail.
A formal notice announces a mandatory picnic program for all newlyweds scheduled for the upcoming weekend.
A table is covered in a delicious and golden spread of freshly baked pies and bread. Narrative boxes explain a government policy designed to help newlyweds secure housing amidst rising prices. A faceless bride and groom stand among roses, representing the idealized image of a wedding.
Dark silhouettes highlight the growing economic burden and frustration of purchasing homes in the capital.
A hand quickly pulls out a document from the Imperial Housing Supply Management Bureau. A colorful banner enthusiastically advertises the first week of the mandatory picnic program for newlyweds. 3 palace employees stand in a field looking completely exhausted and drained of all energy.
A close-up of a shouting mouth with a curled mustache emphasizes a loud command.
Director Emmanuel proudly introduces the motivational catchphrase he created for his dedicated staff members.
The staff reacts with deadpan expressions while Emmanuel boasts about sacrificing his lunch for work.
Emmanuel orders his subordinates to chant his passion slogan with more energy and conviction.
Staff members grumble about weekend work while preparing the picnic area under the director's orders.
A female staff member orders a man named Sorban to bring the necessary equipment over.
Sorban begrudgingly acknowledges the command while looking toward the director with a tired expression. A text bubble captures an employee's silent frustration regarding the lack of weekend rest.
A worker questions the necessity of the weekend event while the director insists they follow him.
Director Emmanuel reflects on his high ambitions and his choice to prioritize his career over marriage.
Narrative text reveals Emmanuel's internal belief that his current professional status is simply not enough. Emmanuel reflects on his dedication since taking charge of the public housing supply task.
Emmanuel triumphantly declares that achieving a high position is his ultimate life dream.
Standing before his staff, Emmanuel boasts that their humble beginnings will lead to greatness. A text bubble captures the staff's private complaint about being sacrificed for his ambition. 3 palace employees look on with expressions of deep exhaustion and utter lack of enthusiasm. Emmanuel salutes as he watches the first group of happy newlywed couples arrive at the picnic area. A pink-haired man and black-haired woman walk together, looking like a blissful newlywed couple.
Multiple couples walk through the sunlit field while onlookers admire their sweet and happy appearance.
Ishael and Dylan arrive looking incredibly stiff, prompting immediate doubts about the reality of their relationship.
The awkward distance between the couple causes the director and his staff to stare suspiciously.
Emmanuel identifies Ishael as a palace administrator while his subordinate confirms her professional identity. Emmanuel looks intensely suspicious while closely observing the interactions of the newly arrived couple.
The narrative notes the visible distance between Ishmael and Dylan as they stand together.
Emmanuel wonders if Ishmael is committing marriage fraud, while the woman looks on nervously.
Ishael studies the staff and privately wonders where she has seen these people before.
The disguised Emperor watches the unfolding scene with a neutral and somewhat bored expression.
Dylan looks at the event banner and dismisses the chosen slogan as being incredibly tacky.
A nearby couple behaves affectionately, with the husband asking his wife to focus only on him.
A playful text bubble surrounded by hearts suggests a bored couple should share a kiss. Ishael and Dylan stand in silhouette while another couple worries about being observed by others.
Ishael looks at Dylan with focus and tells him to do his absolute best.
Dylan looks back at Ishael and calmly acknowledges her command by using her name.
A text bubble reveals that the couple spent the previous night strengthening their mutual resolve.
Dialogue over a formal letter suggests the couple should start using each other's first names.
Ishael reaches out to Dylan, explaining they must hold hands naturally to avoid being suspicious. Ishael urges Dylan to be brave and follow her lead despite his obvious hesitation. A close-up captures Dylan's blushing face as he struggles with the intimacy of holding hands. Framed by roses, the couple holds hands while vowing not to let their contract be discovered. A squirrel eats an acorn in the forest while a voice calls for newlyweds to gather.
Emmanuel uses a megaphone to announce the start of flower viewing and check for picnic mats.
Emmanuel orders the group to begin eating while staff members whisper about the effectiveness of the test. The scene focuses on a beautifully prepared slice of cake topped with fresh green grapes.
Another tray of desserts features perfectly arranged cake squares decorated with various fresh berries.
Emmanuel is delighted by the romantic couples while a staff member criticizes his nosy behavior. Ishael and Dylan sit on their picnic mat, looking surprised as the director approaches them.
Emmanuel questions why the pair has not yet opened their lunchbox for the group meal.
The disguised emperor smirks knowingly while watching the awkward interaction between the director and Dylan.
Dylan and Ishmael share an intense glance before preparing to reveal the contents of their basket. 16 words.
The lunchbox reveals a detailed food portrait of Ishmael surrounded by a field of flowers. Emmanuel reacts with shock at the sight of a lunchbox meticulously modeled after the man's wife.
Spectators gush over Dylan's apparent devotion while Ishael hopes they have successfully fooled everyone.
The disguised emperor watches Ishmael with a look of intense focus and growing personal suspicion.
Ishael experiences a sudden moment of clarity as she recognizes the true identity of the staff.
A text bubble reflects Ishael's sudden realization that these people might be here to monitor her.
A chair is slammed to the floor in a fit of rage within a darkened room.
Lady Martha stands in the shadows, looking down at the overturned chair with an ominous presence.
A text bubble conveys the speaker's bitter assessment of someone as an ungrateful wench. Lady Martha's face is twisted in a terrifying snarl of pure hatred and boiling anger.
Martha yells about being betrayed while a letter confirming the marriage sits on the desk. An ominous shadow looms over the decorative border of the room as the scene ends.
A legal notice for damage compensation is placed over a background of formal text. A text bubble officially notifies the recipient of their legal obligation to compensate Ishael Lorelei. A message to readers encourages them to continue reading the story on a specific website.
A promotional illustration of a dark-haired woman invites readers to visit the scan group's website.
A reddish-brown-haired woman asks what is going on while her companion looks on shocked.
The woman questions why the loan application under Ishmael's name was officially rejected by the office.
A text bubble reveals that Ishmael is no longer considered a part of the family.
The brown-haired woman looks pensive while processing the news of Ishael's sudden removal from the family.
A city clerk informs the family that Lady Ishmael has been re-registered under another household.
The mother gasps in disbelief while wondering if Ishael and Pedro have actually gotten married.
A blonde man bursts into the room in a state of panic, searching for Ishael's location.
The mother asks Pedro if he has arrived to deliver the wedding invitation to the family. A close-up shows the blonde man's mouth open in a silent scream of utter despair. Pedro cries hysterically while announcing that Ishmael sent a legal warning demanding compensation for all gifts.
The family reacts with confusion and outrage when they learn Ishael wants her expensive gifts returned. The mother throws documents in a fit of rage while questioning her daughter's sudden betrayal.
A hand clutches the formal claim for damages as the family reels from the legal news. 16 words.
The woman questions if such a legal document could be sent without Ishael's personal consent.
A close-up shows a hand clutching the document while a thought bubble questions her consent.
A flashback shows Ishael with glasses holding a document written in an ancient language she took.
A thought bubble reflects on the family's belief that they raised and protected Ishael through everything.
The woman views Ishmael's legal action as a betrayal, recalling Ishmael's life as a household servant. Pedro collapses on the floor while worrying about how to repay the money they already spent.
The sister, Soldika, plots to use a palace contact to uncover the identity of Ishael's husband.
Framed by wings, Soldika smiles maliciously while doubting that Ishael's husband truly loves her.
Ford reflects on Soldika's claim that her sister was tricked into a sham marriage arrangement.
Onlookers observe Ishmael and Dylan together, questioning if they truly act like a married couple.
The mustachioed director asks his companion if their behavior actually proves they are truly married.
A man argues that anyone could prepare a romantic lunchbox without any genuine love involved.
The man smirks while dismissively judging the couple's relationship as a calculated performance for others.
Ishael looks irritated behind her glasses as she listens to the staff's disrespectful whispers and doubts. 16 words.
Ishael stands up defiantly, promising to show the group what real newlywed affection actually looks like.
Ishael smiles with a determined expression as she prepares to prove her relationship is genuine.
Dylan looks at Ishmael with a neutral and stoic expression during their public lunchevat.
Dylan reflects on the surprising nickname Ishael used, wondering if she really called him her sweetheart. A hand reaches out to touch a face as the couple initiates a more intimate interaction.
Ishael stares up at Dylan as he leans in closer to her during the picnic event.
The staff members react with extreme shock and disbelief after hearing Ishael call Dylan her baby.
The narrative shifts to the previous day as the scene transitions to a grand brick building.
Dylan enters a room where knights are drinking, and they greet him with surprise and excitement. Text bubbles reveal the knights miss Dylan's presence and his delicious duck stew at the dormitory.
Dylan listens silently as his comrades continue to talk about their shared time together.
The knights react with explosive shock upon hearing the scandalous rumor that Sir Dylan has a girlfriend.
Comrades gossiped about Dylan's past lack of interest in women, noting he seemed married to his sword. Dylan asks if there is a problem while his friends quickly deny it and offer to watch.
A knight with white hair confidently claims that women absolutely love receiving surprise kisses from men.
A light-haired knight smiles warmly while preparing to offer more unsolicited romantic advice to his comrade. A dark-haired knight gives a thumbs up while advising Dylan to call his partner a sweet nickname.
The group laughs about their perfect advice while Dylan diligently takes notes on their romantic suggestions.
The knights suddenly worry if their dubious advice is actually helping Sir Dylan's romantic pursuits. A golden trophy with a heart-shaped ruby at the center sparkles brightly on a pedestal.
To the crowd's amazement, Dylan sweeps Ishael off her feet and carries her in his arms.
Emmanuel screams at a subordinate named Sorbonne for causing a scene while the worker tries to explain.
Ishael whispers to Dylan about an official she overheard bad-mouthing them who might be family.
A close-up reveals Dylan's sharp, analytical gaze as he processes the information about Ishael's family.
As Ishmael considers the trophy's value, Dylan emits a dark aura and vows to eliminate their enemy.
A hand slides a document across a table, requesting a transfer for a specific palace employee.
Michael asks the Emperor for clarification on the transfer, noting the person's terrible work ethic.
Michael asks if the decision is personal, while the Emperor insists it is for the palace's good.
The Emperor mentions reading a report about a bomb planted by terrorists found the previous night. The Emperor listens with a stoic expression while discussing the serious security threat to the palace. Narrative boxes explain the history of the Red Fortress, a dangerous terrorist group seeking power. The Emperor confirms he has a suspect for the bombing, causing Michael to react with extreme shock. The Emperor's face turns pale as he reveals the name of the suspect is Ford. The Emperor describes Ford as a creepy, useless staff member who harasses noblewomen, then suddenly collapses.
Michael rushes to the Emperor's side, asking if he is all right after his sudden and dramatic outburst.
A mental image shows the Emperor lamenting his exhaustion while struggling to maintain his composure.
Text bubbles convey a speaker's intense frustration over being messed with and claim a misunderstanding.
In a quiet alleyway, a group of 3 people stands together while discussing a shocking revelation.
Sorbonne tells Soldika and Pedro that the couple didn't seem like they were in a contract marriage. Sorbonne mentions that Dylan is actually a famous knight, shocking Soldika with this new information. Soldika asks if Dylan is more impressive than Pedro, while Pedro wonders why he is involved.
Flowers frame the conversation as Sorbonne describes Dylan as a handsome, tall, and powerful palace knight. Dylan stands in his formal knight's uniform holding his sword while looking incredibly noble and strong.
Soldika touches her chin thoughtfully, questioning if her sister's lover is truly as amazing as they say.
Pedro reacts with disbelief and jealousy while Soldika focuses intently on the details of Ishael's relationship.
Soldika thanks Sorbonne for the helpful information, leaving him blushing and flustered by her attention.
Sorbonne reflects on his devotion to Soldika, believing that helping such an angelic woman is his duty.
Soldika grins mischievously while a narrative box notes how some people always covet what others have. A narrative box explains that some individuals fail to realize that desiring another person's possessions is wrong.
Soldika's expression turns sinister and dark as she continues to plot against her sister.
Soldika leans in and asks Sorbonne for his help with her next secretive and malicious plan. Framed by white roses, Soldika puts on a sweet and innocent act to manipulate those around her.
A close-up shows a finger pointing upward, emphasizing a command or a specific point of interest. 16 words.
An official orders staff to ensure all flowers are under preservation spells for an upcoming palace event. The Emperor approaches an official named Rebecca to check on the progress of the event's setup. Rebecca and the Emperor admire the beautiful white flowers while reflecting on how quickly time passes. The Emperor looks pensive while wearing his ornate, floral-patterned formal attire for the palace occasion. The Emperor asks Dylan about his married life, and Dylan mentions their recent honeymoon picnic together.
Dylan looks surprised as he recalls Ishael calling him by a sweet and intimate nickname.
The Emperor watches Dylan with curiosity, wondering if he really heard the stoic knight being called darling.
A close-up captures Dylan's intense red eyes as he reflects on his deepening feelings for Ishmael.
Standing with his hands behind his back, Dylan remains silent while lost in his own private thoughts.
The Emperor notes he has never seen Dylan look like that before, questioning if it's more than admiration.
A staff member informs the Emperor that the posters for the upcoming ball are finally finished.
An elegant poster advertises the Imperial Palace Ball for government officials, featuring a dancing couple.
Ishael stares at the announcement poster while realizing that the annual palace ball is happening again.
Ishael looks back at her colleagues while privately hoping she can attend the ball with Dylan.
A staff member mentions hearing gossip from Sorbonne about the upcoming event in front of a poster. Colleagues mock the idea of Dylan bringing Ishael to the ball, cruelly calling her an ugly duckling.
Favry mentions she thought Ishael was dating Ford while the man calls them a perfect pair of nerds.
Favry mocks Ishael's looks, prompting an off-screen person to question who she is calling a potato. Favry asks if the person is truly in Dylan's league as a finger points directly at them. Ishael points a finger at the laughing man, mockingly asking why the sweet potato is laughing.
Ishael and the others stand near a poster for the upcoming Imperial Palace Ball. Text bubbles express concern that the woman has completely lost her mind or might be drunk.
Thoughts reflect on how Ishael's family pressured her to hide her face to focus on work.
Ishael considers changing her appearance as the small hooded Ford watches her from the background.
Ford offers a full makeover, surprising Ishmael with his sudden presence and his very sharp ears.
A close-up highlights Ishael's surprised expression as she processes the strange man's sudden offer.
Ford asks Ishmael if she is requesting for him to be her partner for the ball.
Ford panics, insisting he is not a predator, while Ishael reacts with utter confusion to his outburst.
Ford tells Ishmael to simply take the document he is handing over to her.
A sparkling ticket for the exclusive Favry salon is shown in a close-up.
Ishael is overjoyed, recognizing the salon as the place every noble lady dreams of visiting.
Ishael realizes that obtaining such a rare ticket is nearly impossible even for the wealthy.
Ford shouts that he will meet Ishmael at the salon entrance as he runs away quickly. Ishael wonders about Ford's true identity, since even government officials cannot secure such exclusive tickets. A decorative text box announces that the morning of the palace ball has finally arrived. A large speech bubble enthusiastically welcomes visitors to the prestigious and famous Favry salon. Favry and her assistants greet Ishael warmly, ready to serve their VIP guest for the day.
Favory boasts about her skills while her assistants carry a surprised Ishael toward the styling chair.
Ishael agrees to the process while privately wishing that Dylan could have accompanied her.
A flashback shows the couple at dinner where Dylan agreed to attend the ball together.
Dylan explains he must handle some business first but promises to meet Ishael at the ball.
Ishael smiles brightly while wondering why her chest suddenly feels tight during their intimate meal.
Favory stops the process to ask if Ishael really intended to wear her glasses to the ball.
A close-up focuses on Ishael's large round glasses as she looks on with a nervous expression.
Ishael admits she planned to discard the glasses, so Favory gleefully smashes them into pieces.
Favory claps her hands together and announces they are ready to proceed to the next stage. Favory and her assistants gasp in collective shock after seeing Ishael without her heavy glasses.
A thought bubble reflects on why no one noticed the woman's true appearance much earlier.
As the glasses vanish into dust, it is revealed they were actually enchanted with a disguise spell.
A narrative bubble notes that a truly beautiful lady has finally arrived at the salon today. A series of panels shows feet walking and the elegant swish of a long dress.
Dylan stretches and notes it has been a long time since he wore casual clothes outside.
Ishael calls out a sweet nickname to Dylan as she prepares to head out for the day.
The couple confirms their plan to meet up later at the ballroom for the evening event.
Dylan waves as Ishael calls him darling, leading onlookers to admire their apparent romantic devotion.
A palace worker reflects on how the couple has seemed much more genuine since the recent picnic.
A close-up shows a hand reaching into a trouser pocket to retrieve a hidden item.
A hand holds out a small red jewelry box against a soft and floral background.
A close-up of a white shirt sleeve is shown against a pink floral backdrop. Dylan looks down at the red box in his hand with a stoic and thoughtful expression.
Favory explains their unique process of blending modern magic with traditional spells and rare ingredients.
Favory orders her staff to bring out the special beauty set reserved only for VIP clients.
The two assistants enthusiastically agreed to fetch the special items for Ishael's grand transformation.
The staff gathers ingredients in a shop filled with magical artifacts and a large bubbling cauldron.
Favory tells Ishael to relax while they prepare the magical concoctions for her makeover.
Narrative text notes that Ishael never suspected her glasses were hiding her face with a transformation spell.
Narrative text explains the round glasses were a gift from her parents during childhood.
Ishael's mother calls her over to present a gift, though Ishael questions why she would suddenly receive one.
A close-up shows the shimmering round glasses presented as a very special gift.
Ishael mentions her vision is fine, but her mother angrily snaps at her for arguing about the gift.
The mother orders her to always wear the glasses, while Ishmael reflects on her first parental gift.
Young Ishael clutches the glasses, viewing them as her only precious memory of home.
Narrative text reflects on how demanding legal compensation for her past treatment was right.
The mother looms like a puppet master over a small, helpless version of Ishmael.
A thought bubble predicts that the family will try to reach out after Dylan.
Current Ishael arrives at the salon where the staff excitedly invites her to begin the process.
Favory enthusiastically announces the start of a personalized beauty spell specifically designed for Lady Ishael.
A magical lizard with roses on its head provides a tricky component for magic.
The assistants gather a bubbling substance that smells like strawberries as they prepare the magical concoction.
A magical white goat with long lashes poses within a frame of delicate flowers.
Favory instructs the staff to combine all the rare ingredients and boil them together in the cauldron. Waving her wand over the pot, Favory declares the magical mixture perfect for the transformation.
A hand reaches out as swirling pink magical energy begins the woman's grand transformation.
Ishael gasps in surprise as the intense magical aura of the beauty spells surrounds her entire body.
Ishael stands tall in a magnificent violet and pink gown as the transformation magic completes.
Ford's vision becomes blurry as he observes the intense magical power of the makeover.
Ford asks Ishmael if she wants to make a bet while she reacts with confusion to his offer. Looking at Ishael's new form, Ford wonders if Dylan will be able to recognize her at the ball.
A close-up captures Ishael's shimmering green eye as her transformation reaches its final stage. The Grand Imperial Palace glows under a starry night sky during the annual ball, 15 words. Checking his pocket watch, Dylan waits in the palace gardens for Ishael to arrive at the event.
A close-up highlights Dylan's intense red eyes as he waits for his partner's arrival.
Guests mingle near the palace fountain while laughing and discussing the events of the evening.
Dylan regrets not escorting Ishael himself while a guest exclaims in awe of the ballroom's grandeur. Dylan spots Pedro boasting about his looks while surrounded by other socialites at the palace.
Dylan judges Pedro as looking worse in person while remembering Ishael's warnings to be careful.
Pedro laughs loudly while mockingly asking if someone is planning to marry a former girlfriend.
Pedro cruelly insults Ishael by calling her an ugly broomstick and claiming he dumped her long ago.
Dylan's aura turns dark as he stands behind the man who just insulted Ishael.
Pedro is startled by the arrival of a mysterious, impressive man who catches the crowd's attention.
Dylan turns his head slightly while wondering about the identity of the mysterious female. 15 words.
Elegant heels click against the floor as a mysterious woman enters the palace grounds.
Ishael is revealed in a stunning white and blue gown adorned with floral decorations and jewels.
Dylan stares in silence as the beautiful woman walks toward him under the night sky.
Ishael stops before Dylan, looking up at him while the background is filled with decorative pink patterns.
Ford watches the couple through binoculars and celebrates the moment they finally meet at the ball.
A hooded man questions the use of magic for such a trivial matter while Ford defends his sister.
Ford decides his work is finished and leaves the rest of the evening to the couple.
A small white bird wearing a bow tie watches the masters from a high vantage.
Ishael formally greets Dylan with a polite smile, though she feels nervous about his reaction. A close-up reveals Dylan's widening red eyes as he recognizes the beautiful woman before him.
Dylan looks down at Ishmael with a stunned expression, processing her incredible and unrecognizable new appearance.
Ishael is shocked that Dylan recognized her so quickly despite her heavy magical disguise and makeover.
Dylan leans down to kiss Ishael's hand while asking if she will be his partner for the ball.
The socialites whisper in disbelief about whether the beautiful woman could truly be the woman they once mocked.
Two white-gloved hands are joined together against a background of soft blue floral decorations.
Dylan and the transformed Ishmael stand together as she hopes he sees her true self.
Amidst the starry night, the couple discusses the unpleasant social climbers swarming around the party.
Guests at the ballroom gasp in awe as the impressive couple makes their grand entrance together.
Soldika poses elegantly in her green gown, showcasing her carefully crafted image to the other guests.
Guests whisper about Soldika's trendy dress, noting she arrived with Administrator Sorbonne as her partner.
Gossipers mock Soldika's status, remarking that being a commoner prevents her from being truly perfect.
Sorbonne asks Soldika if the insults bother her, but she dismisses them as merely receiving attention.
A narrative box reveals Soldika believes the tragic story of being a commoner suits her well.
Soldika poses with imaginary white wings, fully embracing her self-assigned role as a delicate lady.
Narrative text explains that Soldika is playing a persona to manipulate the perceptions of those around.
As the clock strikes 8, someone informs Soldika that her sister should be arriving very soon.
Sorbonne bets the couple will arrive together, while Soldika privately mocks the idea of that happening.
Soldika imagines Ishmael appearing in messy clothes and glasses, looking like a joke to her husband.
Soldika plots to rescue her sister from floor scrubbing to be seen as a heroic savior.
Soldika dreams of Ishmael begging for forgiveness and returning to her control, calling it perfect. The crowd erupts in excitement as Dylan arrives with a stunning woman standing by his side. Dylan and Ishmael descend the grand staircase together, leading guests to question the beautiful woman's identity.
Dylan maintains a noble and stoic expression as he enters the palace ballroom with Ishmael.
Soldika stares at Dylan in surprise, realizing the knight is much more handsome than she expected. 16 words.
Soldika turns her gaze to the woman next to Dylan, noting her stunning and unknown beauty.
Ishael stands elegantly in her blue and white gown adorned with jewels and floral decorations.
Soldika smirks as guests praise Ishael's glowing hair and claim she is the most beautiful lady.
Soldika fumes as the crowd compares her unfavorably to Ishael, while Sorbonne tries to comfort her.
Brushing off Sorbonne's concerns, Soldika aggressively shouts at him not to show her any pity.
Soldika decides to introduce herself, dismissively assuming that the beautiful stranger must also be a commoner.
Ishael looks on as Soldika suddenly approaches her with a polite but shallow greeting.
Soldika questions the couple's identity, noting she hasn't met the knight or the lady before.
Ishael stares at her sister in silence, internally challenging Soldika to finally recognize her true face.
Soldika wonders if the magic of her sister's old round glasses was truly that powerful.
Soldika snaps her fan closed and accuses the silent woman of being extremely rude to her.
Soldika demands to know the woman's noble house, mockingly asking if she is just a commoner.
Soldika points her fan at the woman while continuing her verbal assault on the mysterious stranger.
Dylan places a hand on Ishael's shoulder and sternly asks Soldika what she is doing.
Standing protectively behind Ishael, Dylan glares at the group with a dark and intimidating aura.
Pedro stammers about just trying to introduce himself as the group stands together in the ballroom.
Onlookers mock Soldika for her lack of manners, noting she is always acting high and mighty. 16 words.
Ishael places a hand on Dylan's chest and reassures him that she is perfectly fine. Stepping forward, Ishael looks directly at the group and asks if they really don't recognize her.
Ishael mocks the group for their disappointment, while Soldika fumes over being insulted by a nobody. Soldika shouts in anger while Pedro tries to intervene and tell her that she has done enough. Soldika snaps at Pedro for his interference while he looks away in visible frustration and stress.
Pedro reaches out a hand to Ishmael, asking if his friend's behavior had frightened her.
Pedro offers a dazzling smile while attempting to win over the beautiful woman with a gesture.
Dylan offers to handle the man, but Ishael decides to deal with the terrible pickup line herself.
Ishael confirms they have met before, leaving Pedro surprised and questioning where they cross paths.
Pedro touches his head and looks confused while trying to remember where he saw the lady before.
A small, knowing smile plays on Ishael's lips as she prepares to reveal her identity. Ishael expresses surprise that Pedro and Soldika failed to recognize her as she stares them down. Ishael says her sister's name aloud, leaving Soldika gasping in absolute terror and shock.
A final narrative bubble conveys Soldika's shocked realization that the stunning woman is actually her sister.
A purple-haired chibi witch greets readers and encourages them to support the site creators.
Identifying herself as Soldika Lorelei, a young girl poses confidently beneath a bright spotlight. Soldika reflects that for her to truly shine, a darker role must always exist nearby.
Echoing through the darkness, the sound of rhythmic clapping highlights the performance taking place. Spectators remark on the differences between the sisters while Soldika revels in being the prettier one.
Narrative text notes the role her sister always played as a crack appears in the spotlight. Soldika is frozen in terror as she stares at the beautiful woman standing before her.
Smiling mockingly, Ishael asks her sister how she could possibly fail to recognize her face. Ishael reflects on how her sister was always supposed to be a background character in life.
Soldika fumes with jealousy, wondering why Ishael is suddenly shining brighter than she ever could.
Looking around the ballroom, Soldika stammers that the current situation simply cannot be real. Pedro frantically asks if the woman is truly Ishmael while she calmly confirms her identity.
When asked about her transformation, Ishael casually mentions she received help from an outside source.
Soldika is stunned into silence, barely able to repeat the name of the prestigious Favori salon.
Guests whisper in confusion, wondering how a woman like Ishael secured an all-day VIP ticket.
Thoughts reflect on how Ishmael couldn't have visited such a salon without significant wealth or connections.
Clenching her fan tightly, Soldika decides that the news of her sister's makeover makes no sense. Soldika grabs Ishael and desperately tells her sister to come back to her senses immediately.
Soldika accuses Ishael of taking a loan just to find a man and ignoring her family.
Soldika warns Ishmael that she won't find happiness by abandoning her family for a marriage. Dylan looks on as socialites gossip about the bride taking out a loan for a man.
Soldika smirks as she plots to humiliate Ishmael through the manipulation and politics of high society.
Standing atop a pile of defeated wolves, a lone survivor howls under the full moon. A close-up of a golden eye reveals Soldika's belief that amateurs are nothing compared to her. Looking toward the couple, Soldika notes that incitement and fabrication are her greatest specialties.
Ishael pulls Dylan aside to tell him something important before they enter the main hall.
Ishael warns Dylan that Soldika will cause a scene and ask him to remain quiet. Winking playfully, Ishael assures her partner that she has already prepared for every possible outcome.
Soldika hides behind a handkerchief and begins a theatrical performance of crying for the guests. Peeking over her cloth, Soldika notes the silence and wonders why the atmosphere feels off.
Guests mock Soldika's performance, calling her shameless for exploiting Ishael as her personal cash cow.
Soldika is shocked by the insults, realizing the crowd is actually criticizing her compensation claims. Standing behind Dylan, Ishael watches her sister and mentally calls her a very foolish girl.
Ishael asks her sister if she still thinks she is someone who can be looked down upon.
Whispers spread through the palace as people discuss the identity of Sir Dylan's Debrind. Administrators discuss the breakdown of the compensation claim, calling the family's actions truly insane. Workers sympathize with Isiel's struggle, admitting they would also want to escape such a family. A narrative box notes that the ballroom is specifically reserved for government administrators during the event. The room is filled with guests who almost all work within the various branches of administration.
Ishael coldly tells her sister to stop relying on her and to start acting like an adult.
Soldika lets out a loud sniffle as she doubles down on her performance of false grief.
Soldika cries out that her sister is mean and wonders how she could be treated so poorly.
Guests are confused by the crying while Ishmael mockingly asks her sister how she likes her tear tactic.
A narrative bubble predicts that everyone will now perceive the accuser as the truly bad person.
Dylan and Ishael share a meaningful look as they proceed with their calculated counterattack.
Ishael suddenly clutches her head in pain while complaining about a severe and sudden headache.
Dylan catches Ishmael as she collapses, shouting her name while guests watch in total concern.
Soldika stares in disbelief as Ishael uses a dramatic fake faint to steal the crowd's sympathy. Ishael cheers internally at Dylan's perfect acting while he holds her with a worried expression.
A flashback reveals the couple practicing the fainting routine in the palace gardens before the ball.
Ishael decides that simply crying is too basic and plans to stage a dramatic collapse.
Soldika is stunned by Ishael's sudden fainting act and watches her sister intently with suspicion.
Dylan struggles to contain his laughter while holding Ishael as she continues her dramatic performance.
Onlookers whisper in confusion, wondering if the beautiful woman has suddenly lost her mind.
Soldika mockingly dismisses the idea of Ishael being a wife and decides to play along.
Soldika points out that if Ishael is truly a wife, she should have a wedding ring.
Ishael is struck with a sudden realization that she completely forgot to wear a wedding ring.
Narrative text emphasizes the importance of the ball as a purple-haired chibi witch appears.
Before the entire ballroom, Soldika loudly questions the absence of Ishael's wedding ring to humiliate her.
Dylan remains silent and maintains a noble, calm expression while holding his supposedly unconscious bride.
A close-up of Ishael's hand highlights her internal panic over forgetting such a crucial detail. 15 words.
Dylan calls out to Ishmael, prompting her to look up and prepare for his next move.
Dylan explains they were both busy with work and skipped the proper steps for a couple.
Kneeling before Ishael in the ballroom, Dylan prepares to present her with a very special item.
Dylan presents a ring, explaining his rush to marry her while Pedro reacts with visible shock.
Ishael looks on in silence as Dylan mentally declares that she belongs solely to him. The ballroom erupts in cheers as guests celebrate the most romantic proposal they have ever witnessed.
Ishael reflects on Dylan's unexpected sweetness while the background fills with soft, romantic, decorative patterns.
Ishael suddenly stands up, her long blue and white gown swishing around her in the blur.
Guests whisper in anticipation as Ishmael prepares to make a major announcement to the entire ballroom.
A close-up highlights Dylan's surprise as he watches Ishael take charge of the social situation.
Ishael announces their upcoming wedding and promises to send out invitations to the guests very soon.
Soldika growls in fury while Ishael hopes all the guests will be able to attend.
Ishael celebrates her victory as she mockingly bids her sister farewell and leaves the ballroom.
A final narrative bubble conveys a warning that someone will soon regret their recent actions.
Soldika screams that her father will arrive soon, causing Ishael to freeze with a shocked expression.
A dark flashback reveals young Ishmael cowering on the floor in a moment of extreme despair.
A shadowy man looms over Ishmael and cruelly calls her an arrogant and worthless thing.
The man orders Ishmael to step aside and allow her younger sister to have her way.
The man claims children are property while young Soldika laughs mockingly at her sister's silent tears.
The man demands absolute obedience from Ishmael, ending the memory with a heavy and oppressive silence. Sitting in the palace gardens, Ishmael notes that the entire evening has felt like a dream.
Ishael praises their teamwork while Dylan quietly contemplates the meaning of being her chosen partner.
Ishael reflects on her satisfaction, believing Soldika has finally realized the extent of her own loss.
As they walk, Ishmael mentions she has been curious about something, and Dylan invites her question.
Ishael looks up at Dylan with a curious expression as they sit together under the stars.
Dylan's gaze remains focused and calm as he waits for Ishmael to ask her important question.
Ishael glows with beauty against a backdrop of golden roses while she talks with her partner.
Dylan looks on with a stoic yet attentive expression as he listens to Ishael's quiet thoughts.
Dylan's eye reflects Ishael's image as he considers the impact of her dramatic and beautiful transformation.
Bright golden sunflowers bloom vibrantly against a dark background, symbolizing a new and hopeful beginning. Ishael leans on Dylan while joking about how she always used to look weird in public.
Ishael smiles with pure joy, fully embracing the happiness of the moment with her chosen partner.
The back of Dylan's head is shown as he listens to Ishael's lighthearted and happy chatter.
Ishael's eyes widen in a close-up, reflecting a moment of sudden surprise or realization. 15 words.
The couple sits together on a garden bench, sharing a quiet and intimate moment after the ball.
A chibi Ishael celebrates her journey, noting that there is no turning back from her path.
Ishael suggests planning a real wedding, but apologizes for speaking on Dylan's behalf without asking first. Ishael notes they can keep it small as commoners, while Dylan reacts with a nervous expression.
Dylan hunches over in sudden distress while Ishmael asks if something is wrong with her partner.
Ishael looks up at Dylan with concern and asks him what is wrong.
Dylan admits he's completely broke, causing Ishmael to shout in absolute shock and disbelief.
A text bubble reveals that Dylan spent all of his money on a single sword. Ishael realizes why they live in a unit and vows to earn the money herself.
Ishael resolves that she cannot do nothing if Dylan is buying such expensive rings.
Ishmael smiles and tells Dylan she has a plan while someone asks about his appearance.
Chibi versions of the couple hide while discussing Dylan's quiet and overwhelming presence.
Ishael privately finds Dylan's sulking face cute even though he looks ready to kill.
Dylan looks stoic as the narrative mentions the Grand Duke of Castilla in the north. A narrative box explains that Dylan was cursed with an inescapable fate before his birth.
Chains and a burst of light emphasize the heavy burden of the inessable curse. Fearsome demonic figures with glowing red eyes represent the dark power within the curse. Dylan stands victorious atop a mountain of defeated monsters under a gloomy gray sky.
Narrative text notes Dylan spent his life trapped within the confines of the Winter Castle. Guests compare the Madman of Blood to Sir Dylan while someone defends his character.
Ishael chides her partner, warning him not to talk about others so carelessly in public.
A close-up captures Ishael's wide-eyed and startled expression during their garden conversation. Dylan apologizes for his lack of awareness while Ishmael tries to explain her reaction. Dylan asks Ishmael if she is familiar with the rumors regarding the Grand Duke.
Ishael listens intently as they sit together in the quiet palace gardens after the ball. Ishael laughs off rumors of the Duke eating people while Dylan reacts with visible shock.
A text bubble confirms that such rumors indeed exist regarding the mysterious Grand Duke.
Narrative text describes the Grand Duke as being a quite mysterious and elusive figure.
Looking away, Dylan dismisses the stories about the Duke as being merely baseless rumors.
Ishmael insists that being cursed is not his fault, leaving Dylan looking surprised and touched.
Ishael laughs heartily while Dylan sulks beside her with his arms crossed in embarrassment.
Dylan covers his face with a gloved hand, overwhelmed by embarrassment from Ishael's comment.
Ishael panics and apologizes for speaking nonsense while Dylan remains mortified by her words.
Ishael happily leads Dylan away by the hand as he continues to hide his face.
The scene shifts to the moonlit palace towers as a door opens to the interior.
Ford arrives reporting he came as soon as he received the letter through a messenger bird.
Ford admits he secretly went to see if his younger brother's married life was going well. A close-up of a blue eye accompanies a simple question of surprise and inquiry. The master reminisces about his disciple's past and asks what happens if you ignore someone twice. Narrative text explains the master's cheerful past was lost after the tragic deaths of his children.
The master stands alone, his emotions described as being drier than a barren desert wasteland.
Ford asks if the letter's contents were true, prompting a serious expression from the silver-haired man.
A close-up of a calm blue eye focuses on the seriousness of the current conversation.
The master confirms hearing information from a witness and asks Ford who that witness actually was. The silver-haired man reveals he consulted a fortune teller for a reading just for fun. A masked fortune teller sits across from the master with a glowing purple crystal ball. The fortune teller points a finger while declaring that the reading was a serious matter.
The fortune teller claims the master's granddaughter is being held by a cruel, vicious foster family.
The fortune teller explains the girl escaped and managed to get married just a while ago. The master learns that the granddaughter's husband is an obsessive man and a real piece of work. A prophecy warns that once the husband fully awakens, no one will be safe from him.
A dark figure looms behind Ishael while the fortune teller warns the master about his granddaughter.
The silver-haired man sighs and finishes recounting the story told by the mysterious witness.
Ford is visibly stunned and dismisses the entire story as an obvious and elaborate scam.
The master and his companions express a desperate need to find the lost granddaughter right away.
The master wipes away tears while explaining that finding his blood relative has made him emotional.
Ford smiles warmly, telling his master there is no need to apologize for showing his true feelings.
Ford vows to invoke the emperor's name to help the granddaughter secure a divorce from her husband.
A small blue bag is violently thrown against the stone ground of a dark, narrow alleyway.
Soldika storms through a dark street while shouting in frustration about the disastrous events of the night.
Fuming with rage, Saltika curses her sister Ishiel for pulling such a humiliating stunt at the ball.
Narrative text explains that the guest's perception of Saltika has shifted completely following her public humiliation.
Soldika begs Madame Coubret to believe her, claiming that the accusations against her are all slanderous lies.
Madame Coubret pulls her dress away in disgust and demands that Soldika let go of her immediately.
Madame Coubret cancels all future sponsorships and tells Soldika to never speak to her ever again.
Pedro remarks on Ishael's surprising beauty while Soldika glares at him with an expression of pure malice.
Neighbors complain about the noise as Soldika tells Pedro to go have an affair with her sister.
Clenching her hand tightly, Soldika vows to make Ishiel regret ever laying a hand on her.
Soldika mentions writing a letter to her father before preparing for her important examination tomorrow morning.
Pedro reminds Soldika that tomorrow is the crucial evaluation day held at the Tower of the Sage.
Pedro imagines his life after obtaining a noble title while a blushing woman looks at him admiringly.
In his daydream, Pedro sits on a throne surrounded by many beautiful women who adore him. Pedro makes a silly, blushing face while laughing to himself about his imagined future of grand luxury.
A narrative bubble describes Pedro's desire to burn with passion in a life of absolute splendor.
Wearing a bare apron, Dylan displays his impressive and stylish cooking skills for his group of friends. The table is filled with a variety of delicious and sparkling dishes that Dylan has expertly prepared. Friends praise Dylan's cooking while Ishael calls the food delicious and gives it the highest possible rating. Friends playfully tease Ishmael about her marriage while she tells them to stop saying such embarrassing nonsense.
The group discusses how everyone was shocked by Ishael's transformation, especially when she finally removed her glasses.
Guests look at a photo of the couple, still unable to believe that Ishmael actually married Dylan.
A jealous blonde woman shakes Ishael while demanding to be pampered during the events of the following day.
The blonde woman announces that she has a special gift to give to the rest of the group, 16 words. A formal wedding invitation reveals that Dylan and Ishmael are officially getting married and invites their friends.
The friends enthusiastically accept the invitation, promising that they will definitely attend the upcoming wedding celebration.
Ishael marvels at Dylan's hidden talents, noting that he even managed to create the wedding invitations himself.
Ishael reflects on Dylan's kind nature while a close-up reveals his glowing red eye and dark aura.
A doorbell rings, surprising the group and causing them to look toward the entrance of the room.
The scene shifts to the door handle as someone prepares to enter the home of the newlyweds.
Ishael welcomes the visitor with a warm smile as she opens the door to greet the newcomer. A man wearing a brown coat and hat stands at the door holding a bouquet of tulips.
A close-up of the man's face shows him smiling gently as he arrives for the gathering. The group enjoys dessert while the guest thanks the hosts for providing such a tasty and filling meal.
Sitting together in the lounge, the friends admit they originally thought the marriage announcement was just a rumor.
Ishael takes a quiet sip of her tea while listening to the conversation happening among her friends. Narrative text explains that Tav is the knight closest to Ishael and is popular due to his personality. Tav poses confidently as the narrative highlights how well-liked he is among the other knights and commoners.
A flashback shows Tav being popular with girls, though the narrative notes he isn't as popular as Dylan.
Tav offers a sandwich to Ishael in the library, leaving her looking surprised by his kind gesture.
Ishael privately worries that inviting Tav is embarrassing since he was once considered a candidate for her.
A blonde woman notes that Tav must be sad about the marriage because they were always together.
Ishael stares at her tea in silence, knowing that everyone is currently thinking about her past with Toph.
A close-up of Ishael's face reflects her somber thoughts as she considers how things used to be.
Tove places a hand on Ishael's shoulder, smiling warmly at her in front of the entire group.
Friends joke about a love triangle while Dylan glares at Tov with an incredibly dark and jealous expression.
Ishael tells Dylan to calm down, reassuring him that there is absolutely nothing between her and Toph.
An administrator friend asks the group if they have heard the latest palace rumors. Over tea, the group discusses how these specific rumors have spread rapidly among government officials.
The brown-haired man admits he cannot guess the source but intends to investigate the matter.
A chibi witch asks Ishael for her thoughts on the strange situation developing around them.
The brown-haired man remains deep in thought as the group continues their lighthearted afternoon gathering.
Dylan interrupts the conversation, suggesting that Ishael needs rest because she is clearly worn out.
The host announces the meeting is over, prompting guests to ask for leftover snacks before leaving. The scene shifts to the Tower of the Sage, standing tall against a bright blue sky.
A hand reaches for a bag, signaling the start of a very important personal mission.
Ishael stands before the tower, reflecting on the significance of the day she has long awaited.
In a flashback, young Ishmael completes a difficult thesis, hoping it will finally please her partner.
Pedro celebrates receiving the document, boastfully claiming it will secure his future status as a noble. Young Ishmael reminds him of his promise to propose, but he cruelly dismisses her feelings entirely. Pedro plans to use the thesis to gain approval from the legendary magician Claude Savoy.
The great magician Claude Savoy appears in a vision of radiant light and golden rose petals.
Ishael reflects on her past submissiveness, declaring that she is no longer that same weak girl.
Robed guards at the tower entrance are surprised when a mysterious hooded figure approaches them. Ishael asks for directions to the presentation, but guards explain only registered magicians can enter. A sudden wave of excitement ripples through the crowd as a highly anticipated guest arrives.
Crowds of girls cheer wildly, announcing that the famous Lord Claude has finally reached the tower.
Guards note that the event is full and closed due to the overwhelming number of fans. Despite the guards' firm refusal, Ishael desperately tries to find a way inside the presentation hall. Clenching her hand in frustration, Ishael refuses to let her hard work be stolen once again.
Claude looks away, his thoughts consumed by a specific and mysterious interest known only to him.
Realizing she has no other choice, Ishmael prepares to utilize a more manipulative social tactic. Clasping her hands together, Ishael prepares to deliver a heart-melting request to bypass the guards. Ishael puts on a performance of pure innocence, hoping her charms will gain her entry.
Back at the palace, Dylan prepares a formal document as the evening sun begins to set.
Dylan hands a wedding invitation to a stunned colleague who cannot believe they are already married. Dylan explains that the announcement was made publicly at the ball, leaving his friend completely speechless. 16 words.
The friend excitedly demands the full story, enthusiastically hugging Dylan as he celebrates the happy news. The colleague pouts and complains that Dylan's stoic attitude is completely ruining the romantic celebratory mood. The colleague asks if the bride knows Dylan's true identity, and he admits she still doesn't.
Dylan intends to reveal his secret identity only after he has cleared his name of rumors.
The friend presents a report regarding a serious security matter that Dylan had previously requested investigate.
The report confirms that rumors of a terrorist infiltrator are already spreading through various government departments.
A vision reveals information from an interrogated assassin regarding spies hidden within the Knights and administration. Heavy footsteps echo through the room as the gravity of the intelligence begins to set in.
The colleague worries if the situation will escalate into a full-scale war against a terrorist threat.
A close-up of Dylan's eye reflects his deep concentration as he evaluates the dangerous new information.
Narrative text warns that the blue moon will be rising soon, casting a foreboding purple glow.
A hand clenches Dylan's own sleeve as a colleague warns him to take care of himself. Dylan quietly acknowledges the warning while feeling the physical weight of his growing inner conflict.
An internal thought bubble questions if it is truly time for the blue moon to rise again.
A glowing blue heart-shaped gem is bound by chains that are slowly beginning to fracture.
A narrative bubble wonders if he will have the strength to suppress his increasingly powerful desires.
The scene returns to the Tower of the Sage as a new day of evaluation begins.
A large audience gathers inside the Grand Hall to witness the prestigious annual magical thesis presentations.
Guests in the audience point in surprise as a highly esteemed figure makes a grand entrance.
Lord Claude Savoy stands majestically before the crowd, radiating power as the evaluation is about to begin.
Pedro prepares his magic theory presentation, thinking he looks perfect enough to impress Lord Claude Savoy.
Pedro imagines a beautiful Ishmael returning to him once he secures his noble title and status.
An official calls Pedro forward, and he answers with over-the-top enthusiasm as he approaches the stage.
Standing on a massive magic clock, Pedro decides to just read the paper he doesn't understand.
Pedro explains tracking potions while Lord Claude Savoy listens intently, finding the current magical tool limited. Reaching out, Pedro mentions that the potion was originally created by the great Lord Claude Savoy.
Pedro proposes a method to enhance the potion, prompting Claude to question the possibility of his claim.
Claude gives a silent command with his hand while his assistant, Helic, confirms she has understood.
Pedro is ecstatic, believing Claude is genuinely interested in the paper he is currently presenting to everyone.
Watching from the shadows, Ishael reaches for her belt, noting her long-awaited dream is finally within reach.
Pedro is interrupted by a sudden, loud sound that leaves him looking confused and startled mid-sentence. A bright explosion erupts behind Pedro, causing the audience to scream about a potential terrorist bombing attack. A smoking flare gun is held high, signaling that someone has intentionally disrupted the formal magic presentation. The hooded figure mockingly apologizes for hitting someone while intending to fire a flare into the air.
Outraged audience members demand the immediate arrest of the intruder for desecrating the sacred magic tower grounds.
Helic asks for a moment of patience while another official questions her sudden and strange request. Helic explains an old tradition established by the first Tower Lord, Alfred Savoya, regarding suspected plagiarism cases.
A flashback reveals a former lord regretting his dismissal of a stranger who deserved a prestigious award.
Fuming with regret, the former lord writes a new regulation to prevent such a mistake from recurring.
Narrative text explains Alfred created a rule to fire a flare when false reports are suspected.
Pedro is stunned that anyone would actually invoke such an ancient and forgotten rule during his presentation.
Pedro challenges the hooded intruder to prove that his paper contains flaws or was stolen from someone.
The mysterious hooded figure stands silently, facing Pedro as the atmosphere in the hall becomes incredibly tense. Smiling under the hood, the visitor prepares to ask Lord Pedro a very specific and pointed question. The audience murmurs in suspicion as the visitor asks if Pedro actually performed the experiments himself.
Claude Savoy watches the confrontation as Pedro indignantly refuses to answer the hooded stranger's mocking inquiries.
Pedro waves his document around, claiming the physical paper is absolute proof that the work is his.
The stranger questions if Pedro truly believes a piece of paper is enough to prove his authorship.
Claude Savoy remains calm and composed while observing the escalating conflict between Pedro and the mysterious intruder.
Ishael reveals her face and announces that the thesis was actually written by Pedro's own ex-girlfriend.
Standing on the magic clock, Ishael reflects on her knowledge of Claude Savoy's predictable personal tendencies. Narrative text notes that Claude Savoy despises boredom and actively seeks out anything unusual or interesting. Ishael stands before Claude's seat, believing this dramatic confrontation is the best way to grab his attention.
Pedro is visibly shaken, gritting his teeth in frustration as he struggles to maintain his failing composure.
Pedro points at Ishmael, accusing her of stalking him because she desperately wants to get back together. Laughing manically, Pedro claims Israel is trying to ruin him because she cannot live without his presence.
Ignoring his insults, Ishael tells the audience to turn to page 38 of the magic theory paper. The guests examine the documents, agreeing that the formula presented on that page seems logically plausible.
Ishael begins to demonstrate how the formula fails when it is actually applied to a real magic potion.
Light and magic swirl around Israel as she performs a demonstration that captures the audience's full attention.
The potion bottle shatters, and Ishmael explains that the stolen information is completely unusable in reality.
Helic objects to the demonstration, arguing that knowing the contents does not prove who wrote the paper.
Helic demands concrete evidence to support the claim of plagiarism beyond just a few spoken words.
Ishael smiles confidently while her eyes remain hidden, ready to reveal her final and most damning proof.
A bright light emanates from Ishael's hand as she activates a magical recording of Pedro's past behavior. A magic vision reveals Pedro bragging about having a girlfriend who followed his every command like a slave.
The recording shows Ishmael in the background as Pedro admits she wrote the entire paper for him.
Pedro collapses onto his knees as the physical evidence of his deceit is presented to the entire hall. The audience shouts in disgrace while Pedro despairs over his career being completely and utterly ruined forever.
Helic reaches out toward Claude Savoy, urging him to take immediate action against the disgraced Lord Pedro.
The grand hall falls silent as the focus shifts toward the center magic clock. A small gray bat with large ears rests calmly on Lord Claude Savoy's finger.
The bat opens its mouth wide, appearing as if it is about to speak. Lord Claude Savoy calls Pedro a wretch and orders the scammer to get lost immediately.
Claude calls Pedro a fraud while noting his tracking spell is fake and people like him should die.
Pedro trembles violently and weeps as the weight of his public disgrace sets in completely.
Holding the bat, Claude Savoy orders everyone to disperse and demands Pedro be removed from his sight.
A final decree is issued to banish the disgraced Pedro from the tower forever.
Guests leave the hall, commenting that the dramatic conference felt exactly like a morning drama. 16 words.
Walking nearby, guests dismissed the presented paper as only a low-level first-circle magic theory.
Ishael smiles to herself, reflecting on how those under pressure often return for more.
Chibi Ishmael notes this was her first success at the ball and second at the conference.
Ishael continues walking, her thoughts already turning toward her next and third major move.
Lord Claude Savoy stops as Ishael predicts he will make a move toward her. A large bag filled with gold is offered to Ishael as a reward.
Claude expresses a desire to work with a talent like Ishmael, offering her the build. Visualizing money, Chibi Ishmael listens as he promises a far more lucrative business partnership.
Ishael giggles to herself, confident that wealth and success are now within her grasp.
Lord Claude Savoy suddenly walks right past Ishmael, leaving her looking stunned and confused.
Ishael realizes Claude is deliberately avoiding eye contact after she expected a much warmer reception.
An official calls out to Ishmael, interrupting her thoughts as she remains in the hall.
The woman asks if Ishael is Dylan's wife, and Ishael confirms her identity as Lady Ishael.
The sun sets behind the grand palace, casting long shadows across the ornate architecture.
A hand grips a glass of water tightly, reflecting a moment of intense interrogation. The man pleads his innocence, but Dylan reveals he knows about his past with terrorists.
The master asks the witness if he ever saw a girl who resembles his granddaughter. The witness recalls seeing a blonde girl with purple eyes fleeing into a strange house.
A vision shows the girl among bound children being moved through the Bourgogne region.
Dylan and the master look on with grim expressions as the witness recounts the tragedy. The master questions the human trafficking while Dylan asks for the location of the leadership.
The witness tries to answer but suddenly begins coughing blood and choking in agony. The man's body disintegrates into a cloud of dark smoke before he can speak.
Dylan is horrified and realizes that black magic was used to silence the witness immediately.
Dylan notices a glowing mark on the floor and tells the master to look closer.
A message warns interference with Red Castle costs blood, signaling the nation's peace is in danger.
A small messenger bird flies through the window and lands on the master's finger.
The master listens to the bird's report, looking surprised by the urgent news it delivers. The master tells Dylan he must go to the magic tower at once. Dylan's eye glows red as he learns that his wife is currently at the tower.
Dylan reads a report from Helix and crushes the paper in his hand with fury.
The master asks what is wrong as Dylan's expression becomes increasingly cold and dangerous.
Dylan fumes about a filthy bastard approaching Ishmael, though narrative notes she approached him.
The magic tower stands tall against the evening sky as the situation reaches a boiling point. Pedro kicks a barrel in frustration, cursing his failure and blaming Ishmael for his ruin.
Pedro rants about Ishael's arrogance while Dylan looms behind him like a silent shadow.
Dylan suddenly grabs Pedro by the collar, silencing his hateful tirade with brute force. 15 words.
Dylan lifts Pedro into the air, causing him to scream in terror as he is overpowered.
Pedro is shoved into a wooden barrel, looking completely helpless and dazed by the attack.
Dylan ties up the barrel while Pedro frantically begs for someone to help him.
Dylan kicks the barrel away, sarcastically noting it's a relief as he dismisses the nuisance.
The meeting concludes as one official confirms the matter is resolved while the other offers thanks.
Dylan questions if Ishael used light magic, but she seems puzzled by his strange inquiry.
Dylan is mesmerized by Ishael's radiance, but Helix is visibly annoyed by their romantic atmosphere.
Helix decides to leave the couple alone, lamenting the loneliness of being single.
Ishael asks why Dylan is at the tower, and he claims he is running an errand.
Ishmael enthusiastically explains she is there to clean up trash, prompting Dylan to ask for details.
Ishael reveals she punished a thief who stole her thesis, which seems to startle Dylan.
An internal monologue questions why his heart is churning so violently in this moment. Dylan turns away, wondering if the intense feeling he is experiencing is actually jealousy. A dark and murky vision shows a hand reaching out to touch Ishael's forehead.
A thought bubble expresses self-loathing over feeling such a vile sense of jealousy.
A dark shadow looms over Ishael's unconscious form, reflecting an increasingly possessive energy. An internal thought considers Ishael's future wish for a divorce a year from now.
He realizes with inner turmoil that he will not be able to grant her request.
Ishael notices a change in the atmosphere and looks toward Dylan with a questioning expression. Concerned for his well-being, Ishmael asks Dylan if he is feeling okay. Dylan's face becomes flushed and hot as he struggles to maintain his composure.
Dylan quickly recovers and suggests that they should return home together for the evening.
A close-up of Dylan's eye reveals his hidden intensity as he agrees to leave together. Narrative text explains how the blue moon amplifies desire, lust, and aggression to dangerous levels.
A thought bubble declares that these filthy desires must remain hidden from Ishael's pure self.
Ishael brushes her hair back, smiling brightly as the sunset casts a warm glow.
The magic tower stands tall and silent against the vast starry night sky.
Inside the tower, a private study sits cluttered with books and magical research materials.
A fist slams onto a wooden desk in a sudden burst of extreme frustration.
Claude struggles to understand Ishael's magic formula, his mind becoming a complete mess. Claude considers Ishael's new paradigm, noting that her gaze makes his body freeze.
Claude finds it absurd that a master of fire magic like himself would cower before her. A knock at the door prompts Claude to give a sharp command to enter.
Helix peeks through the door, formally announcing her presence to Lord Claude.
Claude demands a 3-line summary of the message Helix brought from Lord Savoya.
Helix notes Claude's short temper while emphasizing the gravity of the important news she carries.
Helix delivers the shocking report that Lady Diana has been found alive. 13 words.
Claude is visibly stunned by the news, his focus shifting instantly to the revelation about Diana.
Helix stands firmly as she confirms that the report regarding Lady Diana is absolutely correct.
Narrative text explains that Claude's position as heir is threatened if the young lady lives.
Claude orders Helix to bring Ishael to the tower early the next morning.
Helix asks if the intention is to reward her according to established tower protocols.
Claude grips his desk tightly and answers with a firm, cold refusal. 13 words. Claude declares that Ishmael must be punished for the disruption she caused at the conference. A final order is given to throw Ishmael into the Magic Tower's prison tomorrow.
The full moon hangs directly over the tower, illuminating the structure in an eerie blue light.
A dark background features various text blocks signaling the end of the current chapter.
A new day begins at a large brick mansion as birds fly through the clear sky.
A hand reaches out to unfold the morning newspaper to check the latest updates.
Ishmael takes a calm sip of tea while preparing to read through the news articles.
Browsing the pages, Ishmael notes that there are many interesting stories in the paper today.
Ishmael reflects on her childhood hobby of doing crossword puzzles as she looks over the text.
An official serves breakfast to Ishmael, who looks up with a startled expression. 13 words.
Shocked by the massive salad portion, Ishmael offers her polite thanks to the server.
Ishmael considers taking a cooking class to prepare a much better meal for Dylan.
Narrative text observes that something has been noticeably wrong with Sir Dylan for several days. Ishmael notices Dylan looks flushed and feverish, as if he is being hunted by something. Dylan tells Ishmael to finish her meal and have a good day before he departs. Ishmael recalls Dylan acting strangely before and wonders why he seems to be avoiding her. 16 words.
Looking at her tea, Ishmael worries that further questioning might be considered unwanted meddling.
An internal thought reminds her that they are merely a couple on a temporary contract.
Dylan groans in agony while clutching himself in bed, his face flushed with high fever.
A jagged speech bubble echoes a past insult, calling someone a useless and unwanted brat.
A close-up of a mouth captures the intensity of a harsh and loud verbal assault.
A figure asks a young kneeling Dylan if he understands why he was previously abandoned.
The young boy admits he does not know, prompting a dismissive click of the tongue.
The figure insults the Grand Dukes of Castilla, labeling them as cursed beings and empire stains.
The man warns that the curse will manifest soon and orders the boy to die alone.
Narrative text reveals these were the hurtful words the late emperor spoke throughout Dylan's life.
A vision explains that a week-long cursed fever begins whenever the blue moon rises.
Text describes the fever as a period of beastly aggression that a human must suppress.
Dylan reflects on his ancestors' failure while resolving not to succumb to the ducal curse.
A decorative box contains text explaining that he raised his sword and went to war.
Dylan stands atop a mountain of slain monsters, refusing to be remembered as a curse.
Narrative text notes he is called both a hero and the reaper of the Empire's wars.
Dylan finds relief in the fact that Ishmael is currently away at her place of work. 16 words.
Dylan hides his face, desperate to keep this vulnerable side of himself hidden from Ishmael.
A voice interrupts Dylan's thoughts, and he looks up with a startled and feverish expression.
Dylan's hand grips his shirt tightly as he feels his heart pounding violently in his chest.
Narrative text notes a sudden feeling of calm as the water ripples in a vision.
Ishmael opens the door, expressing her worry because Dylan has stopped answering her questions. Ishmael rushes to Dylan's side, touching his face and asking what is wrong with him.
Seeing his flushed face, Ishmael scolds Dylan for doing chores while suffering from a fever. A close-up of Ishel's concerned face reveals her shock at Dylan's deteriorating physical state. Dylan looks up at the worried Ishmael, his eyes glowing with an intense, feverish light. Dylan recalls memories of Ishmael smiling brightly and eating happily in better, peaceful times. Grabbing the bed sheets, Dylan wonders if seeing him in this weak state has disappointed her.
Dylan turns away, claiming he has taken his medicine and only needs to rest briefly.
Dylan asks Ishmael to leave to avoid germs, while privately noting his heart is pounding.
Dylan struggles with a powerful desire to be near Ishmael, despite fearing his intense feelings.
Dylan suddenly recoils as he feels his control slipping away in the presence of his wife. A bright, warm light surrounds the two as they face each other in the quiet room.
Ishmael looks up with a wide-eyed and stunned expression as the atmosphere changes abruptly.
Dylan suddenly shouts a refusal, startling Ishmael with his loud and desperate outburst. 14 words.
Ishmael asks Dylan if he just said no, and he confirms his refusal while sitting up.
Turning away, Ishmael mutters to herself that the current situation is becoming quite problematic.
Ishmael touches Dylan's forehead again, suggesting they see a doctor if he doesn't improve.
Dylan pins Ishmael to the bed, telling her he clearly warned her to leave him.
A close-up reveals Ishel's shock as Dylan leans in and tells her to go away.
Dylan looms over Ishmael on the bed, his body pinning hers down in a tense moment.
Dylan's face is very close to Ishmael's as he stares at her with feverish intensity.
Ishmael stares up at Dylan, asking him why he is suddenly acting this way toward her.
A sharp movement shows Dylan pulling his hands away as he struggles to regain his composure.
A narrative bubble declares that even if she approaches, he will not touch her. Dylan's eyes glow with a red, predatory intensity as he sternly tells her to leave immediately.
Ishmael stands alone in the hallway, reflecting on the cold dismissal she just received from her husband.
Ishmael wonders about the strange and unsettling gaze Dylan directed at her just moments ago in the room. Clutching her racing heart, Ishmael reflects that it was a look she had never seen from him before. Ishmael struggles to define the dark and overwhelming energy she felt radiating from Dylan's intense stare.
A vision of a wolf looms over Dylan, illustrating his beastly nature and predatory intent toward his wife.
Ishmael feels a sudden, chilling distance between herself and Dylan for the very first time.
The atmosphere becomes heavy and oppressive, making it incredibly difficult for Ishmael to face Sir Dylan.
A hand reaches down toward the floor, perhaps belonging to Ishmael as she leaves a parting gift. A simple brown bag containing medicine is left on the floor outside of Dylan's closed bedroom door.
A note attached to the bag instructs Dylan to take his medicine 30 minutes after his next meal.
Narrative text explains that Ishmael took time off work to visit the pharmacy and buy medicine for Dylan.
At the pharmacy, Ishmael consults the clerk to find the most effective remedies for her husband's fever. Ishmael receives a package of medicine, determined to help Dylan recover despite his cold and distant behavior.
A quiet and somber moment passes between two figures as the sun begins to set in the background.
Ishmael ponders the meaning behind Dylan's insistence on not laying a single finger on her during his illness.
A couple walks past as the woman comments on how pretty the surroundings look in the evening light.
Looking toward the sky, Ishmael notes that the predicted time of the celestial event has finally arrived.
A massive blue moon rises, signaling the beginning of a dangerous and cursed season for the Empire.
Narrative text recalls the day Duke Savoya died during the Blue Moon season before Ishmael's past regression.
A funeral portrait depicts Duke Savoya as a respected elder holding a magical staff and a crystal orb. Text blocks explain how the public mourned the beloved Duke and shared stories of his life and death.
Determined to change the future, Ishmael resolves to use her knowledge to prevent the Duke's tragic demise.
Ishmael worries because Claude Savoya has not yet summoned her to the magic tower for her reward.
Ishmael greets her friend Lucy while worrying that her knowledge is useless without access to the tower.
A sudden, sharp sensation in her head causes Ishmael to freeze as her expression turns to shock.
Turning her head, Ishmael searches for the source of a strange and familiar presence she just felt.
A memory shows young Ishmael offering a boy a special meal she made from boiled medicinal herbs.
Young Ishmael is startled by the boy's blunt reaction to her well-meaning but unappetizing herbal dish.
The boy mutters a cryptic remark about how things have turned out exactly as expected after all.
Ishmael doubles over in pain as Lucy rushes to her side, calling her name in great concern.
Ishmael describes seeing strange, flickering images appearing vividly right in front of her eyes in this moment.
Lucy asks if Ishmael is experiencing an awakening vision, a possibility that leaves Ishmael feeling completely stunned.
Narrative text explains that an awakening vision occurs when a mage surpasses a magic circle and grows stronger.
Ishmael realizes reaching the second circle grants tower access and could provide the chance to save the Duke.
Excitedly, Ishmael confirms to a confused Lucy that she has indeed just experienced a sudden awakening vision.
Ishmael shouts that she must head to the magic tower immediately to use her new status.
A senior colleague stops Ishmael, reminding her of the massive pile of work she is currently neglecting.
Ishmael feels the weight of her responsibilities as she laments the exhausting plight of all office workers.
The warm light of the evening sun filters through the large windows of the quiet office building.
Overwhelmed by her paperwork, Ishmael collapses onto her desk and screams in a moment of pure frustration.
Hiding behind a book, Ishmael grumpily wishes that no visitors would show up to disturb her today.
A sudden sound nearby draws Ishmael's attention away from her studies and toward the office entrance.
A friendly brown-haired colleague enters the room with a smile, carrying 2 mugs of hot coffee.
The man asks why she is visiting the bureau, and she dismisses the inquiry as no big deal.
Ishmael's focus shifts to a document the man is holding as he approaches her desk for a signature.
The colleague explains he is planning a training session in preparation for the upcoming Blue Moon cycle.
Ishmael fake laughs about her honeymoon phase while internally screaming about the disastrous atmosphere she faced this morning.
The man jokingly admits he is jealous as Ishmael looks up at him with a puzzled expression.
The colleague leaves to pick up equipment, thanking Ishmael for her quick administrative work and the coffee.
The man walks away after delivering his cryptic warning about the upcoming Blue Moon cycle.
Sir Tove advises Ishmael to remain vigilant and avoid being submerged in the Blue Moon's influence. Ishmael looks worried and confused by the strange warning she received from the retreating man.
Ishmael wonders about the meaning of being submerged before politely bidding him farewell until next time.
Ishmael laments Sir Tove's odd behavior while working, but sudden knocks at the door startle her.
A voice from the darkness questions if she is the first circle mage known as Ishmael.
4 mages in red hooded robes stand together, creating an intimidating and mysterious presence in the room.
A red-hooded mage reacts with disdain, calling Ishmael's appearance unimpressive after looking over her paperwork.
Ishmael's colleagues are visibly horrified by the sudden arrival of the intimidating and rude tower mages.
The tower mages mock Ishmael for her low magic level and question her marriage to Dylan.
A man furiously declares his opposition to the marriage, refusing to accept Ishmael as Dylan's wife.
The muscular, bald man tears his clothes in a rage, accusing Ishmael of stealing his Sir Dylan.
A red-hooded girl argues that Dylan belongs to no one, while Ishmael watches the chaos unfold.
Aisha's colleagues pity her for the harassment she faces from the eccentric and aggressive tower mages.
Ishmael raises her hand to address the intruders, calmly signaling for them to listen to her.
Ishmael scolds the mages for disrupting the office and orders them to leave so she can finish. The bald man reacts with disbelief, questioning if Ishmael really just ordered them to leave their work. The bald man slams a document onto Ishmael's desk, startling her with his aggressive physical movement.
The bald man demands that Ishmael examine a special document he has brought for her review.
The man describes the paper as a modified magic formula and challenges Ishmael to solve it.
Ishmael stares at the formula in shock, realizing it is intended to function as a spell.
A text box explains that Ishmael is someone who reincarnated with clear memories of her past life.
Ishmael reflects on her previous existence as she prepares to evaluate the strange formula before her. In her past life in South Korea, Ishmael was a successful career woman recognized for her skills. Though she majored in marketing, she developed technical expertise by learning coding directly from professional developers.
Ishmael grips the document tightly as she makes a startling connection between magic and her past skills.
Ishmael observes that the complex magic formulas of this world are structured exactly like computer coding. Ishmael's mind reels as she confirms her theory that the basis of magic is actually coding. Overhead, Ishmael remains silent in thought while the mages interpret her stillness as being overwhelmed. The mages mock Ishmael for being flustered, assuming the modified formula is much too difficult. Ishmael smirks behind the paper, knowing the mages would never understand her unique technical advantage. A vision of her past shows Ishmael as a tired office worker who occasionally shed tears. Ishmael claims the difficulty made her space out while the bald man boasts of his struggle. A newcomer enters the room and asks the group what they are doing during work hours.
Marilyn scolds the majors, questioning what kind of administrative job could possibly take 18 minutes.
Marilyn turns her gaze toward Ishmael, observing the young woman with a calm and calculating expression. Marilyn asks if she is Lady Isabel, and Ishmael confirms her identity to the eye-patched woman. Marilyn snaps her fingers, activating a magical effect that catches Ishmael completely off guard.
Magical handcuffs snap onto Ishmael's wrists, leaving her shocked and confused by the abrupt arrest.
Ishmael's colleagues react in terror, questioning why she is being arrested and taken to prison.
A blonde woman protests Ishmael's innocence, but Marilyn silences her to proceed with tower business. Ishmael asks if she is truly being taken to prison, and Marilyn confirms the order. Ishmael appears to be weeping, her face flushed as she processes the sudden turn of events. Ishmael promises an explanation later while privately realizing this arrest is actually a perfect opportunity. Ishmael resolves to use her time at the tower to figure out how to save Duke Savoria. The magic tower stands tall as the destination for Ishmael's imprisonment and her secret mission.
Halleck groans in exhaustion while finishing her paperwork in a cluttered office within the tower.
Halleck settles her work for now, believing she has finally finished her many urgent administrative tasks.
The door slams open with a bang as Ishmael suddenly rushes into Halleck's private workspace.
Halleck is startled by the intrusion while Ishmael expresses surprise at discovering Halleck's office location.
Halleck asks why Ishmael is handcuffed while voices outside the room frantically search for the escaped criminal.
Halleck looks panicked as searchers worry about Lord Claude's reaction while Ishmael maintains her composure.
Halleck realizes Ishmael's transfer and panics about how Sir Dylan will react to the news.
Halleck extends her hands toward Ishmael, pleading for her to listen to her desperate explanation.
Halleck suggests Ishmael go home while she handles things, but Ishmael firmly declines her offer.
Halleck is confused that Ishmael wants registration despite currently being only a first circle mage.
Ishmael explains that she recently witnessed a mysterious awakening illusion while walking down the street.
Ishmael stares ahead with a look of surprise as she recalls her strange magical encounter.
A floating thought bubble describes Ishmael as a precious child in a moment of reflection.
Halleck acknowledges that an awakening illusion would qualify Ishmael to register as a second circle mage.
Halleck warns that registering while under charges of deceiving Lord Claude could lead to imprisonment.
A text bubble emphasizes the dire threat of being put in prison indefinitely for her actions. Halleck questions Claude's motives, but Ishmael shocks her by volunteering to go to prison herself.
Halleck reluctantly agrees to proceed with the registration, but insists on a preliminary test first.
Halleck presents a frightening book featuring a realistic eye, making Ishmael feel quite unsettled.
Halleck explains that the magical book identifies mage circles, an object Ishmael never knew existed.
Intense winds erupt as Ishmael touches the book, and Halleck commands her to hold on.
Ishmael keeps her hand pressed against the vibrating cover of the scary magical book.
The eye on the book opens, announcing its power to reveal the mage's vessel size. As Ishmael glows, the book declares it will reveal the true size of her potential.
The eye determines that the person currently in contact with it is a first circle mage.
Ishmael is stunned by the results, questioning why the book identified her at first circle.
Halleck confirms the low ranking while Ishmael insists she truly experienced a powerful awakening vision.
Halleck dismisses Ishmael's experience as a hallucination caused by a desperate desire for magical growth.
A thought bubble shows Ishmael repeating the word hallucination in a state of complete disbelief. Ishmael reflects on the sensation, convinced that the vision she felt was far too realistic.
Halleck grabs Ishmael's shoulders, attempting to usher her away from the failed registration attempt.
Ishmael bursts through a door and surrenders for questioning, much to Halleck's extreme distress. Ishmael smiles mischievously, threatening to implicate Halleck as an accomplice who tried to cover up.
Helix's face turns pale with horror as she asks Ishmael what she plans to do next.
A narrative bubble notes that the current situation is repeating events from a previous time.
Halleck privately concludes that Ishmael is completely insane for acting so recklessly regarding the prison.
A small black rat scurries across the dark and gloomy floor of the tower prison.
Halleck leads Ishmael to her cell, formally announcing their arrival at the Magic Tower prison.
Halleck warns that the prison is for crazy mages and offers no hope of escape.
Ishael laughs with glee at entering the cell, leaving the confused Helix sweating in disbelief.
Ishael expresses happiness about paying for her crimes, viewing the prison as a life-changing opportunity. Helic uses a golden magical spell to lock the bars of Ishael's dark prison cell. Helic promises a release in 24 hours while Ishael worries about her permanent criminal record.
Helic warns about Dylan's potential anger, making Ishmael wonder about their relationship as she rests.
A golden-hued vision shows Ishael standing in a flowery field next to a tall man.
The man in the vision has dark hair and red eyes, looking down with intensity.
Ishael lies on the floor of her cell, deciding to treat her imprisonment as a vacation. An observation bubble expresses shock as someone notices the arrival of the new female prisoner.
A voice from the shadows insults Ishael, calling her a dumb and weak first circle mage.
A man in a nearby cell mocks Ishael for being the only low-level mage imprisoned.
The prisoner dismisses Ishael as pathetic while she looks back at him with a calm gaze.
Ishael asks if they are important figures, and the mages boastfully confirm their high status.
The mages list their serious crimes, including planting bombs, mind control, and selling illegal realms.
Ishael stares blankly at the criminals, responding with a simple sound of confusion at their boasting.
A prisoner boasts about his high rank while mocking Ishael for her low-level magic circle.
The prisoner explains that Ancestor Savoya designed this prison breakout spell to reward the cleverest mages.
A vision shows the ancestor decreeing that anyone capable of cracking the spell deserves to go free.
Ishael stares thoughtfully at the glowing magic formula etched onto the dark cell door.
A close-up reveals that the magical formula is structured exactly like a basic computer coding tag.
Ishael considers how to utilize her unique knowledge of code magic to make the door disappear. Ishael identifies the design tags needed to alter the physical properties and visibility of the magical barrier.
Ishael decides to input the command for invisibility to bypass the cell's physical structure. Ishael prepares to execute the modified formula, her expression focused as she writes with her quill.
The cell bars glow with intense blue light as a voice confirms Ishael is worthy of release.
The light brown-haired prisoner watches in stunned silence as the impossible happens and the cell door opens.
Ishael steps out freely while the other prisoners scream in absolute disbelief at her success. A prisoner laments that he has failed for years while she solved it in mere seconds. Ishael smirks at the sweating, shocked prisoners, casually noting that the task was actually quite easy. A desperate hand reaches through the bars, begging Ishael to stop and help them escape too.
The prisoners look up with pleading, sparkling eyes, hoping the young woman will show them mercy.
A prisoner asks if Isabel will take them on as her students if she releases them.
The prisoners cheer and raise their arms in excitement, celebrating the possibility of their freedom.
Ishael turns to walk away, refusing to help for free as the prisoners scramble to bargain.
The prisoners offer to do anything she asks, prompting a sly, knowing smile from Ishmael.
Ishael agrees to free them on the condition that they enter her service from now on.
A narrative bubble reveals that Ishael has formulated a very entertaining plan for the near future.
Ishael beams with a bright and mischievous smile, clearly pleased with her new group of subordinates.
Ishael stands confidently in her blue dress, looking every bit the commander of her new team.
A team of white horses pulls a carriage through the city streets as the scene shifts.
Duke Savoya listens somberly to a report confirming that they still have not found Diana.
The hooded man reports his failure while the Duke prepares a concoction in the moving carriage.
A flashback shows a young blonde girl running away into a bright, overwhelming light.
A close-up profile reveals the sadness on the young blonde girl's face as she looks away.
Duke Savoya laments the loss of the trail, fearing they have reached a total dead end.
A sudden and powerful impact or loud noise disrupts the quiet atmosphere of the carriage ride.
Duke Savoya and the hooded man are startled by the violent shaking and loud, alarming sounds.
Duke Savoya shouts for the coachman, demanding an explanation for the sudden chaos outside.
An alert confirms a terror attack at the Magic Tower as Duke Savoya watches the structure burn. The hooded man asks his grandfather for an explanation while looking toward the smoke-filled horizon. Realizing the tower has been bombed, Duke Savoya orders the younger man to stay back for safety. Inside the prison, the freed mages dig through dirt with spoons under Ishael's strict supervision.
The prisoners question the purpose of their digging and how it contributes to their actual escape plan.
Chibi Ishmael scolds the prisoners, demanding they focus on their work if they want to leave.
Ishael and the prisoners freeze as a thunderous boom echoes through the prison, shaking the stone walls. Ishael looks on with a grim expression, realizing that the disastrous events have finally begun.
The gray-haired woman screams for help, protesting that there are still innocent people trapped inside the prison.
The prisoners accuse Ishmael of lying about having a plan to bust them out of the tower.
Ishael tells them to calm down, but the prisoners regret trusting a low-level first circle mage.
The prisoners fear they will die, but Ishmael confidently declares it is time for her entrance.
A vision shows Ishmael in her past life reading about the tragic details of Duke Savoya's death.
Text explains that black magic bombs were planted to obliterate the tower during the initial attack phase.
A man in dark robes stands at the prison entrance, casting an intimidating shadow over the group.
Duke Savoya collapses to the ground in pain, much to the horror of the observing Ishael.
Ishael realizes Duke Savoya is in grave danger and that the situation has become extremely critical.
A narrative text box notes that Duke Savoya has already disarmed nearly 100 bombs. Duke Savoya gasps for air as a bystander asks if he is okay after using mana.
A close-up shows Duke Savoya's eyes straining as he struggles to catch his breath.
A hazy vision of a blonde girl smiling appears during the Duke's moments of exhaustion.
Duke Savoya questions if he's seeing an illusion, doubting that the girl before him is Diana.
Ishael offers a warm greeting to the Duke as he looks up at her in shock.
Ishael and Duke Savoya sit on the prison floor, facing each other in the dim light.
The Duke questions her identity, asking if she is indeed the woman known as Lady Ishmael.
A close-up reveals Ishael's gentle expression as she smiles kindly at the elderly mage.
The Duke realizes Ishael is the wife of the Duke of Castile while Dylan looms below.
The Duke asks why she is imprisoned before he suddenly collapses again to the floor.
Ishael catches the Duke as he falls, urgently asking if he is alright as he groans. Ishael panics as the Duke's hair vanishes, noting that a mage's life force starts with their hair.
Ishael looks around desperately as a prisoner asks if she is searching for something specific.
Ishael notices a faint green glow in the stone floor and realizes it is the solution.
A vibrant green moss grows between the cracks of the prison floor, emitting a mystical light.
Ishael determines that the glowing moss is exactly what she needs to save the Duke's life. Back at the office, a thought bubble drifts through the air as the workday concludes. 15 words.
A pair of hands quickly tops a stack of documents against a wooden desk surface.
A brown-haired man happily announces his plans to grab an ice-cold beer after work.
The man flinches in terror as a tall, imposing figure suddenly appears directly behind him.
Sir Dylan stands with a dark aura, prompting the man to nervously ask why he is pair. Sir Dylan asks if Ishmael is present, causing the man to stutter while looking for an answer. Sir Dylan learns that Ishael was taken to the Tower prison and reacts with a confused expression.
Sally rushes into the room, shouting about a terrifying terrorist attack occurring at the prison tower.
Sir Dylan realizes Ishael is in grave danger as the news of the prison attack sinks them.
Narrative text explains that the Empire has long been a nation powered by ancient magic. Large white claws hold up a floating castle, symbolizing the ancient power protecting the realm.
The lower half of a giant winged beast is shown descending through the bright blue sky.
Text describes divine beasts, holy creatures that once protected the Empire with their powerful mana.
Over time, the sacred temples crumbled into ruins as the ancient magic began to fade away.
A decorative text box transitions the story, noting a significant change occurred at some point.
The text explains that the divine beasts eventually vanished from the world without leaving a trace.
The holy creatures are no longer visible to human eyes, becoming nothing more than legends.
Silhouettes show people trading rare items infused with divine beast power for very high prices. A glowing bottle featuring a beast emblem represents the blessings and purification power within such items.
Shifts the focus back to Ishmael, noting that something appeared right before her eyes.
Ishael stands in the dark prison, staring at a patch of glowing green moss on the floor.
A close-up shows the moss shining brightly against the dull gray stones of the cell.
Narrative text confirms that a rare moss infused with divine beast power has finally appeared. A flashback shows young Diana sitting at a dinner table with an empty plate before her.
In the past, Duke Savoya urges Diana to eat her vegetables while she protests their taste.
The Duke encourages Diana to eat a balanced diet to become a great maid like her family.
Young Diana humorously stuffs the vegetables into the Duke's mouth, making him gag in surprise.
Back in the present, prisoners notice the Duke waking up and question what Ishael fed her.
Ishael explains she used divine beast moss to save him and tells him not to move.
Ishael smiles kindly at the Duke, asking him how he feels as he begins to recover.
The Duke finds the moss story ridiculous, but realizes his strength is actually returning to him.
A prisoner realizes the digging Ishael ordered earlier was actually a search for this magical moss.
Ishael claims the find was just a coincidence, though the prisoners remain skeptical of her luck. A thought bubble explains that before the regression, Ishael read a book regarding Duke Savoya's death.
The narrative explains the Duke tried to dismantle a black magic bomb in the Tower prison.
The Duke suffered severe internal injuries and died after his failure to dismantle the magic bomb.
Years later, people discovered a white divine beast sleeping inside the Magic Tower's prison cell.
A close-up reveals a glowing green moss hidden beneath the feathers of the white divine beast. Ishael expresses relief that the moss saved Duke Savoya while wondering where more bombs remain.
Ishael tells the group to stay put while she searches for the final remaining magic bomb.
Ishael reacts with surprise after hearing a sudden and unexpected ringing sound echoing through the room.
A thought bubble questions the source of the mysterious sound that just echoed through the prison.
The gray-haired man asks Ishmael if she heard the sound, comparing it to a ringing bell.
A prisoner screams in terror as he points toward a shocking sight at the prison entrance.
A giant black serpent looms over the group, calling them foolish humans as it watches them.
A close-up of the massive serpent's head shows its sharp fangs and flicking tongue and dark.
The serpent identifies itself as a black magic bomb that will soon destroy the magic tower. The prisoners scream in terror, questioning why terrorists would design a magic bomb as a snake.
To disarm the serpent bomb, Ishmael must deactivate the magic formula etched onto its long tail. The serpent gives Ishael one chance to succeed before it swallows her whole, shocking the woman.
Ishael observes the coding on the tail, confirming magic in this world works like computer programming.
The serpent offers a pen while Ishmael questions why the dangerous monster is being so helpful.
Ishael holds her quill to her mouth, deeply focused on decoding the complex magical formula today.
Ishael realization strikes as she identifies how the magical code is written on the serpent's tail.
The code requires reversing the word Exodus and inputting it into the blank space provided above.
Ishael notes that the puzzle is significantly easier than she had originally expected to encounter.
The serpent begins its countdown from 10 while the prisoners react with absolute terror and panic.
A thought bubble questions if the person in question has completely lost their mind or what.
A prisoner begs Ishmael to give up while the serpent continues counting down toward the end.
Duke Savoya wonders why he keeps seeing Diana in a woman he only recently met today.
A close-up shows the back of a blonde girl's head as the countdown reaches number 4.
The green countdown reaches the number 3 against a bright and glowing white and green background.
Ishael's hand quickly writes with her quill as the countdown reaches the final number 1.
Large stylized text represents a sudden and sharp sound effect echoing through the dark prison room.
Ishael stares upward in silence as a blue exclamation point appears floating above her small head.
The serpent vanishes into green smoke while complimenting the mage on her very impressive success today.
A thought bubble warns Ishmael not to let her guard down despite her recent magical success.
The fading serpent warns that Crimson Castle is always watching while Ishael looks up in surprise.
The prisoners are in total disbelief, cheering for the smart girl who solved the impossible puzzle.
Ishmael smiles with confidence, clearly pleased with her ability to decode the complex magical serpent bomb.
A close-up reveals the word Sudoxy has been entered as the reverse value for the code.
Chibi versions of the prisoners praise Ishael for figuring out the solution so quickly and easily.
Ishael beams with satisfaction, relieved that the serpent bomb has been successfully disarmed by her coding.
Ishael reflects on her success, happy that she managed to save Duke Savoya safely as well.
Ishael smiles as a long and thin shadow suddenly begins to loom over her surprised face.
A mysterious voice from the shadows notes that it did not expect Ishael to solve it.
A man in a dark cloak holds a sharp sword to Ishael's neck from behind her.
The cloaked man declares that Ishael must die for interfering with the plans of Crimson Castle.
A narrative bubble reveals her death is certain as dark red energy splatters across the scene.
A thought bubble expresses absolute shock that she managed to actually escape the initial deadly threat.
The hooded man threatens Ishael for interfering while she realizes he was a hidden spy.
Ishael claims she only guessed the right answer by chance to deflect the man's murderous intent.
Ishael begins to back away slowly as she desperately looks for an opportunity to escape danger. Ishael stands in her blue dress, looking back with a surprised and wary expression.
The mysterious assailant mocks her, claiming he can see every thought in her clever mind.
Ishael panics as the man orders her death, fearing for her hard-earned millionaire dreams.
Ishael refuses to die and lose her expensive 10 billion won penthouse in the capital city.
A sharp clashing sound rings out as a hidden weapon suddenly intercepts the man's strike.
Sir Dylan intervenes, using his strength to block the hooded man's sword from reaching Ishael.
Ishael stares up from the floor in shock, realizing Sir Dylan has come to save her.
Sir Dylan glares at the man, questioning his audacity for daring to attack Lady Isabel.
The hooded man breaks into a cold sweat as Dylan draws his own sharp sword.
Sir Dylan declares with an intense red gaze that the attacker will not leave alive.
Text explains the tower mages arrived in a flash to assess the chaotic prison situation.
Mages rescue Duke Savoya and release all the prisoners for their help during the attack. Narrative text reveals that eventually only Sir Dylan and Ishael remained alone in the prison.
Sir Dylan and Ishael stand quietly together in the dimly lit hallway of the tower.
Sir Dylan asks her to identify the specific person who locked her in the tower prison.
Chibi Ishael reacts with extreme guilt, realizing she is the one who imprisoned herself.
Ishael smiles nervously and asks why Sir Dylan came, desperately trying to change the subject.
The two stand facing each other, the atmosphere between them thick with unspoken tension.
Ishael blushes deeply while looking up at the silent and imposing man standing before her.
Ishael asks Sir Dylan why he is suddenly acting so differently toward her tonight.
Ishael looks up with a soft expression as the wind gently blows her long hair. A sudden sound effect represents a sharp movement as their hands finally meet tonight. Sir Dylan stands firmly while Ishael sits, requesting that he leave and not touch her.
A thought bubble reflects on the past, noting how cold Sir Dylan used to be.
Ishael finds his current worry embarrassing after she pushed his hand away in the prison.
Ishael looks away as the vibrant blue moonlight begins to fill the dark stone cell. Sir Dylan watches the blue moon through the bars, his expression shadowed and deeply contemplative.
A small chibi thought bubble notes that Sir Dylan's current behavior is extremely out of character.
Ishael stares at Sir Dylan's face, her eyes reflecting the glowing blue light of the moon.
Sir Dylan tells her she can touch him, his face bathed in a soft blue hue.
Chibi Ishmael stands in total silence with a blank expression, stunned by his bold invitation.
Ishael questions his motive, feeling like a pervert for hearing such words in a prison.
Ishael brings her hand to her blushing face surrounded by a vision of blue flowers.
Their hands meet in a tender grasp, symbolizing a sudden and deep emotional connection tonight.
Sir Dylan holds Ishmael's hand against his face, his eyes closed in a rare moment.
A close-up of Sir Dylan's eye reveals the intensity of his feelings toward the young woman.
Ishael blushes intensely as she turns her head away from his close and intimate presence.
A narrative bubble suggests that Ishael might simply be feeling intoxicated by the rare moonlight.
Chibi Ishmael suggests keeping their distance because being so close makes her feel very uncomfortable.
Sir Dylan asks if she wants him to back off while looking at her with intensity. The two are silhouetted in a warm light as they share an intimate and quiet moment. Sir Dylan promises to back off only after their planned one-year divorce is finally completed. A somber close-up of Sir Dylan's face reveals the deep sadness hidden beneath his words.
Ishael's eyes widen in surprise as she is pulled into a close embrace by him.
Ishael's hands rest against his back as the intensity of their physical contact increases significantly.
The two characters hug tightly, their figures highlighted by a soft and glowing golden light.
A narrative bubble declares that Lady Isabel is truly amazing while the hug continues. Sir Dylan leans his face against her shoulder, clearly unwilling to let go of her. A vision shows a frozen heart encased in thorns, representing his deep and trapped emotions.
A final close-up of Sir Dylan's eye shows a hint of sorrow as he embraces Ishael.
Isabel laughs nervously, admitting she feels a bit embarrassed to be acting this way tonight.
Sir Dylan leans in and gently kisses Isabel's forehead in a tender, intimate moment. Sir Dylan admits his own embarrassment but promises to do whatever Lady Isabel wishes of him.
A close-up shows Sir Dylan and Lady Isabel holding hands tightly in the soft light.
Sir Dylan looks down with a soft, affectionate expression, his red eyes filled with warmth.
Sir Dylan offers his hand to Isabel, warmly inviting her to return to their shared home.
Isabel places a hand over her heart, looking deeply moved by his sudden and sincere gesture.
A bright and sparkling transition highlights the magical and emotional atmosphere of the quiet scene.
Text reveals Isabel's somber reflection on never having experienced a warm, welcoming home before now.
Isabel laments her past loneliness, noting that no one ever bothered to come looking for her.
Isabel realizes that for the first time, Sir Dylan was the one who sought her out.
Isabel beams with a radiant, joyful smile, her eyes sparkling with newfound happiness and relief.
Claude views Isabel with suspicion, sensing something unusual about the woman's aura as Dylan protects her.
Sir Dylan holds Isabel close, determined not to let her leave until the situation is clear.
Claude remains suspicious of Isabel's strange presence while Sir Dylan continues to hold her protectively nearby.
Narrative text emphasizes the man's resolve to keep the woman contained within the magic tower.
Sir Dylan embraces Isabel firmly, vowing that she will not be leaving the magic tower tonight.
A black-haired woman with a ponytail demands to know what Lord Claude thinks he is doing.
The woman questions how a low-level mage like Isabel managed to successfully defuse a dangerous bomb.
Isabel offers a sheepish, nervous smile as she tries to handle the intense questioning from others.
Claude points accusingly at Isabel, insisting a first-circle mage could not possibly disarm such a bomb.
Claude suggests Isabel might be a terrorist spy who needs interrogation, causing Sir Dylan to grow angry.
Isabel wonders what information Claude wants, while noting he is avoidantly looking away from her gaze.
A sudden loud noise interrupts the group as someone demands to know if Claude is inside.
Duke Savoya bursts into the room, angrily scolding Claude for his rude and disrespectful behavior today.
The Duke berates Claude for interrogating Isabel instead of rewarding her for saving his life earlier.
Claude reluctantly offers a brief apology while Isabel laughs off the tension and forgives his behavior.
Duke Savoya suddenly stands up, remembering that Isabel mentioned her full name was Isabel Lorelei.
Duke Savoya bows deeply, thanking Isabel for saving his life and the lives of many others.
Isabel looks on with a pensive expression, seemingly deep in thought about the Duke's sudden gratitude.
Isabel dismisses her heroics as simple coincidence, while the Duke insists she shouldn't be so humble.
Duke Savoya looks intently at Isabel, mentioning that he has one important question to ask her.
A flashback shows the back of a blonde girl with long flowing hair and a beret.
Isabel appears startled and anxious as the conversation shifts toward a more personal and serious topic.
A close-up focuses on a single, striking, amethyst-colored eye belonging to a young blonde girl.
The Duke asks about a girl with amethyst eyes, but Isabel confirms she was alone in prison. Duke Savoya's expression crumbles into deep sadness as he realizes his search for Diana must continue.
A thought bubble expresses the Duke's desperate, tearful longing to find his missing granddaughter, Diana, soon.
Isabel watches the Duke's grief, internally hoping that he will eventually be reunited with his granddaughter.
A portrait introduces Diana Savoya, identifying her as the sole granddaughter of the powerful Duke Savoya.
Text explains that Diana was raised with immense love within the prestigious and magical Savoya family.
Narrative text identifies Diana's mother, Irina Sarete, as a particularly famous and powerful archmage in history.
A portrait shows Irina Sarete standing regally in ornate white robes while holding a magical staff. Text notes that Irina was once celebrated as the only purification mage in the entire world. Tragedy is described as the Duke's family died in a terrorist attack, showing a bloody scene.
Diana vanished during the attack, prompting the Savoya family to focus entirely on tracking magic research.
The family offered massive rewards and titles to anyone who could develop magic to find Diana.
Isabel recalls her ex-boyfriend Pedro writing his thesis on tracking magic just to claim that reward.
Isabel realizes the Duke values his granddaughter's life far more than his own health or safety. 16 words.
Seeing the Duke's devotion makes Isabel's heart ache with a sharp, stinging pain of sudden envy. Duke Savoya asks Isabel if the rumors about her defusing a complex bomb are true.
Isabel confirms her success while the Duke offers her any reward she desires for her help. Sir Dylan stands stoically beside a nervous blonde man who is frantically holding a spiked mace.
Isabel wears a sly and confident smirk as she prepares to name her desired reward.
Duke Savoya reacts with mild surprise to the woman's sudden change in demeanor and expression. Isabel cheerfully requests a reward of 1 billion gold, shocking the Duke with her greed.
The Duke and his companions are frozen in disbelief after hearing her massive financial demand.
A text bubble captures the Duke's sudden and thunderous laughter echoing through the palace room. The Duke labels Isabel as humble while she stares at him with complete and utter confusion.
Chibi Isabel reacts with bewilderment as the Duke completely misinterprets her obvious desire for wealth.
Isabel's green eye glimmers as a narrative bubble declares her intent to retract support for him.
Narrative text confirms that Isabel and Duke Savoya are now considered one and the same.
Chibi Isabel meticulously polishes a statue of the Duke, demonstrating her devotion to her benefactor.
A warning bubble states that any slander against the Duke is also an insult to Isabel. The Duke asks if she truly possesses a talent for tracking elusive magical formula patterns.
Isabel smiles nervously as she considers the implications of the Duke's serious and direct question.
The Duke asks if the difficult task he has in mind will be too much.
Isabel insists that helping him would be an honor despite her obvious nerves and sweating. A narrative bubble reflects on the potential riches waiting if she finds the missing Lady Diana.
Isabel imagines herself as a wealthy queen surrounded by endless piles of shimmering gold coins.
Isabel dreams of becoming the Savoya family's greatest benefactor and becoming incredibly wealthy very soon.
Isabel notices something interesting on the desk as she prepares to leave the Duke's presence. Isabel spots a specific poster and questions its contents with a look of extreme curiosity.
Isabel interrupts the Duke to ask about the meaning of a poster sitting on the desk.
The poster features a crowned white swan above a long passage of cryptic and confusing text.
Isabel holds the document with a worried expression, sensing something very important and deeply concerning.
A flashback reveals that Isabel's greedy family once stole her hard-earned money for noble titles.
Narrative text explains her family once used her stolen funds to purchase their noble status.
Chibi Isabel's cruel family demands she work faster to pay them back for her upbringing. Isabel wonders where her family managed to acquire money for their current activities this time.
A speech bubble from the Duke asks if she would be willing to grant his favor.
Civilians walk through a peaceful town under a clear sky, discussing their plans for lunch. Two women react with alarm as someone announces urgent breaking news regarding a recent tragedy.
Flying flyers announce the terrorist attack on the Magic Tower and the presence of spies.
A newspaper reveals that Isabel Lorelei is the primary suspect behind the recent tower bombing. A formal document identifies Isabel Lorelei as an administrator while labeling her a dangerous spy.
The sun shines brightly over the tranquil town buildings during a moment of calm. A hand slams down on a desk as the news of Isabel's betrayal spreads rapidly. Office workers argue over the headlines, questioning if Lady Isabel could truly be a terrorist. The director weeps over the news, fearing for the future of his town's newlywed program.
A text bubble declares the program cannot continue without the couple representing their small town.
Two employees express their indifference, wanting only to finish their shifts and go home.
The director insists that Lady Isabel was definitely framed by someone else for the crimes. A text bubble asks the director if he knows the hidden truth behind the scandal.
The director enthusiastically envisions a romance where Sir Dylan proves Isabel's innocence in the end.
Staff members reject the director's romantic ideas while one woman contemplates quitting her job.
Narrative text notes that a full week has passed since the Magic Tower was attacked.
Marilyn and Isabel's other companions react to the news with expressions of shock and disbelief.
Explains everyone wanted to ask Sir Dylan if his wife was actually a spy.
Sir Dylan stands with his back to the viewer, exuding an overwhelming and menacing pressure.
A narrative text box reveals that no one could bring themselves to ask the question. A hand places a chocolate chip cookie down, signaling a moment of normalcy amidst chaos. 15 words.
Pedro eats a cookie while wondering what on earth Lady Isabel could be thinking right now.
A sharp blade gleams as it is suddenly held against the throat of the man.
Sir Dylan demands to know if the man was the one loitering around Lady Isabel earlier.
Sir Dylan berates the man for eating cookies while Isabel is captured, accusing him of being a spy, while Pedro desperately claims to be Dylan's brother.
Pedro flees in terror while Sir Dylan pursues him through the palace with his sword drawn. Pedro screams for help as the menacing Sir Dylan continues his relentless chase through the hall.
Duke Savoya stands alone, his back turned as he gazes out into a bright light. 15 words. Narrative text explains that Duke Savoya has not been seen since the recent terrorist attack.
Isabel sits silently in a dark prison cell, her figure illuminated by a faint light. Narrative text confirms that Isabel, the primary suspect, has also vanished from the public eye.
Narrative boxes question Isabel's current location and wonder if she truly is a traitorous enemy spy.
Someone demands that responsibility be taken for the current mess, while another dismissively questions the demand. A sudden movement shows someone being forcefully knocked or falling down onto the stone floor.
A blonde man falls and yells in pain while someone nearby questions his sudden, violent actions. The man on the ground coughs violently as a thick cloud of smoke fills the air.
A close-up shows a bearded man smoking a cigar while a nearby person coughs from smoke.
Elon Lorelei identifies himself as the head of his house and mocks the commoner on the ground. Elon's daughter praises her father while he declares they are on a completely different social level.
The blonde man calls them awful people while the daughter continues to enthusiastically admire her father.
A heavy sound effect echoes through the room as someone slams their hand in anger.
Someone relaxes on a sofa, declaring that being back home feels exactly like being heaven. Elon Lorelei suggests his family focus only on happy things while they relax in their mansion.
The daughter joyfully congratulates her father on his new official title as the head of House Lorelei.
Elon credits his discovery of a water source for saving the empire and earning his barony.
Elon expresses relief that they cut ties with Isabel before she could cause them any trouble.
The sister labels Isabel a terrorist while the mother calls her disappearance a stroke of luck.
The mother smiles smugly, suggesting there is always a valid reason why parents abandon their children.
Elon Lorelei laughs, insisting they should simply forget Isabel now that she is no longer family.
Elon mentions an upcoming festival where the king will officially grant their family the promised barony. A narrative bubble reveals that their current success and wealth are entirely thanks to a benefactor.
Elon bows to Count Orleans, thanking the powerful man for making their social climb possible today. Elon advises his daughter to find a good husband, claiming a woman's fortune depends on it.
The sister blushes and smiles, revealing she already has a specific man in mind to marry.
A thought bubble reveals the sister contacted her crush as soon as Isabel was sent to prison.
A large text bubble shockingly reveals that the man she desires is her sister's husband. The sister admires a portrait of Sir Dylan, believing he is far too good for Isabel.
A thought bubble dismisses Isabel's worth, claiming a man like Dylan is wasted on her.
The sister believes it is only logical that she should be the one to have him.
The sister imagines herself in an intimate moment with Sir Dylan, replacing Isabel by his side.
The sister reflects on Isabel being imprisoned while she ascends to the status of noble lady.
A thought bubble wonders which sister Sir Dylan will ultimately choose once the dust settles.
The sister smugly declares the level difference laughable, certain she will win this social game easily. The sister plans her day at the hair salon while Elon encourages a mother-daughter outing.
The scene shifts to the town as the sister's thoughts reveal her ambitious and greedy intentions.
A dark and imposing castle stands tall against the night sky, exuding a foreboding energy. 15 words.
A mysterious figure asks a kneeling subordinate if they successfully carried out their secret orders tonight. The kneeling man hesitates, preparing to deliver news that may not be what is expected.
The spy reveals they lost contact with their tower infiltrator and find the current silence suspicious. Narrative text notes that a spy's sudden disappearance is very strange, even if they usually die. A cloaked figure stands with their back turned, overlooking a dark and mysterious landscape.
The mysterious figure insults their subordinate for the failure of their tower infiltrator recently.
A subordinate kneels before his superior, delivering a report about their failed mission in the tower. The masked man in the white cloak orders the immediate search for the missing spy's whereabouts.
A close-up of the man's eye emphasizes that only a swift death awaits those who betray.
The sister of Isabel believes she can now do whatever she wants with her new status.
She reflects on writing her first letter to Sir Dylan, believing he is worth the effort. She blushes intensely while pressing the letter to her face, dreaming of a romantic future.
The woman is confident that Sir Dylan will soon fall for her charms and beauty.
A stray cat interrupts her thoughts with a meow, drawing her attention away from her reflection.
A gray cat with glowing green eyes sits on the cobblestone street, staring with intensity.
She questions why the animal is staring so intensely, finding the creature's focused gaze rather creepy.
She dismisses the encounter, laughing that even animals recognize her beauty and find her popularity burdensome.
She decides to head home and begin preparing for the upcoming celebratory ball at the palace. A close-up of the cat's green eye reveals it is watching her with suspicious interest. A magnificent white castle with many spires stands tall against the vibrant, starry night sky.
Nobles gather in the grand palace ballroom, discussing the titles being granted to the new families.
Elon Lorelei and his family celebrate their official recognition as nobles on this long-awaited day.
The daughter asks her mother how the upcoming royal ball is scheduled to proceed tonight.
The mother explains they will watch a ballet before attending a banquet with the emperor himself.
A narrative bubble clarifies that they must present their finest gifts to the emperor during dinner.
Elon proudly confirms he has prepared a special, precious gift for this momentous occasion today.
Elon describes the gift as a blessing from the heavens, holding a decorative wooden box tightly. The family takes their seats, reminding each other to act sophisticated and not reveal their commoner roots. The daughter is startled as she notices someone interesting sitting in the distant balcony seats. She spots Sir Dylan in the emperor's box, wondering if he is acting as a guard. A soft, light blue veil flutters gently in the air, catching the light as it moves. A woman in a white gown and veil stands next to Dylan, sparking intense public interest. The sister and mother view the veiled woman with suspicion, wondering if she is the empress. A narrative bubble suggests the mysterious woman is merely relishing the attention from the gathered nobility.
A text bubble expresses frustration and annoyance at the woman's prominent position beside Sir Dylan.
The emperor introduces the woman as Ishael, an administrator from the management bureau, and invites her.
Sir Dylan politely acknowledges the Emperor's greeting and expresses his gratitude for the introduction today. The Emperor remarks that it has been quite a long time since he last saw Dylan.
Ishelle explains that she has been away while attending classes on the art of flower arrangement.
A close-up shows Sir Dylan and Ishale holding hands firmly, signifying their deep and secret connection.
A warm and shimmering golden light surrounds the two as they stand together in silence.
Sir Dylan leans close to Ishmael, his presence overwhelming as they share an intimate moment together.
Ishelle adjusts her veil while blushing, recalling their previous interactions through a magical videosphere. The dark-haired man with blue eyes smiles joyfully, delighted by the romantic scene unfolding before him.
The man enthusiastically reveals that he personally selected the play for this evening's royal performance.
A text bubble reveals the title of the chosen ballet performance is The Lord of Snow.
A blue book featuring a winter scene represents the story chosen for the evening performance.
An illustration shows the silhouette of a couple representing the central romance of the snow play.
The story depicts a lonely winter lord whose frozen heart was melted by a kind girl.
The Emperor asks Dylan if he also finds the chosen romance story to be fantastic.
The Emperor mentions hearing wonderful news about the northern winter castle on the Blue Moon.
He explains the castle's environment shifts according to his brother's mental state and emotional well-being.
The Emperor sincerely hopes the winter castle finally thaws, alluding to Dylan's healing heart.
Ishale softly agrees with Sir Dylan as the intimate atmosphere on the balcony lingers. 14 words.
The woman in the white gown smiles gently while her face remains partially veiled.
Sir Dylan watches her with an intense and searching look in his glowing red eyes.
Sir Dylan asks Ishale if she truly desires his happiness above all else right now.
Downstairs, the nobles discuss the play while a woman praises the Emperor for his choice.
Soldika Lorelei approaches two noble women in the ballroom, greeting them with a polite, practiced smile.
Soldika introduces herself to the group, clearly proud of her new status as a noble. Soldika mentions her new rank as the other women whisper suspiciously about her family name.
The noble women gossip about the Lorelei family, questioning their presence and mentioning rumors of Isabel's torture.
Elon's wife interjects aggressively, declaring that they have officially disowned the daughter currently in prison.
A hand displays a document while onlookers murmur, questioning the validity of the family's claim. A loud announcement declares the Emperor's arrival, drawing everyone's attention to the royal balcony above.
The crowd of nobles turns collectively to face the Emperor as he makes his appearance.
The Emperor warmly welcomes the guests, inviting everyone to relax and enjoy the evening's banquet.
Standing on the balcony, the Emperor explains the gathering is meant to honor the new nobles.
The Emperor gestures toward Ishrael, identifying her as someone to whom he feels a personal debt.
The Emperor suggests it is time for her reveal, while Soldika reacts with shock to Ishmael's name.
A thought bubble reveals Soldika's panicked realization that this Ishmael might be someone she knows.
A close-up shows a hand beginning to lift the delicate white veil from her face. 15 words.
The veil is removed, revealing Ishmael's radiant face and shimmering green eyes to the shocked audience.
The Lorelei family stares in absolute horror, wondering how Isabel managed to appear here tonight.
Ishale introduces herself with a polite apology for the delay as the family remains frozen in fear. Elon's wife gasps in shock, pointing a trembling finger at the woman on the royal balcony.
Soldika forcefully silences her mother, warning her to stay quiet despite the shocking turn of events.
Soldika whispers that they cannot mention the terrorist incident now that the Emperor has introduced her.
Soldika watches Dylan and Ishale together, sensing a deeper and more concerning connection between them.
Sir Dylan and Ishale stand together on the balcony, overlooking the stunned crowd of gathered nobles.
A man in a hood announces that it is time for the guests to present gifts.
Elon Lorelei stands expectantly behind a man preparing to offer his contribution to the royal family.
The man presents simple tea while Elon internally mocks the gift as pathetic and completely worthless.
Elon smiles with greedy confidence, certain his special gift will far outshine any other offering today.
A massive glowing blue diamond is revealed as Elon's ultimate play for the Emperor's favor.
A flashback shows Elon groveling to Count Orleans, who donated the diamond to their ambitious family.
A text box emphasizes that the shimmering blue diamond is an exceptionally rare and powerful artifact.
Elon believes the precious diamond will help him leave an unforgettable impression on the powerful emperor. 16 words.
Elon carries his prize forward while Soldika watches him with a grim and determined expression.
Nobles surround Ishmael to ask about her lineage while she promises to reveal it very soon.
Two women dismiss the rumors of her being a terrorist, citing the Emperor's clear public support.
Narrative text wonders why such a stunning and high-status woman has remained hidden until this moment.
Soldika clenches her fist in a silent rage while noble women continue to praise her sister's beauty.
Soldika fumes with jealousy, asking herself why her sister is receiving all the attention and admiration. Soldika remembers Isabel as a plain and unpopular nobody who was meant to stay in the shadows.
Chibi Isabel is depicted as a pathetic loser that no one could ever truly love or value.
Soldika feels betrayed, recalling how she supposedly loved her sister before this sudden, arrogant display.
A flashback shows the original Isabel smiling while handing money to her younger, demanding sister.
Soldika greedily takes the cash from her sister, thanking her for the generous and frequent allowance.
Isabel affectionately pats Soldika's head, oblivious to her sister's true feelings of disdain and greed.
Chibi Soldika wonders if temporary magic has driven her sister insane or altered her entire personality. A visual comparison highlights the drastic transformation from the nerdy administrator to the elegant, beautiful Ishael. Soldika vows to unmask her sister today and make her a public laughingstock before the nobility. Elon Lorelei reacts with a joyful shout as he is officially called forward by the Emperor. The Emperor welcomes Elon, who kneels humbly while expressing his great honor to be present. Elon opens the wooden box to reveal the massive blue diamond gift for the Emperor.
A thought bubble asks if the rare treasure contains a legendary amount of divine power.
The Emperor looks down at the gift with a neutral and contemplative expression on his face. The Emperor holds the box as Elon enthusiastically confirms the artifact is an incredibly rare find.
Elon boasts that the diamond cost a massive fortune and was very difficult to mine safely.
A text bubble notes that reports identify Elon Lorelei as a man of exceptional moral virtue.
Guests discuss Elon's orphanage work, deciding he is a much better man than they previously believed. Elon internally mocks the simplicity of humans, gloating that he can easily manipulate his public image.
A thought bubble declares that this deceptive manipulation is the way to survive in high society.
The Emperor dismisses Elon, who walks away humming happily while thinking about his next successful move. Elon looks back at Ishael, thinking she is lucky despite her recent troubles in the tower. Elon insults Ishmael internally while she stares back at him with a calm and regal expression. Ishael offers a subtle and mysterious smile as she watches Elon's arrogant behavior from a distance. Ishael warns the man against using such vulgar language in the presence of the powerful emperor. A text bubble reveals Elon's inner rage as he labels Ishmael an incredibly insolent and annoying thing. Elon looms over Ishmael, aggressively asking if she truly dares to look down on his status.
Elon reminds Ishmael of her past misery, threatening her to stay humble despite her new appearance.
Ishael mocks Elon's habit of turning to physical violence whenever he loses a verbal argument today.
Elon loses his temper and prepares to strike her, claiming a smack will restore her senses.
A sudden and sharp movement occurs as Elon attempts to lash out at the woman nearby.
Sir Dylan intervenes, catching Elon's arm with a cold look before he can strike his wife. Sir Dylan orders Elon to get away from his wife immediately, his red eyes glowing dangerously. Elon and his wife react in total shock, questioning the sudden reveal of Ishael's secret marriage. Elon's wife pulls him back, warning him to control his temper to save their family face.
The wife sneers at Dylan, advising him that he should not associate with people like Ishmael.
Sir Dylan and Ishael stand together, looking down at the Lorelei family with cold and distant expressions. The Emperor expresses mild surprise as he watches the tense drama unfold between the two families. Ishael ignores the family and turns to greet the Emperor once again with a graceful bow.
Ishael dismisses the family's outburst to the Emperor, comparing their annoying presence to a bothersome bug. A close-up reveals Ishael's simple gift of 3 green 4-leaf clovers resting inside a box. A text bubble expresses shock and disbelief at the seemingly pathetic and worthless gift being offered.
A hand gestures toward the simple clovers as the atmosphere in the ballroom shifts toward mockery. The Lorelei family laughs mockingly, claiming the girl likely plucked the cheap flowers from a field. Guests believe the Emperor is speechless because he is offended by the poor quality of the gift. A close-up shows the Emperor's mouth as he begins to speak while sweating from hidden excitement. The Emperor's face turns bright red with awe as he realizes the true value of Ishael's gift.
A thought bubble questions if the simple-looking flowers are actually a legendary and impossible treasure.
A narrative bubble identifies the gift as the legendary Tears of the Divine Beast artifact. The 3 green flowers glow with a mystical light, revealing their status as powerful divine artifacts.
The Lorelei family stares in absolute horror, realizing the artifact grants immense blessings to its lucky owner.
Ishael reveals that she found the incredible treasure by chance, leaving the gathered crowd completely stunned.
2 noblemen gossip about the Lorelei family, mocking them for failing to recognize such a treasure.
A narrative bubble notes the irony of the family laughing at something they couldn't even identify.
Soldika fumes in a silent, purple-hued rage as the crowd continues to question her family's level.
The Emperor asks Ishmael where she managed to find such an incredibly precious and rare gift. Ishael smiles with quiet confidence, basking in her triumph over the greedy family who once abandoned her. The Emperor laughs with pure delight, declaring he is truly pleased with the legendary divine gift. A text bubble reveals Soldika's inner vow of eternal hatred toward Ishael Lorelei after this humiliation. 2 mages in dark robes raise glowing orbs while magical text floats in the air above.
A swirling vortex of blue energy frames a series of cryptic narrative bubbles regarding the ceremony.
3 robed figures stand in a ritualistic formation, holding their luminous spheres toward a descending beam. A magical projection displays a man's face as hexagonal text bubbles introduce the next official presentation. The Emperor watches the magical display as an attendant explains the tool will reveal past accomplishments. A projection highlights the achievements of Baron Cynthia while the gathered nobility watches from the floor. Elon Lorelei yawns dismissively while his wife urges him to maintain a facade of interest for onlookers. Soldika Lorelei smiles with arrogant confidence, reminding her family of the efforts they made for nobility.
A narrative box reveals Elon Lorelei's public identity as a benevolent man who runs a local orphanage.
The text emphasizes his reputation for sheltering children who lost their families during the terror attack.
A younger Elon projects an image of fatherly kindness while holding a child at the orphanage gate.
The narrative text claims Elon cared for these orphans until they reached the age of adulthood.
Soldika observes that their public image has successfully tricked other nobles into sponsoring their social climb.
Sir Dylan offers his hand to Ishael, warning her to be careful while walking in high heels. Soldika watches with jealousy, dismissing Ishael's achievements and wondering if Dylan has read her secret letter.
The magical projection flickers with colorful static as the narrator prepares to show the next visual report.
Guests murmur in anticipation as a voice in the projection apologizes for a long period of absence.
Duke Savoya appears on the screen, announcing his intention to introduce a very special individual tonight.
The Duke praises a young woman's brilliance, noting she was recognized by his grandson despite her status.
The projection shows Ishmael during the tower crisis, where the Duke claims she selflessly saved his life.
A terrifying giant serpent looms over a small figure in the video, illustrating the danger Ishmael faced.
The projection reveals Ishael's face as the Duke confirms she is the one who rescued him.
A stunning portrait of Ishmael in a formal gown replaces the action footage, awing the gathered nobles. Shimmering blue and white flowers frame the scene, marking a moment of beauty and high prestige. Noblewomen gossip in shock, realizing Ishael's heroic acts completely invalidate the rumors of her being a terrorist.
Guests begin to openly question the Lorelei family's virtue for abandoning a daughter with such achievements.
A text bubble highlights that while saving the Duke is impressive, there is more to reveal.
Ishael bows politely on the balcony as she receives official congratulations and gratitude for her service.
Soldika fumes in disbelief, convinced that Ishael must have cheated or received help from Sir Dylan.
Elon adjusts his suit with greedy anticipation, thrilled that his turn for recognition has finally arrived.
Elon vows to prove Ishael's inferiority by showcasing his own supposed humanitarian work on the screen.
A thought bubble declares that the Duke will surely punish Ishael once her lies are exposed. A close-up of a woman's mouth reveals a sharp, satisfied smile at the unfolding social execution.
Elon's wife is startled to hear her own name being whispered by the crowd of nobles.
The magical screen displays a secret recording of Elon's wife looking suspicious inside a shop's interior.
The real woman gasps in horror as her private, unflattering actions are broadcast to the entire palace.
The video reveals her plotting to make Ishael pay back a contract she never actually signed. Soldika and her mother panic, screaming that the figures in the video are not actually them.
Soldika flinches as the video shifts to a close-up of a letter she wrote in secret.
The projection displays Soldika writing to Dylan, mocking her sister's imprisonment and preying on his loneliness.
Hexagonal bubbles transcribe the letter's contents, revealing Soldika's plan to replace her sister by Dylan's side.
Soldika demands the attendant stop the video immediately, but he refuses without a direct royal order.
Soldika screams in despair, claiming the broadcast is a clear violation of her privacy and social standing.
The Emperor mocks their distress, deciding to keep the video running because it has become very entertaining. The screen shows Soldika's arrogant face as she claims to be a better match for Sir Dylan.
Soldika covers her face and begs for the video to stop as it mentions a hot night. Nobles gasp in scandalized shock, identifying the location in the video as a notorious site for adultery.
The crowd mocks the Lorelei family's sordid behavior as Soldika collapses onto the floor in shame.
Elon stares at the screen in total shock as his own dark secrets begin to play. The video exposes Elon Lorelei's cruelty, showing him physically abusing orphans while demanding their absolute gratitude.
Elon's abuse is exposed as he cruelly threatens a frightened child within the orphanage walls.
Elon shouts desperately to the Emperor, claiming that Ishmael fabricated the video to smear him.
Elon accuses Ishmael of seeking revenge for family debts while Sir Dylan stands protectively beside her.
The Emperor asks Michael, a royal mage, to provide an expert assessment of the video's authenticity.
Michael confirms the video is untainted. Elon reels as the audience condemns his brutal, hidden nature.
Ishael smiles with calm satisfaction as the truth of her family's cruelty is finally made public. A tiny kitten peeks out from the shimmering folds of Ishael's elegant white and blue gown.
The small animal peeks out curiously, part of the secret recording magic Ishael used for evidence.
Ishael holds her kitten, explaining she used a recording magic tool to capture the family's crimes.
The kitten licks its paw contentedly, oblivious to the high-stakes social execution happening in the ballroom.
A magical bat familiar flies away as Ishael thanks it for completing its task so successfully.
Elon screams in a blind rage, insulting Ishmael's character as his public reputation completely collapses tonight.
Elon lunges toward Ishmael, accusing her of biting the hand that fed her for so long.
A sharp sword blade suddenly flashes through the air, stopping Elon in his tracks mid-assault. A cold voice warns Elon never to approach the speaker's wife ever again under any circumstances.
Sir Dylan stands with his sword drawn, his glowing right eyes fixed on Elon with murderous intent.
The Emperor intervenes, reminding Elon that the court handles records and he must not act rashly. Elon insults Dylan's status, claiming a commoner knight is beneath a noble of his high standing.
A single authoritative command calls for an immediate end to the chaotic confrontation in the palace.
The Emperor raises his hand to silence the room as Elon turns back in fearful confusion.
The Emperor promises to investigate the accusations later, effectively dismissing Elon's frantic protests for now.
The blue-eyed emperor offers a pleasant smile, masking his cold determination to see justice served tonight.
Sir Dylan turns to Ishmael, stating he trusts her judgment and will follow her wishes completely.
Ishmael declares that her family must pay the price for the many atrocities they have committed.
The Emperor agrees with her assessment, granting Ishmael the power to decide her family's ultimate fate. The Emperor leaves the family's punishment to Ishmael, leaving Elon groveling in total abject despair.
A sharp, heavy sound echoes through the hall, signaling the final fall of the Lorelei family.
Sir Dylan raises his sword high, a symbolic gesture of final judgment against the disgraced former nobles.
Elon collapses to his knees as his family's noble crest pin lies shattered on the floor. A final decree announces that the Lorelei family is no longer worthy of their noble status.
The noisy scandal concludes as Ishmael and Dylan stand triumphant before the Emperor and the guests.
The Emperor bestows the prestigious Odette swan sculpture upon Ishmael for her exceptional virtue and courage.
The delicate white swan sculpture, nestled among pale blue roses, represents Ishmael's new status and honor.
A narrative box explains that this rare honor is granted to only one new noble annually.
For her beautiful and virtuous deeds, Ishmael is officially recognized as the star of the ball.
A crown of flowers is placed on Ishmael's head as she receives her official new rank.
A decorative scroll heralds her official debut as Viscountess Ishmael Odette before the entire gathered nobility.
Ishmael stands on the balcony, waving to the cheering crowd as a bright light surrounds her.
The Emperor orders a strict investigation into the Lorelei family's past atrocities following the night's revelations.
The family's social dreams are shattered, and they will forever be met with deep public suspicion. Shimmering blue flowers frame the portrait of Ishmael, now celebrated as the Summer Night's Odette.
A close-up shows the glittering brooch Ishmael wears, a symbol of her hard-won and perfect victory.
The gala comes to a close with Ishmael's complete triumph over those who once sought her ruin.
The scene shifts to the bustling city where commoners are gathered to hear the latest news. New sheets fly through the air as the public eagerly catches the report of the palace scandal. Citizens read the shocking news that the rumored terrorist is actually the savior of Duke Savoya. The headlines spread across the city, clearing Ishmael's name and celebrating her heroism at the tower. A magical projection displays the beautiful Viscountess Ishmael Odette for all the public to admire.
People stare in awe at the image of the noblewoman who achieved such an incredible victory. 16 words.
Commoner women discuss how beautiful and amazing the lady and her husband are.
A narrative box notes that Ishmael has gained recognition from both the Duke and Emperor.
A close-up portrait showcases Ishmael's radiant beauty and glowing green eyes. Golden patterns and a central jewel represent the protagonist's high status and new noble rank.
Text indicates that powerful factions like the Mage Tower are anticipating Ishmael's next move.
A mysterious figure in a white cloak stands on a dark balcony at night.
Lord Marriott informs the kneeling man that he has royally screwed up the entire situation.
Elon panics internally, questioning if the Emperor has truly ordered a direct investigation into him.
Elon apologizes to Marriott, claiming he never expected Ishmael to cause such a public scene.
Marriott scolds Elon's failure, but Elon reveals Ishmael was an abandoned tool, not his child.
Elon screams in pain as a staff strikes him, punishing him for his significant incompetence.
Marriott demands silence, asking who gave Elon permission to speak again in his presence.
Marriott orders Elon to take responsibility. Elon fearfully agrees while the staff pins him down.
A text bubble mentions information received from a spy placed within the Imperial administration.
Marriott warns of a surprise orphanage investigation, while a visual reveals a spy peeking nearby.
Marriott commands Elon to shut down the orphanage immediately to remove any incriminating evidence.
Marriott orders Elon to stay hidden until summoned, and Elon expresses his desperate gratitude.
A hooded subordinate asks Marriott if it is wise to leave such an untrustworthy man.
Marriott explains the man is a disposable tool whose stupidity makes him easy to manage.
Marriott orders a halt on palace attacks, asking to shift focus to a different target.
Marriott reveals that their new primary target is the newly appointed Viscountess Ishmael Odette.
A narrative box notes that Ishmael has changed into a completely different person recently.
Ishmael stands gracefully in a pink dress, her back turned to a field of flowers.
A close-up of Ishmael's face highlights her stunning emerald eyes and serene, confident expression.
Elon admits he had no idea Ishmael possessed such brilliant and high-level magical capabilities.
An agent reports that Ishmael Lorelei was previously identified as a low-level First Circle mage.
Narrative bubbles describe Ishmael as a woman of mystery with no other known magical abilities.
A hand tightly grips a scaled blue tail, signifying a dangerous and emerging magical threat.
Marriott walks away, questioning if anyone truly wishes for Ishael to remain unharmed tonight.
Ishal holds her tea, thinking about how exciting her life has become lately.
Ishal smiles warmly at the mention of her new title, Viscountess Ishal Odette.
A hand holds a broken porcelain shard, a symbolic remnant of a shattered past.
Marriott stands bathed in blue light, examining the broken porcelain shard with a dark smile.
A final bubble commands the team to capture Ishrael and bring her directly to Marriott.
A bird chirps on a branch outside a window, signaling a peaceful morning at home.
Ishael sips her tea with closed eyes, enjoying the rare and quiet morning peace.
Sir Dylan stands calmly nearby, focused on trimming a fresh white flower from a bouquet.
Ishal enjoys a relaxed day at home with jasmine tea after filing for leave.
Ishael is startled by commoners who recognize and praise her as the famous new noble.
Dylan reaches for a daisy, his hand steady as he prepares to give it to Ishael.
Sir Dylan gently places a fresh white flower in Ishael's hair while she looks on.
Dylan expresses his sincere happiness at being able to stay by Ishael's side at home. Ishael looks at Dylan in wide-eyed surprise, clearly moved by his unexpected and gentle kindness.
The door slams open as a man yells for Lady Ishael, startling the peaceful couple.
Director Emmanuel appears in the doorway looking emotional with his signature curled mustache.
Emmanuel celebrates Ishael's innocence, claiming a lover of greatness could never be a criminal.
Emmanuel hands over a colorful letter and a gift with a very enthusiastic gesture.
Emmanuel quickly bids them farewell, admitting he snuck out during work hours to visit.
Ishael and Dylan watch the director leave, noting his chaotic and whirlwind-like personality.
Dylan examines the colorful letter in a disposable video magic tool left behind by Emmanuel.
Ishael examines the tacky newlywed program provided by director Emmanuel during their morning piece.
The program's second week focuses on decorating the home with love, featuring a cute cat mascot.
A hand activates the magic tool, which begins projecting a bright and sparkling heart-shaped light.
A tiny fairy version of Director Emmanuel with a large mustache appears in the magical projection.
The chibi director fairy excitedly announces the start of the second week for the newlywed program.
The projection explains the next challenge involves decorating their home with love and showcasing interior design.
Pink lace and ribbons frame the magical screen as the cheerful program instructions continue to play.
The projection promises a special prize for the best decorated couple as the pair watches in silence.
Ishael and Dylan stare at the screen with deadpan expressions, unimpressed by the director's childish program.
Ishael sets the tool down, questioning why the timeline has not progressed despite her recent imprisonment.
To avoid suspicion from the public and the director, Ishmael suggests moving Dylan's belongings into the main bedroom.
Sir Dylan looks at her intently, stating he is ready to share her bed at any time.
Ishael's face turns bright red as she processes the weight of Dylan's casual but bold declaration.
Panicked, Ishael makes a frantic excuse about the heat and rushes away to get some water.
Water flows from the kitchen tap as Ishmael attempts to cool down and collect her scattered thoughts.
A close-up shows a hand holding the cold glass of water as Ishael tries to calm herself.
Holding her drink, Ishael wonders if she truly needs to continue this charade of a living arrangement. Narratively, Ishael reflects on her recent elevation to Vice Countess and the honor bestowed by the Emperor. She further notes the massive financial support promised by Duke Savoya, which solidifies her new social standing. Ishael concludes that since the funds haven't arrived yet, she must temporarily endure the current living situation.
A close-up of Ishmael's face shows her blushing as she struggles with her confusing, fluttering emotions. While drinking water, Ishael notices a book on the counter and assumes it belongs to Sir Dylan.
Curiosity takes over as Ishmael picks up the book and begins flipping through its many printed pages.
She finds handwritten notes in the margins where Dylan clarifies he did not kill and enjoys food. Ishael wonders why the stoic knight would write such strange, defensive corrections in the margins of a book. Ishael jumps in surprise as Dylan suddenly appears right behind her while she is reading his book. Turning around quickly, Ishmael apologizes to the knight for looking through his private belongings without any permission.
Ishael continues to apologize, explaining that she did not mean to pry into his personal reading material.
Dylan stares down at the open book where his private corrections about his supposed cruelty are visible.
Dylan walks away in silence while Ishael awkwardly accepts his departure, worried that she has offended him. Ishael worries she upset him, but decides to focus on the decorations, though she still considers apologizing.
Shimmering pink panels show the room decorated with hearts and wings, meeting the program's tacky requirements.
Lying stiffly in bed together, Ishmael panics as she realizes they are actually sharing the same mattress.
Ishmael expected someone to use the sofa, but Dylan notes sharing a bed is natural for spouses.
While feeling trapped by the situation, Ishael finds comfort in the safety she feels beside Sir Dylan. Ishael's inner thoughts spiral as she acknowledges that sleeping beside a handsome man is a difficult task. Clutching her nightgown, Ishael tries to remain composed despite the intense romantic tension filling the quiet room. Sir Dylan's red eyes are shown in a close-up as he stares toward Ishael in the darkness. Dylan asks why Ishmael is apologizing. She explains it is because he seemed upset earlier in the kitchen. Dylan denies being angry, admitting he was only embarrassed Ishael saw his private notes in the book.
Sir Dylan expresses relief that there is no misunderstanding between them as he looks at her kindly.
Ishael laughs joyfully, relieved to know that her husband isn't actually upset with her after their interaction.
A close-up of Dylan's glowing red eyes captures the moment he begins to speak more softly.
Sir Dylan reaches out and takes Ishel's hands into his own, calling her name with deep affection.
Dylan gazes at Ishmael and promises that he could never truly be angry with her for anything.
Ishmael stares back with wide eyes, her heart pounding at the weight of his sincere and tender promise.
Their hands remain tightly interlaced on the bed sheets, symbolizing their growing emotional connection and mutual trust.
Ishmael eventually drifts off to sleep, feeling completely safe and comforted by Dylan's gentle and loving words.
Dylan falls asleep as the narrative mentions a strangely familiar lullaby echoing through the peaceful night air.
Ishmael sleeps soundly as a final whispered message wishes her sweet dreams during their first shared night. Ishmael blushes deeply, her eyes closed as she basks in a warm, floral-scented dream.
Ishmael's eyes fly open in shock as an unseen hand suddenly grasps her sleeve.
A voice in a dream asks a young girl if she remembers her promise well.
Young Dylan recites a story about a brave puppy saving its brother within the dream. A young blonde girl offers a bright, innocent smile that radiates warmth and kindness.
Ishel's heart trembles as she reflects on the strange familiarity of the children from her dream. A striking close-up of a young boy's crimson eye reflects a hidden, deep-seated intensity.
Lying awake, Ishmael stares into the darkness with wide eyes, processing her startling internal vision.
Ishmael bolts upright in bed, questioning the mysterious nature of the vision she just experienced.
Dylan asks if Ishmael's awake. He apologizes for waking her, but she reassures him.
Dylan notes that he was asleep until Ishmael's body suddenly began to exhibit strange symptoms.
Dylan explains that Ishmael started to glow and float, a sign of an awakening vision.
Sir Dylan looks at her with concern, explaining he waited for her to wake safely.
Ishmael ponders the potential of her extraordinary visions, comparing them to magical regressions of the past.
A close-up reveals Ishmael's wide, shimmering green eyes as she reacts to Dylan's proximity.
Dylan leans closer as Ishmael tries to remind herself that they are supposed to sleep.
The sudden closeness causes Ishmael to scream internally while her face turns a bright red.
Ishmael panics at their physical proximity, telling Sir Dylan that he is far too close.
Both admit their hearts are racing, yet Dylan confesses he does not want to move.
Ishmael wonders why Dylan refuses to stay apart from her ever since the Blue Merm.
Dylan gazes at her with a soft, affectionate look as the late-night tension lingers.
A memory of a formal proposal surfaces, showing Sir Dylan in his regal knight's attire.
Sir Dylan looks handsome and composed in his official uniform during a pivotal past moment.
A soft focus captures Dylan's face during his sincere and life-changing proposal to Ishmael.
Ishmael looks up at him with a mix of wonder and hesitation in the flashback.
Dylan's focused gaze reveals the depth of his commitment as he speaks to her.
In the memory, Ishmael questions why the knight is always so consistently kind to her.
Dylan suggests that she already knows the reason behind his deep and unwavering devotion.
Dylan explains his feelings originated long before they officially met as adults in the palace. He reveals that as a young child, he once reached a point of total despair. Rejected by everyone, young Dylan sat alone in the dark, waiting for his life to end. His life changed when a precious person arrived and offered him a path toward hope.
A small pale hand reaches out from the shadows, offering salvation to the lonely boy.
A young Ishmael smiles brightly as she reaches out her hand to the forgotten child.
Dylan admits Ishmael's current smile reminds him of that girl, drawing him toward her now. Ishmael worries she is only loved for the resemblance, but her heart still aches strangely. Dylan strongly rejects the idea, insisting that the resemblance was only the very beginning.
He praises her calm gaze and focused nature when she handles her armor and sword.
Sir Dylan declares that he truly likes Ishmael for exactly who she is today.
Ishmael is shocked he felt for her, but Dylan begins to say something even more. Ishmael is touched that Dylan sees good qualities in her that she never even noticed.
Being seen with such high regard after a life of dismissal moves Ishmael deeply.
Dylan expresses a sense of unworthiness, feeling too impure for the person he truly reveres. Dylan begs Ishmael not to turn away from him despite his perceived internal impurities. He expresses deep gratitude for the years she has granted him to stay by her side.
Though it began as a contract, the line between fake and real begins to blur. Despite living together for less than 2 months, their domestic bond has grown incredibly strong.
Ishmael acknowledges that her heart is racing wildly as they sit together in the bedroom.
She questions if she can truly resist his temptation for the remaining year of their contract, 16 words.
The Grand Tower stands tall under the morning sky, marking the start of a new day.
Ishmael arrives at the Mage Tower, announcing it is finally the day she officially enters while noting her lack of sleep.
Ishmael recalls the moment Sir Dylan removed an eyelash from her lip, a memory that still leaves her deeply flustered.
While standing in the tower, Ishmael realizes that was the perfect moment for a kiss and finds the thought incredibly embarrassing.
Ishmael clutches her face and tries to compose herself, deciding she must calm down to focus on the upcoming entrance exam. 2 students in black cloaks whisper about Ishmael, gossiping about the rumors of a first circle mage entering the prestigious tower. A blue-eyed man suggests testing Ishmael to see if her magical capabilities actually match the low-level rumors surrounding her reputation. Morning sun illuminates the grand facade of the academy where the entrance exam begins.
A plush pink heart pillow held by soft hands represents the lingering romantic tension. 15 words.
Dylan stands in a room thinking that they should be prepared in advance in case visitors show up unannounced.
Sir Dylan averts his gaze with a faint blush coloring his cheeks in the morning.
A close-up of Ishael's mouth captures a moment of silent, contemplative hesitation and wonder. Ishael's brilliant emerald eyes widen as a radiant, magical aura begins to surround her. A tightly clenched fist indicates the hidden intensity and resolve building within Sir Dylan.
Dylan stands with his back turned, questioning if he will truly have the courage to eventually let Lady Ishael go.
Ishael searches for the location of the exam hall while moving quickly through the grand corridors of the tower. Ishael's expression shifts to sudden alarm as she feels something unexpected strike her head. Ishael turns around in confusion, feeling as though something just hit her head and looking for the source of the impact. A strange creaking sound startles Ishmael as she stands alone, causing her to jump slightly in the quiet hallway.
Ishael identifies the object on the floor as a straw doll with red thread and wonders if it is a curse.
The singular large eye of the straw doll flashes with a menacing and magical light. The magical doll repeatedly calls Ishael pathetic, claiming she is the most incompetent mage it has ever had the misfortune to see. The doll mocks Ishael's low mana density and correctly identifies her as being only at the level of the first circle. The doll expresses absolute disgust that a first circle mage would dare to touch it, continuing to scream insults at her. Ishael grabs the doll tightly and asks if the pile of straw has said enough, while the doll screams about her personality. Ishael prepares to toss the doll away as the noisy object let out a panicked yelp in response to her grip. The doll cries out for Masters Peru and Master Sika to help as the two students arrive to confront Ishael.
The voice from the doll demands that the students hurry and crush the arrogance of the brat standing before them.
Sparrow looks at Ishmael and confirms that the rumors of her being a mere first circle mage are indeed accurate. The students speculate that Ishael saved the Tower Master purely by luck while acknowledging her new title as Viscountess Ishael Odette. Ishael confronts the group, asking if they hate her simply because she currently holds the rank of a first circle mage. Sprue explains that the tower is a pure meritocracy and warns Ishael that the hazing here is notoriously severe.
An announcement is made for those taking the entrance exam to follow the instructions and head toward the testing area.
Ishael notes that her entry was guaranteed by the Duke, but the mages insisted she take the exam regardless of his recommendation.
Students whisper as Ishael enters the hall, gossiping about a newly risen noble daring to join the tower as a low-level mage.
Ishael looks down at the crowded exam hall, feeling driven crazy by the intense atmosphere and the constant judging stares.
Students whisper that Ishael is no more than a commoner here and attribute her heroic deeds to nothing more than luck.
Ishael overhears students gossiping about her husband, Sir Dylan, and turns around with an intense and focused expression.
Ishael blames the eccentric director Emmanuel for her current social predicament as other students react to her presence with alarm. Ishael sits at her desk, feeling as though the surrounding students have already drained her energy before the exam has even begun. Ishael stares down at the exam paper with a look of intense and focused concentration.
An observer expresses surprise at the contents of the exam paper, noting that the questions were quite unexpected.
Ishael smiles confidently, acknowledging the tower's value on skill and promising to match their high standards perfectly.
An official stands on the stairs and prepares to announce the exam scores immediately along with the names of the candidates.
Female students cheer for the appearance of Master Claude, who stands calmly with a bat-winged mouse on his shoulder. The official reads out scores for Alice, Billy, Sierra, and Dahlia, noting their various passes and failures to the gathered crowd.
The crowd looks on with intense curiosity as the proctor prepares to announce the specific score for Ishael Odette.
The proctor swallows hard as he prepares to deliver the most shocking result of the day. The students react with utter disbelief as the proctor announces that Ishmael has received 0 points on her entrance exam.
Claude observes the scene as the narrative notes that Ishmael's score was not simply 0 due to a lack of knowledge.
The students are stunned to realize that Ishael received 0 points because she pointed out fundamental errors in the exam questions.
Ishael is grabbed by a fellow student who asks for the secret behind her answers.
Ishael smiles with confidence, signaling her determination to challenge the established norms of the tower.
A diagram illustrates a simple magical enhancement process, transforming a small cat into a larger one.
Claude watches the commotion, wondering how a low-level mage could achieve such a feat of enhancement. Students gather around Ishael in awe, with one even kneeling to beg for her magical guidance. Ishael's radiant appearance fills the observers with hope for the future of stagnant magical technology. A massive surge of blue magic erupts as a staff strikes the floor, startling the onlookers.
Claude expresses his admiration, admitting he has sensed something extraordinary about Ishael for quite some time.
Master Claude declares that Ishael's prowess far exceeds the expected capabilities of a first circle mage.
Ishael winces as the tip of a staff is suddenly pressed against her neck in the hallway.
Standing in a vast magical expanse, Claude orders Ishael to follow him for a private discussion.
Claude formally invites Ishael to visit the best room as a special reward for her admission.
A flashback shows young Claude as a child prodigy, mastering complex magic at a very early age. Young Claude expresses his profound boredom with life while watching a butterfly land on his fingertip. Lying on the grass, the young genius questions the point of living and considers dying young.
Young Claude argues that human existence is temporary and that any resulting sadness will eventually fade.
He claims that as a genius, he has already accomplished everything he ever desired in life. A young girl named Diana hits Claude, calling him a dummy for speaking so gloomily.
Diana scolds the boy for being a brat and tells him his nihilistic talk is nonsense. The blonde girl demands that Claude stop moping and get up off the ground immediately.
Diana continues her lecture, loudly proclaiming that her cousin is being a complete and utter dummy.
A close-up shows the young girl's blue ribbon as she continues to yell at her cousin.
Claude is stunned because it is the first time anyone has ever called him a fool. Diana offers her hand to Claude, becoming the only source of vitality in his monotonous existence. A narrative box explains that Claude didn't want to die and leave his precious cousin behind. Claude asks Diana to place a magical seal on his heart, but she bluntly refuses him.
Holding a heart-shaped potion, a blushing Claude vows to live the rest of his life for Diana.
Diana finds his devotion creepy but accepts the dummy nickname as Claude dedicates his heart to her.
In the present, Claude's hand glows with blue energy as he laments failing his magical search once again.
Watching his student, an elder mage suggests that more specific tracking magic might yield better results.
Gripping his staff, Claude worries if he will ever find Diana again before his life ends. Ripples form in the water as Claude reaffirms his absolute resolve to find his missing cousin.
The narration confirms that Claude's entire life is now dedicated to the sole purpose of reclaiming Diana.
Climbing the stairs, Claude notes that he has always been highly skilled despite the current situation.
Claude offers Ishmael a special exception, which she awkwardly accepts as a high and unexpected honor.
Ishmael acknowledges her low official rank while planning to use her actual abilities to her advantage.
She decides that acting unpredictably might be the best way to spark curiosity within the tower.
Claude wonders why he finds himself speaking so kindly to Ishmael despite his usually cold demeanor.
A chibi Ishmael invites Claude to curse at her, but he admits that would bother him more.
Claude pats Ishmael on the head and expresses his genuine happiness that such a talent joined.
Ishmael is annoyed by the sudden physical affection, while Claude announces they have reached their destination.
Claude explains his Batmouse's recording abilities, leading Ishmael to realize she enjoys being in his company.
The pair stops before a massive stone door, which Claude identifies as the entrance to the room.
Claude tells Ishmael he is showing her the best room as a special celebration for her initiation.
Ishmael wonders if she's about to see a legendary secret as Claude pushes open the door.
A collection of pictures and statues depicts a young blonde girl in various cute and cheerful poses.
The room is revealed to be a shrine filled with countless portraits and dolls of young Diana.
Claude enthusiastically praises the loveliness of his baby as the room glows with a bright light.
Ishmael is visibly horrified by the obsessive collection, calling the entire situation incredibly and deeply creepy.
Claude proudly shows off a doll with Diana's voice, while Ishmael recoils from his extreme behavior. The enchanted doll shrieks insults at Master Claude, leaving Ishmael deeply disturbed by the obsessive shrine.
Claude asks Ishmael to keep his hobby a secret before leading her to his adjacent laboratory.
A black-haired girl wearing laboratory goggles looks up in surprise as visitors enter her workspace.
The group gathers in the center of the lab, surrounded by scattered books and magical equipment.
The researcher asks if they noticed her work, while Ishmael responds with a nervous, awkward laugh.
Ishmael stares at the paperwork in her hands with an expression of shock and wide-eyed realization.
Narrations explain how Claude's grandfather found a child similar to Diana through a cleaner at Saint Germain.
The man's eyes widen as he clutches his cup, visibly shaken by the startling information received. The black-haired girl asks Ishmael if she knows the location of the orphanage directed by Baron Lorelei.
Claude suspects the orphanage changes locations periodically to hide shady activities from the public eye.
Master Claude suggests locking up the director to extract the orphanage's secret location through a forced interrogation.
Ishmael recalls the cruel director claiming he raised her when she had absolutely nowhere else to go.
Dark flowers frame a memory of the man constantly reminding Ishmael of her status as an orphan. 16 words.
Young Ishmael eventually realizes the director's claims about her origin were the literal and painful truth. Ishmael wonders if investigating the Saint Germain orphanage will lead her to discover her true biological family members.
Ishmael's eyes widen with a sudden realization as she processes clues regarding her mysterious past origins.
The scene shifts back to the mages as the narrative questions the identity of a certain person.
The black-haired researcher asks Ishmael about her future plans following the completion of the tower's initiation.
Flowering branches accompany Ishmael's casual and dismissive response regarding her upcoming activities within the tower.
Ishmael confidently declares her secret intention to identify and capture a terrorist spy hidden within the tower. 16 words.
A purple-haired mage lets out a loud sneeze, catching the attention of those standing nearby.
One mage jokingly offers to purchase medicine for the girl who just let out a loud sneeze.
The purple-haired mage dismisses the concern, claiming her health condition is not as bad as it seems.
The girl suspects someone is bad-mouthing her as her eyes narrow with a suspicious and annoyed look. A notification identifies Ada Narcy as a fourth circle wind magic prodigy with a formidable reputation.
Ishmael recalls working with Ada in her previous life, remembering her as an incredibly rude and demanding client.
In the past, Ada arrogantly demands to borrow restricted magic tools while insulting the administrative staff members.
Past Ishmael refuses the request based on imperial law, while onlookers label the noblewoman a complete menace.
Ada throws a violent tantrum, screaming insults at the administrator for daring to follow the established rules.
The chaotic scene continues as Ada threatens to ruin the staff member's life while others try to intervene.
Ada eventually receives special permission through abusive behavior and proceeds to mock the clerk for being inferior.
The noblewoman leaves with a final threat, leaving the entire staff exhausted by her uniquely infuriating personality.
6 months later, Ishael hears shocking news that Ada was arrested for joining a dangerous terrorist organization.
The narrative explains that Ada was caught smuggling imperial tools to a group known as Red Castle.
Ishael concludes that since the major flow remains consistent, Ada is likely a spy in this life too.
The sound of fanfare echoes through the grand hall, signaling the start of a major ceremony. An official with a microphone announces the formal commencement of the prestigious Mage Tower initiation ceremony.
Students whisper in disbelief about the rumors surrounding the presence of a low-level noble at the ceremony. 16 words.
The announcer prepares to introduce the central figure and main protagonist of the day's special event.
The official asks the gathered crowd to welcome the guest of honor with a loud round of applause.
Ishael steps forward while holding a glowing jar filled with plants, leaving the gathered students completely bewildered.
Observers question why Ishael is carrying a strange spell bottle during such a formal and important ceremony.
The crowd is stunned to witness Ishael bowing down and seemingly offering prayers to the mysterious glass jar.
A frame confirms that Ishael is frequently seen carrying the spell bottle and praying every single morning.
Other students watch in confusion, noting that Ishmael has been repeating this bizarre morning ritual quite often.
Students speculate that the bottle must be incredibly precious if a supposed genius values it so highly.
A curious student approaches Viscountess Ishmael to ask about the specific contents and purpose of her mysterious bottle.
The student reaches out to touch the glass, inquiring about what could possibly be hidden inside the container.
Ishael lets out a panicked scream, warning the student to stay away and not touch her precious item. The student recoils in surprise at the sudden outburst, while a flustered Ishmael quickly offers a formal apology.
A student asks about the cause of a commotion as Master Ada arrives to investigate the crowd.
Ada approaches Ishmael and asks if she is the recruit who recently joined the Mage Tower.
Ada points at the jar and asks Ishmael what she has put inside the mysterious glass container.
A close-up of Ishael's face captures her offering a mysterious and knowing silent smile.
Ishael claims the spell bottle is her power source, while Ada expresses deep skepticism toward the idea. The jar is filled with vibrant greenery and a necklace adorned with glowing green gemstones.
Students claim that even for a first circle mage, such a magical object should be completely useless.
Ishael insists she saved the Duke with the bottle, but the surrounding students accuse her of lying.
Ishael touches her face thoughtfully and admits that her mysterious bottle is actually quite special.
Ishael's hand flinches as she mentions obtaining the unique item from a place called Alfred's Rim.
Ishael laughs about entering the room by chance, while the other mages find the legend impossible.
A narrative circle questions why, of all people, Ishael was the one who entered the room. Ada considers returning to the room while a student explains it only opens under specific conditions. A student asks if the master is all right, noting her pale and troubled facial complexion.
Ada dismisses the concern while secretly celebrating that she has finally found the legendary Alfred's Room.
The Grand Mage Tower stands tall and silent under the light and silent under the light of the full moon.
Ishael stands alone in a darkened moonlit hall within the prestigious Mage Tower at night.
Ishael looks around cautiously while muttering to herself that there should be no one else around.
Ada watches Ishmael from the shadows, noting that the woman chose a time when nobody is around.
Ada follows Ishmael, wondering if she is planning to monopolize the secrets of the legendary room.
Ishael mutters to herself as a magical door begins to open with a bright flash.
Ada realizes she is standing before the legendary room spoken of only in ancient childhood stories.
Ada smirks confidently while watching Ishael, thinking she can easily deal with such a scrawny girl.
Ada draws a small dagger, planning to loot all the magical tools for her master, Lord Marriott.
Ada believes Lord Marriott will finally acknowledge her once she offers him the stolen magical treasures.
A sudden surge of blue electricity shocks Ada, causing her to scream out in intense pain.
Ada clutches her head in shock as she realizes she has been caught in a trap.
Ishael greets the spy, asking what Master Ada is doing in the tower at this hour.
A man in a white cloak asks Ada for an update on the current tower situation.
Ada kneels in the dark hallway, seen from behind as she prepares to give her report. Ada reports everyone is keeping a low profile, making the Duke and Claude's actions unclear, while the man agrees to avoid Crimson Castle.
A close-up of a masked eye reveals the target, Ishael Odette, has entered the Mage Tower.
The masked man asks if they happen to know each other, and Ada confirms that she knows her.
A narrative bubble describes the growing tension as being a bit ambiguous for the characters involved.
Ada acknowledges Lord Marriott after he warns her to be cautious because the target woman is unpredictable. Lord Marriott warns that although Ishael looks innocent, she is actually an unpredictable and dangerous person. 16 words.
Ada kneels and confirms her understanding of the mission to monitor the suspicious new recruit.
Ada regrets her past assumptions, realizing she should have been more cautious about the girl's power.
Ada gasps in terror as Ishael looms over her, wondering who could have guessed she'd be caught. Ishmael asks the spy what she is doing in the tower at such a late hour.
Ishael walked past Ada, noting that she doesn't recall hearing about her working overtime today. Ada shouts in frustration, asking what that has to do with her and accusing Ishmael of being the suspicious one.
Ishael stares blankly and asks if Ada is a spy for the terrorist group known as Crimson Castle.
Ada is frozen in shock, wondering how the other woman could possibly know her secret identity.
Inside the room, Ada looks up in total confusion, asking about the source of the voice.
Ishael explains that the voice Ada heard was her own internal thoughts, then explains she cast a thought-to-speech conversion spell.
Ishael offers a bright and innocent smile after successfully exposing the hidden secret of the spy.
Ada stares in complete disbelief and horror, realization dawning as her secret mission is ruined.
A massive scream echoes from the tower under the full moon as the truth comes out.
Ishael notes the loud voice hurts her ears, while Ada curses the morning about being cautious around her.
Claude asks Ishmael if she already knew Ada was a spy, while a shocked student denies having any such knowledge. Ada screams in frustration and prepares to draw a hidden weapon against her enemies.
Ada lunges forward, screaming a deadly threat as she aims her dagger at Ishael.
Ada is suddenly struck down by a force, screaming in pain as she falls.
Ishael stands over the bound woman and remarks on how bold she was to attempt an attack in this situation. The mages question Ada's daring infiltration of the tower as she lies helpless and bound.
Ada frantically tries to claim the situation as a misunderstanding before her mouth is suddenly muffled by magical raps.
Claude dismisses Ada's nonsense as unworthy of listening to while the captured spy continues to struggle and mumble.
Claude confirms that Ada was indeed a Crimson Castle spy, while Ishmael boasts about correctly identifying her secret identity.
Ishael privately admits she was nervous about her gamble being wrong in the end. Ishael celebrates their victory with a high five, expressing her gratitude to Master Claude for his assistance during the mission. Claude reacts with a blush as Ishael initiates physical contact during their joyful celebration. Ishael experiences a sudden, intense, heart-thumping moment while holding Master Claude's hand.
Claude looks away awkwardly, his expression betraying a mix of confusion and embarrassment.
Claude notes the room is chilly while Ishael privately worries that her behavior was creepy and wonders if she should let go.
Duke Savoya enters and praises Ishael for her great service, leading her to address him formally with surprise. Ishael modestly attributes the success of the mission to Master Claude instead of taking all the credit for herself.
The Duke offers Ishmael a reward for her bravery and asks if there is anything specific she would like to receive.
Ishael reaches out for the blue potion, indicating it is the reward she desires.
Ishael happily claims the potion bottle as her only reward, while the Duke wonders if such a simple item is truly enough.
The Duke watches with wide eyes, noting that the moment Ishael touched the bottle, he felt an incredible surge of energy. The Duke reflects on the fact that Ishael radiates the same powerful energy as his daughter-in-law, who was a legendary archmage. Watching Ishmael depart, the Duke reflects on a persistent and puzzling thought that has been on his mind recently. The Duke wonders if Ishael could potentially be Diana before dismissing the idea as he watches her walk away. A close-up of a blonde girl's hair with a blue ribbon evokes memories of Diana.
The Duke considers if she might just be a distant relative of the Archmage's family.
Claude asks about the treasure Ishael carries around, which she dismisses as a simple object used to pray for a better stomach.
The Duke asks Ishmael how she plans to get home so late, but she reassures him that he doesn't need to worry. Ishael explains that Sir Dylan is waiting for her outside the tower, causing the bottle in her hand to suddenly react.
A sudden and powerful blast of wind erupts from the bottle, causing the mages to shout in alarm and check on Ishael.
Ishael feels a sudden and intense wave of dizziness as her head begins to ring and her vision fades to white.
A blue mystical vision appears, accompanied by a voice calling out to a brother. 15 words.
In the dream, a young girl asks her brother when they can finally go home, to which he replies when things settle outside. The girl expresses her exhaustion and desire to sleep, but the boy warns her that she might freeze to death if she does.
Young Ishmael snaps awake in the dream, determined not to die in the frigid night.
A young boy wraps a cloak around the shivering girl, offering her warmth and protection. The girl promises to marry the boy in the future, vowing to give him a proposal so cool he will have to say yes.
The boy points out the absurdity of talking about marriage when they don't even know each other's names yet.
Outside the tower, a commotion grows as voices urge everyone to remain calm immediately. Ishael lies unconscious in a bed, appearing pale after her sudden and unexpected collapse.
A researcher reassures the group that Ishael is fine and only collapsed due to the intensity of a powerful awakening vision.
A man warns that anger will not change the current situation, while Sir Dylan argues about Ishael's health.
Sir Dylan looks on with a focused and intense expression of deep and genuine concern.
Sir Dylan asks Ishmael if she is hurt or hungry, while she reassures him that she is okay despite a ringing head.
Dylan expresses his deep relief that Ishmael is finally awake and safe in his arms.
Sir Dylan gently adjusts Ishael's blankets, his face softening with a rare moment of tenderness.
Ishael stares up at Sir Dylan with a look of quiet and thoughtful recognition.
Claude observes the scene and sarcastically asks if they can save their public displays of affection for somewhere else. The group discusses the fact that Ishael is undergoing an awakening despite never having shown symptoms like this in the past.
Duke Savoya explains that such a strong physical reaction occasionally happens when a magical awakening vision is particularly powerful. Duke Savoya notes that Ishael released an explosive burst of mana while touching the spell bottle.
The Duke explains that the mana from the bottle is currently accelerating Ashiel's magical awakening process.
A text box reveals that this sudden development was actually a secret part of Ishael's plan. The narration explains that the item is a legendary tool crafted by a divine beast centuries ago.
A mystical white divine beast is depicted holding the glowing blue bottle within a magical circle. 16 words.
The text specifies that the bottle contains turmeric, a special herb used for summoning powerful divine beasts.
The mixture includes divine beast fur, tears, and a fragment of a rare blue diamond.
The magical concoction is designed to perfectly mimic the inherent and powerful mana of a divine beast.
A narrative frame marks a transition to the time before Ishael returned to the past.
In her past life, Ishael read about terrorists stealing the bottle after destroying the mage tower.
Ishael admits to using Claude to access the room and obtain the bottle despite feeling guilty. Narration explains that Ishael had no choice because the room requires Savoya blood to be opened. The group asks if Ishmael can stand, and she weakly confirms that she is feeling okay.
Ishael asks if awakening is always painful, while Dylan supports her and the others look on.
The narrative explains that the intensity of the pain reflects the greatness of the person's latent power.
Ishael expresses her relief after learning the reason behind the intense physical pain of her awakening.
The Duke gives Ishmael a potion to soothe the pain, and she offers her sincere thanks.
The Duke notes Ishael's aura resembles Arena Cerritos, while Ishael questions if he means the Archmage. Chibi Ishael gets excited, hoping she might eventually awaken with a rare and valuable healing attribute. Claude asks if she likes healing, but Ishael admits she's disappointed it isn't her actual attribute.
Ishael explains healers make the most money, prompting Claude to label her a greedy money worshipper.
Ishael argues money is everything to commoners, while the Duke mentions her new status as Vice-Countess. Ishael notes she hasn't officially received the title yet as the Duke watches her very closely.
Claude and Ishael stand together in the warm light while the Batmouse flies between them.
Helix asks if the Duke is crying, but he claims he was just lost in thought.
The Duke tells the pair to go home and rest, and they agree to see him tomorrow.
The Duke stops Ishael to give her one last item before she departs for the night.
A thought bubble questions if the item the Duke is presenting is actually a rosary bracelet.
The Duke gently fastens the beaded bracelet around Ishael's wrist as the background glows with light.
A close-up shows the golden rosary bracelet glowing brightly as it settles on Ishael's arm.
Dylan explains the bracelet tracks awakening progress, noting Ishael is currently at 40% before it breaks.
Dylan offers to trade jewels for the bottle, but Ishael loudly refuses to part with her prize.
Ishael suddenly begins to cough violently, causing the surrounding group to react with shock and alarm.
Dylan suggests disposing of the bottle causing her pain, but Ishael stubbornly insists on keeping her treasure.
Ishael huddles on the ground, clutching the bottle tightly while appearing physically exhausted and very ill.
The Duke instructs the group to use the medicine and watch Ishael's health during her awakening.
Lord Helix calls Ishael over for a private moment before she leaves the tower for the night.
Helix whispers for Ishael to check if her gift works, leaving the girl shocked and confused.
Claude asks what Ishael received to make her act so strange, while Lord Helix giggles mischievously.
Dylan hugs Ishmael and asks Claude why she reminds him of her, seeking his companion's opinion.
Dylan reflects on how he can feel the legendary bravery of the Savoya family within Ishael's spirit.
The silhouettes of the Duke and Claude stand together against a bright, cloudy blue background.
A narrative box declares a firm vow to find Diana no matter what challenges may arise.
A speech bubble confirms that someone is counting on another person to complete a vital task.
The Batmouse flies through a sparkling green sky, its wings spread wide in a playful pose.
The Batmouse hovers over Helix and a companion as they engage in a cheerful conversation.
Narration explains Claude's reliance on the tool, while Helix suggests he should try speaking for himself.
Helix asks Claude why he insists on only communicating through his magical mousepat tool.
Helix teases that Claude lacks depth while the Duke wonders if there is a profound reason.
Claude secretly blushes while thinking that Diana must be the first person to hear his adult voice.
A black-haired woman laughs while plotting to create another doll of a girl named Diana today.
A spiky bubble appears in the sky, expressing a sudden doubt about whether to quit the task.
Someone asks whose voice they heard, then remarks that it sounded just like the spy named Aida.
A student confirms Aida was a terrorist who was arrested, shocking others who repeat the word in disbelief.
A student wonders how the authorities managed to catch the spy without anyone noticing.
A woman credits Ishmael for catching the spy, while a student identifies her as the weird bottle rookie.
The black-haired student looks back with a confused expression after hearing about a spell bottle.
The gathered students react with total shock and disbelief to the news regarding Ishael's involvement.
Students discuss how Ishael's claim about her power source was actually a clever tactic to catch the terrorist. Two students share a look of dawning realization regarding Ishael's true nature and hidden abilities.
A woman explains Claude's acknowledgement of Ishael, then tells the group to stop making a fuss and work.
Students realize Ishael feigned foolishness while the narrator mentions Helix's unawareness and a future butterfly effect.
A close-up captures two people sharing an intimate moment as they walk while holding hands.
Ishael and Dylan stroll together through the quiet, lamplit city streets under the night sky.
Ishael wonders how they naturally ended up holding hands, but Dylan only responds with a quiet questioning sound.
The night air grows colder as the characters reflect on the end of the summer season. Dylan promises to make autumn Mont Blanc for Ishmael, which makes her cheer for the dessert with excitement.
Ishael asks how he remembers her favorites, and Dylan warmly replies that he naturally remembers everything she likes.
The pair gazes into each other's eyes during a tense and romantic moment in the hall.
Ishael happily embraces Dylan, thinking to herself that he reminds her of a lovable puppy.
Ishael reflects on Dylan's hard work during their year-long fake marriage and thanks him for the long commute.
Dylan vows to continue picking her up as a husband's duty, and Ishael bashfully admits she appreciates it. Dylan asks about her awakening, and Ishael explains she might grow into a next circle mage if things go well.
Ishael excitedly anticipates gaining a healing attribute like the legendary archmage known as Lady Arena.
Ishael leans her head against Dylan's shoulder during their quiet walk home through the night.
Dylan pulls Ishmael into a protective and firm embrace as they stand together in the street. Dylan notes that he feels much more at ease whenever the two of them are touching.
Dylan hopes that her wish to be a healer comes true and asks if she likes that attribute.
Narrative text praises Ishmael's intelligence as she considers useful ways to apply her new magical gifts. Dylan looks away with a serious expression as he prepares to say something very important.
Ishael promises Dylan a big divorce settlement if she makes money, leaving him looking shocked and completely frozen.
Dylan offers a soft and gentle smile as he gazes at Ishael with a warm look. Dylan strokes Ishael's face and says he should be the one providing since they are living as a couple.
The pair arrives at their home as Ishael notes they are back, and Dylan confirms they have reached.
Dylan stops Ishmael before they enter, announcing that he has brought a special gift for her.
Ishael presents a small bottle to Dylan, who asks about the contents of the mysterious gift.
Ishael hides the gift source while remembering Helix's tease about a sweet honeymoon, making her shout in confusion.
Dylan reads that the potion is intended to increase the level of affection between a couple.
Ishael calls out to Dylan as he stares at the bottle with a very flustered expression.
Dylan covers his face and admits he is not feeling okay after seeing the gift's purpose.
Ishael panics as Dylan's face turns bright red while he insists that isn't the case. Ishael tries to reclaim the bottle due to side effects, but Dylan declares it's his since she gave it. Dylan runs off with the cursed bottle as Ishael screams for him to stop and let her throw it away.
A woman's voice asks if the couple is having a lover's quarrel as they play outside.
Neighbors greet the couple, explaining they have been waiting for the pair to return home.
Dylan asks why everyone is gathered at their house so late at night with cheerful expressions.
A neighbor asks if they missed the notice regarding the scheduled event for the neighborhood couples.
The neighbors announce it is time for the housewarming program, causing the couple to panic at the sudden news.
A woman notes everyone wants to see their decorated home as winners, and Ishmael laughs nervously while agreeing.
Ishael pulls Dylan aside and urgently asks if he had any idea about the housewarming party happening today.
Sir Dylan reassures Ishmael as they arrive at the house, prompting her surprised reaction.
Dylan smiles warmly and explains that he has prepared everything for their arrival tonight.
Back at the tower, Claude prepares to ask Lord Helix a question about the couple.
Claude questions the legitimacy of the marriage while Helix confirms it and asks about his interest.
Claude dismisses his curiosity as Helix notes that everyone considers them to be perfect lovebirds.
Chibi Helix teases Claude, asking if the Great Lord is feeling jealous of Ishael's husband.
A sharp and defensive retort echoes through the room as Claude denies the playful accusation. Claude mutters in regret while the Batmouse watches him struggle with his internal feelings.
Claude watches the couple's closeness from afar, admitting that it makes him feel strangely unpleasant.
A decorative portrait reveals a sweet drawing of Ishmael's face surrounded by loving hearts.
The gathered neighbors gasp in admiration as they behold the brilliantly decorated celebratory cake.
Neighbors praise Dylan's romantic cake art while Ishmael wonders why she is always the embarrassed one.
A neighbor interrupts the moment, asking everyone to pause before the next part of the event.
The group surrounds the table as Dylan prepares to serve the special cake to their guests.
Ishael nervously suggests they eat the cake quickly before it has a chance to spoil.
A tender moment unfolds as Dylan reaches out to gently touch Isol's face with his fingers.
Neighbors swoon over the couple's affection while Dylan leans in closer to his flustered wife.
Sir Emmanuel greets the group, explaining that he came directly from work to join the party. Sir Emmanuel announces the arrival of a special guest he encountered on his way home.
A young, bespectacled boy named Lord Ford waves energetically while greeting the gathered group.
Lord Ford explains he came specifically to watch the newlywed program, surprising the happy couple.
Ishael stares in shock at the visitor while Dylan looms behind her with dark intensity.
A narrative thought bubble expresses confusion over why the boy came to the housewarming party.
A fork pierces a piece of cake as the tension in the room suddenly increases.
Lord Ford eats the cake while Dylan angrily clenches a plush bear and questions his presence.
Ishael asks the group about their history together, leading to a discussion about their shared hobby.
An illustrative panel describes the romantic social circle they use to communicate and share art.
A close-up focus on Lord Ford shows him preparing to say something more significant.
Portraits of Ishmael in different outfits are prominently displayed on the walls of the house.
A framed picture shows Ishmael smiling brightly while wearing a large green ribbon in her hair.
Lord Ford accepts a drink while commenting that the domestic scene feels very natural to him. Dylan declares his deep love for Ishmael while serving a drink to the young visitor.
Dylan grabs Lord Ford's face and intensely asks him how the current atmosphere makes him feel.
Dylan forces Lord Ford to look at the numerous portraits of Ishmael hanging on the wall.
Lord Ford exclaims that seeing her face makes him feel as though he owns the world.
Dylan reacts with jealous fury while Ishmael tries to clarify that the boy meant no harm.
Lord Ford expresses his overwhelming joy while Dylan scolds him for talking nonsense at the party.
A hand presents a wax-sealed envelope announcing Ishmael and Dylan as the winning couple tonight.
Sir Emmanuel asks for objections as the neighbors enthusiastically cheer for the victorious couple's success.
A neighbor expresses her gratitude for having such a reassuring and loving couple in their community.
A neighbor hopes the pair maintains their bond while Ishmael reacts with a look of surprise.
Lord Ford raises his hand to ask when the couple plans to hold their formal wedding.
Ishmael stammers in confusion as she tries to find an answer to the boy's question.
Dylan places a firm and protective hand on Ishmael's shoulder as they face the neighbors together.
Ishmael promises to invite Lord Ford to the wedding while Dylan glares at him with suspicion.
The couple waves goodbye to their departing neighbors under the glow of the crescent men.
Dylan asks if something is wrong while noticing Ishmael's troubled and pensive facial expression.
Ishmael insists that everything is fine while hiding her inner anxiety about their fake marriage.
Ishmael reflects on the irony of being called perfect newlyweds despite their one-year fake contract.
Dylan suggests going inside to escape the chill, and Ishmael agrees to end the night.
Ishmael reminds herself to endure the situation as her arrangement will end in 1 year.
The researcher reviews documents, noting that their progress has exceeded their initial expectations. The group discusses how interrogating the spy led to the capture of all the terrorists.
A recording reveals Marriott's plan to dismantle the Empire's power structures as a preliminary step.
Duke Savoya deduces that the terrorists' primary goal is to sow chaos throughout the Empire.
The Duke asks the researcher for suggestions regarding a reward for Ishmael's recent heroic actions.
The Duke considers a special gift for Ishmael but struggles to find something meaningful enough.
A voice interrupts the Duke's contemplation with a hesitant and polite address.
The Duke considers the Empire's godfather system as a possible way to support Ishmael's future.
Narrator explains the godparent system and notes that Duke Savoya has never mentored a godchild.
The Duke previously focused only on Diana, but Ishmael's upcoming noble debut changes his priorities. Duke Savoya decides that becoming Ishmael's godfather is an excellent way to reward her loyalty.
A blue messenger bird arrives unexpectedly, catching the Duke by surprise during his late-night deliberations.
The Duke's expression turns pale upon reading the message, prompting concern from the nearby researcher.
Overwhelmed with emotion, the Duke begins to reveal news about the long-lost Diana.
The Duke is stunned by news claiming that his missing granddaughter has finally returned home.